A pink-haired girl, identified as a siren, sings to heal and control others. The audience demands more songs while a black-haired man opens the siren's gates. Given another life, she wishes to sing songs that bring people true happiness.
As a 10-year-old child, an opportunity arrives that promises to change her tragic future. Lloyd Cardenas Valentine, a dangerous archduke, sits surrounded by panthers as his dark reputation precedes him.
The girl plans to marry Lloyd to prevent the Valentine incident while receiving a mask. Lloyd questions his worries while the girl in the rabbit mask rushes toward a jaguar.
The girl comforts a jaguar as Lloyd and a long-haired man observe her mysterious presence.
A young Lloyd stares silently as his cheeks flush with a faint, unexpected blush. Lloyd treats the girl's fever, asking her to remove the mask and stay as his wife. After asking for permission, Lloyd gently lifts the rabbit mask to reveal her hidden face. Lloyd blushes while asking her to recover quickly and stop hiding behind the mask. Lloyd feeds the girl as they transition into their adult lives together in a contractual family.
A magnificent chandelier illuminates the grand hall, casting a warm and elegant light. A man clasps a hand, calling out to Arya as his angel in the darkness. Arya sits dejectedly within her cage, her long pink hair flowing across the floor.
Arya gazes through the bars with intense red eyes, her expression filled with cold defiance.
A man demands that Arya sing for him, his mouth open in a commanding gesture.
Arya sings from her confinement, her voice reaching out through the dark bars of the cage. The crowd pleads for Arya to save them with the power of her enchanting song. Surrounded by roses, Arya identifies herself as the very last siren left in the world. The silhouette of a bird trapped within a cage represents her own isolated existence. The audience is captivated by her beauty and demands that she sing for them again.
Despite her visible distress, the man ruthlessly commands her to sing more right now.
A sudden splash of blood covers the floor of the cage, marking a painful moment.
Arya's hand trembles violently as it becomes stained with her own dark, coughed-up blood.
Slumped over in the cage, Arya continues to cough blood onto her blue-patterned dress.
A close-up of Arya's red eye reveals a single tear falling in her moment of despair.
Desperate, she decides that anyone, whether angel or devil, will suffice to save her. Tears stream down Arya's face as she pleads for anyone to help her escape.
From outside the room, a voice questions if someone has become a crazy beast. Lloyd requests a room for a single day while the servants react with confusion and concern.
Lloyd and the girl stand at the altar, entering into a contractual marriage for mutual protection.
The young girl looks up with large, shimmering eyes, seeking safety in her new life. Lloyd stands beside her, his expression serious as he commits to their shared future.
Lloyd argues with the blonde man, defending the girl's maturity while she wonders what they mean.
Lloyd slams the door shut on the blonde man, shouting a final exclamation of frustration. Lloyd lets out a sigh, probably wondering why being an archduke involves so much paperwork. Lloyd walks across the ornate rug, his mind weighed down by the day's stressful events.
The image of Lloyd's adult self looms behind his younger form, signifying his dark destiny. Narration describes the Devil Grand Duke as a traitor who killed the Emperor at age 18.
A close-up of narrow, dark eyes reflects a cold and ruthless determination within the man.
The blonde Emperor yells at Arya, accusing her of taking revenge after he saved her life. A sharp sword is drawn, the metal gleaming ominously in the dimly lit environment.
Grabbing her hair, the Emperor declares that today's event will make Arya obey him.
A close-up shows Arya's eye filled with tears as she suffers under the Emperor's cruelty.
The shadowy figure of a man approaches the Emperor from behind with silent, lethal intent.
The Emperor expresses shock as adult Lloyd Valentine suddenly appears at the palace door.
A white slash cuts through the darkness, representing a swift and decisive strike of violence.
Blood spatters as Lloyd executes the Emperor, finally ending the man's reign of terror.
Arya sits trapped within her cage, her expression reflecting a deep, haunting exhaustion.
A dark-haired man extends his hand toward the cage, reaching out in a protective gesture.
Arya gazes at the man, identifying him as Grand Duke Valentine as tears fill her eyes.
Their hands nearly touch amidst a brilliant, shimmering light that symbolizes a sudden, magical connection. Arya winces in sudden pain, letting out a sharp gasp as her body begins to fail.
Collapsed on the floor, Arya clutches her wounded limb and laments the injury to her leg. Arya remains slumped against the bars, admitting her inability to escape her current miserable confinement.
Lloyd stands tall, questioning if she has become like a bird with its wings cruelly broken. Lifting Arya into his arms, Lloyd declares that her current state does not matter to him.
Arya stares blankly ahead, her face pale as she processes the man's unexpected and sudden kindness.
Holding her close, Lloyd challenges her to prove the limits of her own internal madness.
Bandaged and blood-stained feet rest weakly as Arya exhales a soft, pained sigh of weary resignation.
Tears stream down Arya's face while she reflects on a specific thought from her past.
A vision of an open cage and scattered feathers accompanies her vow to save him in another life.
Young Lloyd confronts Arya about her silence, asking if her lack of response stems from nervousness.
The young girl's large pink eyes widen in surprise as she looks up at her companion.
Lloyd's face turns bright red as he reacts with flustered shock to her grabbing his hands.
Arya breaks into a radiant, joyful smile while surrounded by a field of blooming white flowers. Ornate violet lettering displays the title of the story against a stark and solid black background.
A young girl in a green dress raises a finger to her lips, signaling silence.
Narration explains how Arya's mother administered silencing potions from birth, rendering the child completely unable to speak.
Count Cortez kicks the young girl, calling her a useless birth as she huddles on the floor.
Arya describes her mother's terrifying personality and her refusal to visit unless she was administering more potions.
Delicate pink flower petals drift slowly onto the white fabric of the young girl's long dress, 16 words.
Overhearing the maids, Arya learns a woman took her own life with a dagger in the palace.
Looking into a mirror, Arya realizes that she is actually the legendary creature known as a siren.
Glowing figures represent the siren's heritage, granting her the ability to manipulate and control emotions through song.
Text describes Count Cortez's legendary act of kidnapping a siren 12 long years in the past.
Young Arya huddles alone on a red carpet, looking small against the room's grand architecture.
Count Cortez screams at Arya for attempting to escape, ordering the servants to withhold all food.
The Count violently grabs Arya by her hair, causing her to cry out in sudden pain.
With a menacing look, the Count expresses shock upon realizing that the girl can actually speak.
The Count laughs triumphantly while continuing to hold the terrified girl by her long pink hair.
The Count demands Arya stop hiding her voice while she pleads for him to stop the abuse. Forced to sing at secret parties, Arya laments hearing and seeing forbidden things she never wanted to know.
A circular window frames the full moon as a silent plea for salvation appears in text.
Arya reaches toward a headless divine statue while many dark hands grasp at her from below. Rumors spread throughout the Empire suggesting that the siren is a monster rather than an angel.
A blonde woman claims the siren's addictive songs have driven the imperial officials and the emperor insane.
An angry crowd shouts about the fallen imperial family, demanding they seize power from the siren monster. The woman insists their uprising is a divine mission rather than treason, intended to save everyone. Bathed in a divine light, she promises to purify the palace and prevent any more innocent sacrifices.
A grand, dark castle stands under heavy rain as war begins and forced conscription sweeps the land.
Blood stains the ground while the military describes their brutal massacres as a necessary purification process. A loud, aggressive demand for the monster's execution echoes through the dark and rainy night sky. The Emperor refuses the execution, insisting Arya remain his caged songbird for the rest of her life.
Flashing white light accompanies the revelation that the Emperor broke her leg and silenced her.
A white wireframe of a decorative cage stands isolated against an empty and oppressive black void. Arya's thoughts drift through the darkness as she wonders exactly how long she has been imprisoned. Arya looks at her bloody hand and decides to embrace death just as her hope finally fades. Lloyd observes Arya through the bars, sensing her silent plea through her eyes. Narration describes Lloyd Valentine as the Devil Archduke while he questions Arya's intent.
Lloyd encourages Arya to sing whenever she needs him, acknowledging her voice's reach.
Arya questions the point of revenge, feeling like a bird with broken wings.
Arya sings for her own death while surrounded by swirling, radiant magical energy.
Lloyd regrets arriving late but expresses a desire to hear the siren sing freely.
Arya asks if her song depraved him. He claims responsibility and welcomes hell together.
Lloyd suggests that Arya could have reached heaven if she hadn't called for him.
Arya expresses her will to sing, and Lloyd promises to listen to her song.
Narration explains that the Grand Duke was willing to listen to the siren's voice. Arya describes the man as the devil responsible for her descent into a hellish existence. Arya views Lloyd as her savior while he carries her away from her cage. Petals drift past a window as Arya takes her first breath in a new time. 16 words.
Arya realizes the scent of flowers means she is no longer trapped in hell.
Arya wakes in the attic she occupied as a child, realizing her pain is gone. She observes that her cage has disappeared and realizes this reality is not a dream.
Arya looks out at the spring day, noticing the vibrant leaves and warm sunlight. 15 words.
Arya reaches for the falling petals, realizing she has lived again after her death.
Arya clutches her throat in shock as she realizes she can finally speak again.
Arya realizes she didn't drink the potion and that her mother has already passed away. Arya speaks the word father as she reflects on the man who ruined her life.
Looking into a mirror, Arya focuses on the person who caused her years of suffering.
Arya runs past two servants who are startled by her sudden and silent appearance.
Arya enters the cellar and finds her father, Count Cortez, drinking wine alone. Count Cortez reacts with shock and confusion as Arya enters the dark wine cellar. Arya sings a magical song that fills the room with ethereal fairies and glowing light. Count Cortez is stunned to see the daughter he considered a helpless idiot using magic.
Cortez questions how Arya could hide her identity as a siren for so many years.
Cortez wonders if Sophia was also a siren and hid the truth from him.
Arya explains that sirens have different grades and she is far superior to her mother.
Cortez plots to use her song to control the Empire and demands that she sing more.
Arya stares at her father, realizing he is just a pathetic and greedy old man.
Arya tells the Count that tonight is the first and last time he hears her song. Cortez is mesmerized by the song, unaware of the trap she is setting for him.
Arya confirms his familiarity with the song before ordering him to forget everything about tonight.
The magical melody fades into the night, appearing to the Count like a vanishing dream.
Cortez desperately tries to hold on to the memory of the siren before the magic takes over.
Cortez collapses onto the floor, his mind wiped of the recent events by Arya's power.
Arya asks the unconscious man for the location of the key and the mermaid's tears.
Cortez reveals that the items are hidden in a box in his bedroom's bedside drawer.
Arya enters the bedroom and searches through the dresser to find the hidden box.
Arya finds the mermaid's tears, the items her father used to control her siren powers.
Arya explains that mermaid's tears nullify siren songs, which is why she couldn't rebel before.
She notes her father resumed wearing the tears daily after realizing she was a siren.
Arya reflects on her return, grateful she escaped her fate more easily than expected.
Looking out from the balcony, Arya watches the falling petals in her moment of freedom.
Arya recalls the feeling of being in hell but finds relief in her current situation.
Arya realizes she has been given the chance to change her once tragic and painful future.
She thinks about the injuries she will no longer have to endure in this life.
Arya ponders her next steps, knowing her original life ended at the age of 20.
Narration explains that Arya was forced to consume silencing potions, setting a cruel time limit on her life.
Arya reflects on her siren nature, knowing her enchanting voice has the power to drive listeners insane.
The black-haired man embraces Arya, claiming her madness is irrelevant since he was already lost to insanity.
His gray eyes lack color, reflecting a soul deeply scarred by drugs and the horrors of slaughter.
In 4 years, a tragedy will wipe out the Valentine bloodline, leaving a young Lloyd as successor.
As the sole survivor of the Valentine incident, Lloyd is publicly accused of being the primary culprit. Arya wonders if the rumors about Lloyd are true, despite him never facing any formal imperial punishment. Narration describes Lloyd as a man devoid of desire, possessing only an empty and hollow internal existence.
Looking at the stars, Arya vows to ignite her dwindling life to show Lloyd true earthly happiness.
Standing beside a Black Panther, Lloyd gazes out at the night sky from his ornate balcony.
A servant informs the master that the lady's condition is critical and requests he go to her.
Maids whisper in confusion, questioning why the master suddenly ordered them to clean and decorate, a disgrace.
The servants gossip about the master's drinking, wondering if he intends to use Arya as a doll. Narration describes the siren race as a legend that became reality when Arya's mother, Sophia, finally appeared.
A maid observes that Arya's eyes look like precious jewels despite her status as a beautiful monster.
Realizing the girl cannot speak, the servant panics and rushes out of the room in sudden alarm. A maid reports that the master sent for a dress from the capital for the young lady.
The servants discuss the master's plans, realizing the timing for their original conversation was absolutely perfect.
Trembling with fear, a maid reveals that Arya is being sent to the Valentine Grand Duchy.
The servants react with visible shock, announcing that Arya is intended to become the young master's wife. Whispering in the shadows, the maids decide Arya will likely die or be sacrificed to the devil.
Chained and surrounded by roses, narration explains that Valentine wives are expected to bear heirs and die.
Records state that any woman entering the Valentine family must cut all external ties for her life. A maid mocks Arya, confident that the girl is too weak to expose their history of harassment.
Arya stares at the servant, debating whether she should use her siren powers to retaliate against them.
Reaching into her bag, Arya pulls out a quill to begin communicating through the power of writing. Arya presents a note demanding edible food, leaving the servant stunned by the girl's sudden authoritative command.
A bowl of unappealing green mush is violently knocked onto the floor, shattering into several small pieces.
Holding a new note, Arya demands her requirements be met immediately while staring down the terrified maid.
Arya enjoys a lavish tea service, noting how a noble lady should actually be treated by staff.
Arya refuses to forgive the servants, denying them any chance to compensate for their previous cruel wrongdoings.
While sipping tea, Arya reveals she has spent her life waiting for the chance to take revenge.
Arya's radiant smile causes the maids to stiffen in fear as she reflects on her unscarred face.
A discarded mask and a silhouette of a caged bird represent Arya's past life of forced confinement. Trapped within a cage, Arya recalls the predatory and dehumanizing stares she received from the imperial nobility.
Looking through the window, Arya decides it is strategically better to hide behind her mask once again. A carriage pulled by 2 horses gallops through the dense, sun-drenched forest toward a mysterious destination.
Inside the carriage, Count Cortez yells at the driver for failing to find a way out of the forest.
Count Cortez loses his temper, drawing a weapon and commanding the driver to stop the carriage immediately. The horses continue their rapid pace through the woods, kicking up dust as the sun begins to set.
Count Cortez curses the Valentine family, his face flushed with intense rage as he grinds his teeth.
Narration describes the Valentine estate as a strictly isolated territory that prohibits any uninvited outsiders from entering.
Arya observes that her father, the master of music, holds no significance or power to the Valentines.
The driver suggests retreating, calling the master's request ridiculous since no one has ever returned alive.
The carriage travels alone through the darkening woods, appearing small and vulnerable against the towering trees.
Count Cortez berates the driver for accepting the job and threatens to take his life as payment.
Ornate shoes stomp onto the ground as the master makes a forceful and angry movement outside.
Pointing his sword, Cortez challenges the driver to find the mansion or die together in the forest. Arya senses a powerful magical barrier, realizing the estate is protected by layers of spirit energy.
Magical diagrams illustrate the overlap of spirit, divine, and mana powers protecting the Valentine family's hidden estate.
Count Cortez and his companions notice something strange, fearing rumors of monsters are actually true.
The blonde man argues with his companion, accusing him of laughing instead of listening earlier.
The group stands tense as the blonde man attributes their unsettling situation to the devil's curse. Arya wakes up with a start, her eyes wide as she listens to a rhythmic thumping. Reaching into a dark bag, Arya retrieves the white mask she used for her former confinement.
Arya decides to head out, putting on her mask before stepping quietly into the night.
Observing the dead guards, Lloyd wonders when the Valentine reputation fell enough for nobodies to trespass.
Looking down at the ground, Lloyd coldly remarks that the dogs will eventually eat the trespassers.
Arya observes Lloyd's faded gray eyes, noting the lack of life within his cold, piercing gaze.
Lloyd issues a lethal command to kill, prompting the massive wolves to lunge directly at Arya. Bracing for the impact, Arya tightly shuts her eyes as the predator's shadow looms over her.
The wolf abruptly stops its attack, letting out a soft whimper instead of a lethal bite.
To everyone's surprise, the wolf begins licking Arya's face affectionately while she stares in pure confusion.
Realizing she is alive, Arya watches the giant beast wag its tail like a happy puppy.
Lloyd questions if the beast has gone crazy, striking the wolf's head in a fit of anger.
The wolves ignore Lloyd's commands, choosing to cuddle and nuzzle against Arya in a display of affection.
Lloyd approaches Arya, dismissing the wolf's sudden change in behavior as a simple case of rabies.
Lloyd questions Arya's identity and mask, noting his hounds only respond by instinct to strong forces.
Lloyd explains that the dogs obey him because no one else in the world can follow his power.
Crouching down to her level, Lloyd directly asks the young girl if she is actually stronger than him. Lloyd bluntly tells Arya she looks too weak, even weaker than a common, insignificant garden bug.
Arya reflects on her siren ability to interact with animals, finding the large wolf strong and cute.
Arya gently touches the wolf's face, enjoying a rare moment of peaceful connection with a living creature.
Arya's eyes sparkle with joy as she thinks about how cute the large mountain wolf is.
Letting out a frustrated click of his tongue, Lloyd stares out at the dark forest with annoyance.
Lloyd warns Arya she's going to get buried by the mountain of wolves currently swarming her.
Grabbing Arya's arm, Lloyd decides he will hear the rest of the details once they are inside.
The grand Valentine mansion stands illuminated against the night sky, a symbol of isolated and dark power. A close-up shows a hand holding an ornate cup filled with a warm, reddish beverage. The butler tells Count Cortez his life was spared thanks to Arya and orders him to be grateful.
Arya looks at the floating white object in her cup, wondering what this strange item could be.
The butler leans in and whispers to Arya, identifying the sweet treat as a simple marshmallow.
Confused by the new name, Arya wonders if the marshmallow tastes anything like a sweet melon.
Sniffing the cup, Arya observes that the tea does not have the right scent she expected. Lloyd stands silently in the corner, his presence looming over the room like a dark, watchful shadow.
Lloyd mentions he must feed his hounds before the wild mountain animals eat the remains of his enemies.
Count Cortez reacts with horror, realizing the expensive guards and mercenaries he hired became simple dog food.
Glaring at Arya, Count Cortez blames her for the loss of his guards and his current predicament.
The hounds growl menacingly at the Count, their glowing eyes reflecting a hunger for his immediate demise.
The butler reiterates that the Count was almost dog food until Arya's presence luckily spared his life.
The butler offers compensation for the Count's cooperation and asks if there are any other remaining requests.
His fear replaced by greed, Count Cortez asks exactly how much he will be paid for the transaction.
Lloyd promises to pay however much the Count desires, remaining detached as he watches the man's greed.
Cortez introduces Arya as his daughter, born from his late wife, to the young Master Lloyd.
The Count dismisses Arya's current appearance, promising they will get to see her face later on.
The butler asks why he hit her. Cortez explains she's a mute who won't leak secrets for money.
Cortez notes Arya's only flaw is learning to read and write on her own despite her silence.
Cortez suggests chopping off her arms if they are worried, prompting the butler to shout his name.
The butler scolds Cortez for breaking procedures, making a fuss, and insulting the Valentine Grand Duchy.
Cortez slams the table in protest while the butler explains they only tolerated him for his father's legacy.
Arya thinks the butler is extraordinary for knowing her father's specific psychological weakness.
The butler asks if Arya's mask prevented her from drinking the tea earlier. Arya is surprised by the butler's kindness while a wolf barks loudly in the background. The large wolf appears overjoyed and affectionate, radiating a sense of pure happiness.
Arya thinks the wolf is cute while the butler ponders her first time seeing a dog.
Arya wonders if the butler is being kind because of her siren abilities.
Arya decides she must take advantage of the situation and begins writing. 13 words.
The butler looks on in silence as the young girl continues to write. Arya notes her ability to tame animals and learn fast before showing it out.
A decorative card displays a polite request for the recipient to take her along.
Arya gently grasps the butler's sleeve as the wolves watch the interaction with interest.
Count Cortez stares at Arya, who flinches as he makes a sudden movement. Cortez tells Arya to stay quiet like a lamb while grabbing her arm.
Count Cortez demands something be given to him while the wolves growl nearby.
A cloaked figure arrives, prompting someone to scream in sudden, sharp pain.
Grand Duke Valentine remarks that the situation is nice and agrees to buy it.
Arya realizes the man is Grand Duke Valentine while looking into her own eyes.
Arya notes that Lloyd resembles the man, especially because of his long hair. The Grand Duke stares at the confused girl, his expression unreadable and cold. The Grand Duke questions Arya about his reputation and her lack of fear.
Arya nods while the Duke decides to pay the down payment immediately.
The butler mentions the Duke's impulsiveness and asks if he is upset. Wearing a faint smile, the butler assures the Duke that he is not upset.
The Duke likes the child because animals follow good people, but Arya strongly disagrees.
Several large wooden chests overflow with piles of shimmering gold coins in the room. The Grand Duke orders Cortez to forget Arya or face complete family destruction.
Cortez attempts to add one more condition while the Duke asks for his response.
Cortez demands Arya's future daughter since the child cannot inherit the title anyway. Cortez smiles greedily as the Grand Duke stares at him with cold eyes.
Arya reflects on her father's brainwashed and pathetic greedy judgment until the end.
The Grand Duke finds the Count's request understandable as he looks away. The Duke warns the Count that he must want to be dog food.
The Duke orders the Count moved away for the comfort of the child. The butler regrets the Count's final words and vows to erase his daughter. Guard sees the Count after the butler gives a silent and commanding signal.
Count Cortez yells to be let go while being dragged from the room.
Arya watches the scene with wide eyes, letting out a small gasp of surprise.
The butler looks down at Arya with a calm and professional demeanor.
The butler politely asks the young lady if she is ready to proceed.
The scene shifts to the opulent and grand hallway inside the Valentine mansion. Arya admires the decor, noting the mansion is fancier than the Imperial Palace.
Dana introduces herself as the mansion's maid and the Grand Duke's nanny. 14 words.
Dana finds Arya adorable and promises to raise her and stay by her side. Arya finds the nanny's gaze tickling while Dana prepares to explain the Duke's statums. Dana explains that the Grand Duke is currently taking care of the madam.
Dana tells Arya not to be disappointed by the lack of welcoming greetings.
Arya feels unwelcome by Lloyd while Dana asks for her favorite food list. Arya struggles to think of food since she knows nothing about pleasant meals.
Arya requests warm soup that isn't cold or smelly, surprising the touching maid.
Arya wonders if bread or cheese are options while presenting her humble note.
Arya presents a note requesting a melon taste on top of her warm cocoa.
Dana looks confused by the request while the butler stifles his laughter in the background.
Arya describes the item as soft and white, prompting the butler to apologize for laughing.
Dana promises to bring the treat immediately and asks if Arya needs anything else. Arya remains silent, holding her descriptive note while staring blankly at the attentive maid.
Arya admits she doesn't know the food's name, causing Dana to worry she is disappointed.
Arya vows to memorize the name while Dana wonders if the situation warrants any tears.
A dramatic close-up focuses on the intense and sparkling details within Arya's pink eye. Overcome with emotion, Dana pulls the small girl into a sudden and protective embrace. The maid continues to hold Arya tightly, providing comfort in the silent and ornate room. Dana promises to take good care of Arya, who is surprised by the sudden comfort. Reassuring the girl, Dana states she did nothing wrong while Arya reflects on her past. Narration explains that Arya chose the safety of the Grand Duchy over seeking immediate revenge. A beautiful arrangement of spring flowers symbolizes a fresh start away from her former life. Arya relaxes in the embrace, finding comfort in a scent that reminds her of spring.
Looking out at the rain, Arya watches the droplets with a quiet and pensive expression.
Dana enters the room and asks the young lady if she experienced a frightening nightmare.
Dana blames herself for Arya's fear, calling her a baby, while Arya firmly denies her.
Arya reaches for her quill to begin writing another message for the worried brown-haired maid.
Arya presents a note clarifying that she is simply short rather than being a baby.
The maid lets out a soft laugh at the young girl's serious and blunt declaration.
Dana pets Arya's head while jokingly questioning her claim of not being a small baby.
Arya is struck with shock, processing the fact that the maid actually touched her hair. Arya touches her head, noticing the lingering warmth left behind by the maid's gentle hand.
Arya wonders if this warm sensation is why the hounds were so desperate for pets.
Dana offers another hair pat while Arya insists through a note that she's no baby.
Dana laughs and asks why the young lady was looking out at the rainy garden. The garden remains drenched by heavy rain, visible through the ornate glass of the window.
Dana mentions that the Grand Duchy is home to many rare and beautiful botanical plants.
Intrigued by the mention of nature, Arya wonders about the specific types of rare plants.
Arya expresses her desire to see them despite Dana's warning about the heavy rain outside.
Dana is overwhelmed by Arya's adorable puppy eyes, finding it impossible to refuse her request.
The maid suggests changing Arya's clothes since the rain shows no signs of letting up. Dana reveals a trunk filled with cute dresses that were brought from Arya's original home.
Arya begins writing a response as she looks down at the colorful pile of garments.
Arya explains she never wore the clothes because her father bought them right before coming.
A dark silhouette of the Count appears as Arya reflects on his greedy and deceptive actions.
Dana's opinion shifts as she declares the clothes trash, leaving the young girl quite confused. The maid criticizes the Count's poor fashion sense and labels the designs unacceptable for their house.
Dana calls for staff while Arya worries if she can still go out in the rain.
The head maid orders her staff to gather better dresses and umbrellas within 1 hour.
The maids begin the process of measuring Arya and dressing her in a new outfit.
The servants discuss the new possibilities while Arya stands patiently during the quick dressing process.
A close-up highlights the intricate lace and bows of a new purple dress and cape.
Arya's new attire is completed with a pair of matching and functional enamel rain boots. The young girl's long pink hair is tied back with a large, coordinating purple ribbon.
Arya stands fully dressed in her new rainy day ensemble, holding a small, matching purple umbrella.
Arya is amazed by the result, noting she even received an umbrella that fits her size.
Dana asks if the outfit is to her liking while Arya nods her head happily. The maid expresses her joy that Arya is satisfied before preparing for the next task. Dana presents a fluffy pink rabbit mask she made quickly to replace Arya's current uncomfortable one.
Arya questions the rabbit ears while Dana explains the mask will protect her from nightmares and night fears. Arya insists she is not a baby through a note, causing Dana to laughingly concede that she is grown.
Arya notes the Grand Duke didn't inspect her face, which is unusual since others would find her mask irritating.
Dana playfully pokes Arya's cheek, noting her rosy skin, as Arya's attempt to remain calm quickly fails.
Dana offers a cup of cocoa to help Arya stay warm in the cold weather before heading out.
Arya finds the sweet cocoa and chewy marshmallow delicious, surprised by her appetite for treats despite her previous sickness.
Dana checks on the taste while Arya presents a note confirming her enjoyment of the sweet, chewy treat.
Dana gazes at Arya with genuine affection, openly questioning how the young lady can be so incredibly adorable. Arya is left utterly stunned and flustered by the unexpected compliment, repeating the word cute in her head.
Arya remains confused by the praise while Dana notes the girl's clear lack of understanding regarding her own charm.
The atmosphere shifts abruptly as a servant shouts for the head maid while forcefully throwing open the door. A maid rushes through the room with sudden haste as her long skirt flutters behind her. Outside, the garden is soaked by rain, with large lily pads and a blooming flower floating.
Arya finds herself walking alone through the rainy garden, protected by her new blue plaid umbrella and matching outfit.
The young girl stares ahead with a focused and serious expression while thinking in the rain.
Arya identifies the location of the Grand Duchess's residence on the top floor of the main palace during her walk.
Looking up at the grand structure, Arya realizes she has reached a critical turning point in her current mission.
Alarm spreads through the palace as a servant frantically announces that the Madame's health has taken a critical turn. Dana reacts with visible horror upon hearing the news regarding the Madame's deteriorating condition while Arya watches the scene unfold.
Worried about the emergency, Dana asks Arya if she can stay alone and continue her walk in the garden.
The scene shifts to a dimly lit room where a figure lies motionless beneath the covers. A pale woman rests silently in the dark room, her face partially obscured by dark hair. Arya gently holds the frail hand of Lloyd's mother, remembering Dana's words about him caring for her during illness. Lloyd stands alone, his back to the viewer as he faces several maids in the hallway.
Arya worries that the Grand Duchess cannot be allowed to die, fearing the consequences if the Madam passes away.
A dark premonition shows Lloyd stained with blood, suggesting he will return to a life of violence if tragedy strikes. Arya feels helpless as an outsider, desperately searching for a way to intervene and prevent Lloyd's future descent into darkness.
A sharp metal blade suddenly appears, pointing directly at Arya's throat as she stands frozen.
Lloyd confronts Arya with his sword drawn, coldly demanding to know why she is wandering through the estate like a scavenger. Lloyd questions Arya's presence and hidden intentions, noting her refusal to speak as he searches for her true motive. Arya notices Lloyd's intense gaze, contrasting his current sharp focus with the empty, lifeless eyes she remembers from the past. Lloyd stares at Arya with a cold, knowing expression, stating that her current appearance is exactly what he had expected.
Lloyd remarks that Arya appears sane for now, though he keeps his weapon positioned threateningly close to her neck.
Lloyd issues a lethal threat, commanding Arya to speak immediately if she wishes to avoid a violent and messy end. Lloyd trails off ominously as he steps through the wet mud, leaving his threat hanging in the cold, rainy air. Arya flinches in fear as the cold tip of the sword moves dangerously close to her.
Lloyd falls silent, observing Arya's terrified reaction with a piercing gaze as the rain continues to fall between them.
Lloyd finally acknowledges Arya's silence, concluding that the rumors regarding her inability to speak are likely true after all.
Arya feels internally defiant, questioning whether Lloyd is testing her because he has never truly trusted her from the beginning.
Lloyd acknowledges Arya's keen instincts, wondering aloud if she is truly as sharp as she seems or if it's intuition.
Arya looks at the dark-haired boy with confusion, her thoughts drifting back to the rabbit-themed gift given to her earlier.
Lloyd speaks a single word, identifying the theme of Arya's new mask while he maintains his watchful and intense posture.
A poetic vow appears against a backdrop of falling stars, expressing a willingness to be consumed for another's light.
Arya thinks about the comforting sensation of being petted while Lloyd remains silent, his expression unreadable as they stand together.
Arya lets out a small sound of surprise while observing the grand estate under heavy rain.
The ornate stone arches of the Valentine Palace stand tall and silent under the heavy downpour. Lloyd makes a thoughtful sound as he takes Arya's small, wet hand into his own, bridging the distance between them.
Lloyd mockingly questions Arya's lack of strength, comparing her frailty to his mother and noting her complete absence of muscle. The dark-haired boy's expression softens slightly as he looks down at the girl in the rain.
Arya stands with a determined expression while preparing for the next step in her plan.
Lloyd commands Arya to turn around while his hands reach toward her back.
Lloyd adjusts the back of Arya's outfit, ensuring everything is properly secured and in place.
Addressing her by a new nickname, Lloyd calls her Rabbit as he looks at her mask.
Lloyd suspiciously asks Arya if she is actually the prey of the notorious gutter rat. Arya is confused by the underworld terminology while reflecting on her unexpected reputation among the Valentines.
Arya considers the many enemies the Valentines face. Admitting Lloyd's suspicion toward her is actually reasonable.
Lloyd explains that gutter rat minions are often mute or mutilated and notes Arya's suspicious origins.
Lloyd mentions a specific method to determine whether Arya is truly a minion of his enemies.
Someone questions the existence of such a test while noting the Emperor's struggle with underworld agents. Lloyd steps closer to Arya and commands her to repeat his words exactly as he says.
Lloyd places his hand firmly on the hilt of his sword, ready for immediate action. Lloyd suggests they go hunt some rats while Arya stands silently under his intense, cold gaze.
Lloyd dismissively tells Arya to go away as long as she refrains from interfering with him.
Lloyd warns Arya that constant vigilance is her only hope for survival in the Grand Duchy.
Lloyd bluntly states that the Valentine Grand Duchy has no room for a weak child.
Maids discuss the madam's critical health and Lloyd's sudden disappearance as Arya peeks from behind a pillar.
A maid sighs deeply while predicting that many lives will likely be lost by the day's end.
The maids discuss the severity of the current crisis until one commands the other to be silent.
The madam speaks words that sound like a final will, startling the servants with her grim tone.
The madam expresses her desire to be buried under a cherry tree and her yearning for spring.
Arya listens as a voice curses the world and the gods, feeling the weight of the moment.
Arya focuses on the mention of the cherry tree, realizing its significance to the dying madam. Arya recalls seeing the specific tree earlier while walking through the garden during the heavy rain.
Arya confirms she can see the cherry tree from the window, just as Dana had described.
Bare, dark branches of the cherry trees stretch out against the gray and rainy sky. Rain continues to drench the skeletal branches of the tree as Arya watches from the palace.
Arya prepares herself to sing the Song of Life, focusing all her energy on the tree.
Touching the rough bark, Arya reflects on the novelty of singing in the open air. Arya marvels at the incredible feeling of finally being able to sing without any restrictions. Golden light and pink petals swirl around Arya as she begins her powerful siren song. A trail of magical energy flows through the rain, reaching toward the barren cherry tree. Arya reaches out as lyrics about fate shining down appear in the glowing magical atmosphere. The song promises peace against the elements, addressing the tree with deep and endearing affection. Arya continues her magical performance, radiating light as she channels her siren power into the garden.
Arya smiles gently while her Song of Life continues to resonate through the dark, rainy palace.
Pink blossoms begin to sprout instantly on the previously dead branches of the cherry tree.
The entire cherry tree bursts into a full and beautiful bloom despite the heavy rainfall.
Arya looks up at the miracle she created, surrounded by a sea of pink blossoms.
Arya gasps in sudden pain as the strain of using her powerful siren ability takes hold. Trembling, Arya realizes her small body cannot endure the physical toll of such intense magic.
Arya reaches a finger toward the birds fluttering among the magical blossoms in the garden.
Holding a small bird, Arya quietly asks it to perform a crucial favor for her. Arya watches with hope as the small bird flies toward the upper windows of the palace.
Arya collapses onto the grass, her long pink hair spilling out as her strength finally fades.
The small bird arrives at the ornate glass doors carrying Arya's message into the palace. Two maids react with shock as a loud thud echoes from the balcony doors behind them. A maid turns around in surprise, questioning what could have caused the sudden noise. A white pigeon lands on the balcony railing, visible through the grand palace window.
Maids try to shoo away the bird while the madam asks why they are making a commotion.
Maids notice a bird hitting the window and plan to scare it away immediately. The pale madam hears the noise and expresses her desire to see the brave bird.
Despite her condition, the madam requests assistance to dress so she can get up.
The madam walks through the room, her silhouette illuminated as she moves toward the window. Staring outside with wide eyes, the madam questions if she is actually seeing cherry blossoms.
Dana is confused, explaining it is raining too hard for cherry blossoms to be blooming.
The brown-haired maid thinks to herself that such a botanical miracle is completely impossible.
Pink petals drift past the madam as she looks out at the blooming garden scene.
Reaching her pale hand toward the sky, the madam watches the blossoms dance in air. Thousands of pink petals swirl through the rainy sky, creating a breathtaking and magical atmosphere.
The madam stands on the balcony, witnessing the impossible blooming of the palace's cherry trees.
The scene shifts to a quiet morning in the grand dining room of the Valentine mansion.
A hand pushes open the heavy doors, breaking the silence of the opulent bedchamber. Lloyd enters the room, his footsteps echoing on the carpet as he approaches the bed.
The black-haired boy stands over the sleeping girl, who is still wearing her rabbit mask.
Lloyd reaches a gentle hand toward Arya as she sleeps soundly beneath the warm covers.
Close up on Lloyd's face as he observes the sleeping girl with a contemplative expression.
Outside the palace, voices call out frantically for the lady while searching the vast grounds. 15 words.
Maids worry about Arya's sudden disappearance, questioning how long she has been missing from her room.
Someone claims to be the last to see her before noticing the young master's arrival.
Lloyd admits he threatened Arya to leave, realizing she likely hid out of fear and danger.
A heavy silence falls between the young master and the maids during the tense confrontation.
Lloyd declares his intention to take full responsibility for finding the girl he calls the rabbit. The maids beg Lloyd not to threaten the lady again once he manages to find her.
Lloyd curses his previous actions, wondering why he drove her away at such a dangerous time.
Walking into the garden, Lloyd stops in shock as he notices the petals in the air.
The cherry tree branches are laden with thick, vibrant pink blossoms despite the heavy rainfall.
Lloyd stands in the middle of the garden, surrounded by the impossible spring-like miracle. 15 words.
Lloyd questions the appearance of cherry blossoms, knowing the tree was previously dead and fallen.
Confirming it is not a dream, the boy pinches his own cheek in disbelief.
Lloyd looks around the garden, his dark hair windblown as petals continue to fall.
Petals fall into a small hand as the scene focuses on the magical garden environment.
Lloyd's feet stop abruptly as he discovers a brown bag left behind on the grass.
A look of realization crosses Lloyd's face as he stares down at the abandoned item.
Lloyd looks at the bag near the tree and identifies it as belonging to Arya.
Lloyd curiously inspects the bag, wondering if it contains dangerous items like poison or hidden weapons.
Finding notes in ink, Lloyd realizes she writes to communicate and worries about information being leaked.
Lloyd picks up the papers, questioning why the notes appear so old and worn out.
One note describes the beauty of the flowers and Arya's genuine enjoyment of them.
Another note shows her request for melon flavor on top of her warm cup of cocoa. Lloyd realizes she meant marshmallow and reflects on her lack of knowledge about common treats.
A faint, genuine smile appears on Lloyd's face as he continues reading the innocent notes. Lloyd notes the extreme age of the papers, feeling a growing sense of suspicion.
Lloyd's expression turns grim and focused as he prepares to read the remaining papers.
Arya's tragic past is revealed through notes begging for forgiveness and asking not to be hip.
Lloyd stands in the falling petals, holding a final, heart-wrenching message in his hand. The final note contains a simple and desperate plea from the girl to be loved. Sunlight streams into a silent, beautifully decorated sitting room within the grand Valentine estate. Maids crowd around Arya's bed, expressing their immense relief that she has finally woken up.
Arya sits up in bed, completely baffled by the intense emotional reaction from the surrounding maids.
Arya wonders if the people in the palace have been taking care of her while sleeping. Dana looks at Arya with concern, noting how small and soft the young lady is.
A hand gently pets Arya's hair while a voice asks if she is feeling better.
Arya nods happily as the person expresses relief that she is doing well after resting. Two maids are overcome with emotion, declaring that Arya is both lovely and incredibly adorable. Arya has a moment of realization, her eyes widening slightly as she remembers something important.
Arya writes a note asking about the Grand Duchess, and Dana explains she is safe.
Dana mentions Lloyd visited while Arya slept, causing the young girl to react with surprise.
Dana presents a leather bag, explaining that the young master ordered her to give it.
Arya is relieved that Lloyd returned her bag, which she thought she had lost earlier.
Arya looks surprised as she opens the bag to find its mysterious and unexpected contents.
Arya discovers an engraved pen by a famous craftsman and wonders why it was included. Dana suggests Lloyd found the pen in the office while Arya remains in the gaze. Arya considers the Valentine's wealth while wondering what else might be hidden inside the bag.
Arya pulls out a note that bluntly commands her to go away when she finishes.
Arya assumes the fountain pen is a farewell gift intended to make her leave forever.
Arya asks if Lloyd hates her, but Dana admits she cannot truly judge his feelings.
Dana explains Lloyd ordered every type of dessert for Arya, which seems like an impossibility. Surrounded by skull patterns, Arya is confused by the young master's sudden change in behavior.
Arya wonders if the generous desserts are similar to a death row inmate's final meal.
The Grand Valentine Palace stands majestically under a bright blue sky with soft white clouds.
Maids praise Arya for taking her medicine and offer her flower-shaped candies as a reward.
Arya holds a jar filled with small, colorful candies that resemble a field of flowers.
Arya is amazed by the candies, questioning why they look like precious and sparkling gems.
A beautiful, sparkling glow surrounds Arya as she admires the colorful treats in her hands. 15 words.
The maids are struck by Arya's charm while she wonders if something just shot out.
Maids present a variety of indoor flowers, identifying them as dahlias and primulas for Arya. A maid reaches towards some blue mascari flowers while beginning to explain their symbolic meaning.
Arya sits at her desk, surrounded by a magical and shimmering display of various flowers.
Dana explains that since garden flowers cause colds, Arya must settle for these indoor blooms.
Arya finds the flowers breathtakingly beautiful right before a sudden sneeze interrupts the quiet moment.
Dana informs Arya that from now on, several personal knights will be assigned to protect her.
Arya is impressed that the Grand Duchy has provided 6 knights for her exclusive protection.
Arya notices one knight has a particularly sour expression, making her feel slightly uneasy.
Staring at the grumpy knight, Arya wonders if he was forced to come against his will.
A loud sneeze echoes through the room, startling the maids and instantly changing the mood.
Arya sneezes again, worrying that the sound was too loud for the formal palace setting.
The maids look shocked and concerned, leaving Arya confused by the sudden shift in atmosphere.
A series of exclamation marks illustrates the collective shock and panic felt by the maids.
A red-haired maid panics and declares that flowers will be blacklisted to protect the lady.
The maids discuss potential infections and allergies, worrying intensely about the young lady's fragile health. Arya watches the chaos unfold as her pink eyes reflect the surrounding floral and magical atmosphere.
Dana sternly points toward the door, ordering the other staff to remove all the flowers.
Arya feels a sense of loss as the pretty flowers are removed from her sitting room. Dana apologizes for the careless mistake, citing her lack of experience caring for outside residents.
Arya writes a note questioning what it means to be someone from outside the border.
Narration explains the border mountains and notes that people within Valentine are exceptionally strong.
Arya recalls that the wolves raised by the Grand Duke were significantly larger than normal creatures.
Arya looks thoughtful while realizing the unique and powerful nature of the Valentine Estate's inhabitants.
Lloyd reminds Arya that the Grand Duchy has no place for a weak child like her.
Arya reflects on Lloyd's previous comments about her being weak and having no place.
Dana insists that connection to the Valentine family provides a level of strength incomparable to anyone. A servant pushes a cart forward while mentioning there is one more thing to present.
Dana explains she prepared a tray of medicinal drinks designed to quickly cure a common cold.
The maids panic and argue over whether the ginger in the tea will upset Arya's palate. A maid offers a frantic apology for the possibility that the drink might not be perfect. The staff debate the safety of a raw egg remedy, worrying it might cause food poisoning. Dana warns that people from outside the border are weak, and Arya is the weakest among them.
Arya feels indignant about being compared to a helpless infant just because of her physical constitution.
Despite the overwhelming attention, Arya admits to herself that she does not dislike the constant care.
Arya reflects on the novel sensation of feeling truly appreciated and protected by the palace staff. The peaceful atmosphere is interrupted as Arya notices a strange man standing in the doorway.
A green-haired knight in formal armor stands silently with a cold and judgmental expression.
The knight lets out a mocking laugh as he looks down at the young girl. The knight questions if someone so weak could ever fulfill the duty of producing a Valentine heir.
Arya's heightened siren senses allow her to hear the knight's whispered insults despite his low volume.
Arya reflects on the foolishness of those who try to rank human value based on physical strength. Feeling genuinely annoyed by the knight's arrogance, Arya begins to write a sharp and calculated response.
Arya dismisses the knight's presence with a sharp wave of her hand as she finishes writing.
The knight, Anshu, arrogantly assumes Arya is writing a request for him and offers his service.
The maids are visibly horrified by Anka's disrespectful and overconfident attitude toward the young lady.
Anshu maintains his arrogant posture, seemingly unaware of the growing anger in the room.
Arya stares at the knight with a flat, unimpressed expression as she prepares to reveal her note.
Anshu offers a fake apology, claiming he simply didn't care enough about her to pay attention. The maids react with shock as Anshu continues his condescending remarks under the guise of concern. Arya realizes the knight believes she is a burden to the military family serving the Grand Duchy. Arya places a note on the table, bluntly asking the knight to state his current age.
Caught off guard by this simple question, the knight hesitantly admits that he is 24 years old.
Arya looks at the knight with pity, her eyes fixed on him as the tension rises. Arya's notes mock the knight's lack of lifetime achievements and offer sarcastic pity for his character.
Anshu is stunned by the girl's verbal jab, his face flushing with anger and disbelief.
Anshu grits his teeth in fury, struggling to contain his temper after being insulted by a child.
Trembling with rage, Anshu demands to know if Arya has achieved anything herself to justify such insults.
Arya remains calm and silent, watching the knight lose his composure with a steady, unblinking gaze. Arya reveals a note stating her goal is to never grow up to be like the knight. The staff rush forward, ordering the knight to step away from the young lady immediately. Anshu lets out a sinister laugh, his eyes narrowing as he looks at Arya with predatory intent.
Lloyd appears in the doorway, his sudden presence instantly shifting the power dynamic in the room.
Lloyd draws his sword with a lethal grace, questioning the knight's choice of word toward Arya.
Lloyd's face is a mask of cold fury as he prepares to punish the knight's disrespect.
Arya shakes her head frantically, trying to prevent the situation from turning into a violent confrontation.
Arya is visibly nervous, her face sweating as she realizes how much trouble her notes cost. Lloyd looks down at the cowering knight, his gaze more dangerous than the edge of his blade.
Flanked by two massive black wolves, Lloyd dares the knight to repeat the name he called Arya.
The knight's arrogance vanishes instantly, replaced by a look of sheer terror as he faces Lloyd.
Lloyd stands firm, the dark energy and the presence of the beasts making his dominance absolute.
Anshu stammers a desperate apology, claiming he misunderstood the young lady and admitting he was wrong.
Lloyd finds the knight's sudden 180-degree turn in confidence to be absolutely hilarious.
Lloyd issues a final cold command, ordering the knight to drop to his knees immediately.
The knight's pride is shattered as he falls to the floor, kneeling in total submission.
Anshu trembles while bowing deeply and stammering a desperate apology for his previous behavior.
Arya thinks that such a forced apology is unnecessary and he should have been silent.
Lloyd asks Arya why she constantly suppresses her emotions instead of expressing her true feelings.
Arya is startled by the sudden question, feeling she has already communicated what was needed.
A hand reaches into a dark pocket as the boy prepares to give something away.
Lloyd presents Arya with metal knuckles, making her worry he intends for her to fight.
Lloyd formally grants Arya his full authority as they sit together in the ornate room.
Lloyd strips the knight of his title and demotes him to permanent stable duty.
Arya looks on in shock as the boy declares this to be his final favor.
Lloyd turns away, telling Arya to find a new home before he returns to Valentine Mansion.
Arya wonders if the Grand Master's power is used primarily to exile people from the estate.
Morning light fills the room while a quiet tapping sound echoes from the balcony window.
Arya wakes up slowly, blinking her eyes as the persistent tapping continues against the glass.
Rubbing her eyes, Arya sits up and wonders what is causing the strange morning noise.
Arya recognizes the white pigeon from earlier landing on the windowsill with a letter attached.
Arya observes the bird closely, curious about the paper tied to its leg.
Arya holds the crumpled note in her hands, deciding to read the mysterious message.
Arya reads the note about enduring life, her expression turning somber and deeply contemplative.
Arya is startled, realizing that the message is a direct response to her earlier song.
Arya panics, wondering if someone heard her sing and if her siren identity is compromised.
Arya grips the paper, reflecting on the writer's determination to bear the weight of life.
Arya looks toward the window, vowing to save the person who wrote the heartbreaking note.
The scene details the luxurious furniture as Arya prepares to leave her room.
Arya promises to show the person every season, watching the bird fly into the sky.
Arya reaffirms her resolve to save the writer, her eyes shining with newfound purpose.
Arya stands alone in her room, contemplating the challenges of living in the Valentine house.
A distorted memory shows Arya in different attire, reflecting on her past life's hardships.
Arya recalls leaning against a tree during a rainstorm, exhausted by her own powers.
Arya reflects on the physical limits of her current 10-year-old body regarding her magic.
Arya realizes she risks death if she attempts to sing songs of healing or destruction.
Arya sighs wearily, feeling the immense weight of the powers she was born with.
Clenching her hand against her dress, Arya confirms her suspicions about her fragile state.
Arya becomes determined to find a private place where she can safely practice her singing.
Arya rushes toward the door, surprising Dana, who asks where she's going so fast.
Dana catches Arya's hand, stopping her from running out of the room alone.
Dana asks Arya if she is seeking out Eddie and tells her to settle down.
Arya gives Dana a pleading look, but the maid insists that puppy eyes are useless.
Dana maintains her stern expression, repeatedly refusing Arya's silent request to leave.
Arya intensifies her sparkling gaze, hoping to sway the maid with her adorable and persistent expression.
Dana finally relents with a sigh, ordering Arya to return before the sun goes down.
Dana warns Arya to seek assistance from anyone nearby if she happens to get lost.
Arya holds up a note and cheers happily after finally gaining the maid's permission.
Arya walks down the grand, carpeted hallway of the mansion, starting her secret exploration.
Arya looks around for a practice spot but stops abruptly when something catches her eye.
A sudden sound effect illustrates Arya tripping or having a clumsy accident in the hallway.
Arya finds herself on the floor, staring up at a massive, panting gray wolf.
Arya recognizes the creature, realizing it is the same animal she met in the garden.
Arya strokes the wolf's face, asking the large beast how it got into the palace.
Arya playfully asks if the wolf missed her while it sniffs her with affection.
Arya is amazed, sensing that the wolf can actually understand everything she is saying.
Arya commands the large wolf to give its hand and then orders it to sit. Arya makes a finger gun gesture and the wolf playfully rolls over onto its back.
Arya gently pets the wolf's head while praising the creature for doing a good job.
Arya recalls a memory of a man warning her that her presence causes nearby deaths.
Arya hops off the wolf's back, her small shoes landing lightly on the palace floor. Arya asks the wolf to take her to a secluded area where no one visits. The wolf sprints through the palace hallway with a determined young girl on its back. A tall, black-haired man in an unbuttoned shirt stands waiting in a grand doorway. Arya is visibly startled to encounter the man, wondering about his presence in the palace. Arya stands frozen in shock, her thoughts racing as she stares at the imposing figure. The wolf happily greets the man while the green-haired butler watches the interaction with concern. The black-haired man notes with surprise that Arya is using his hound as a horse. Arya quickly reaches into her bag to grab her notes for a silent written response. The man asks Arya to be nicer to his hound while she privately critiques him. Arya jumps down from the wolf's back and makes her way toward the waiting man. The black-haired man maintains a cool and expectant gaze as he looks down at Arya. Arya remains in a daze, struggling to find the appropriate way to address the man. Arya frantically sifts through her collection of papers, trying to find a suitable greeting card.
Arya shows 2 different formal titles to the men, unsure which one is more fitting.
Arya looks up nervously at the tall man, hoping her written communication is sufficient. The black-haired man carefully examines the notes Arya holds up with a silent, focused gaze. The green-haired butler reacts with intense shock after reading the message on Arya's paper.
Arya reveals 2 notes, stating she came specifically because she wanted to see her father.
The scene shifts to the ornate chandelier as the man considers Arya surprising and direct with it. The butler is baffled that Arya approached the man while other children would normally flee.
Overcome with emotion, the butler wonders what hardships the girl endured in her past life. The butler observes Arya silently as she begins to write another message for the man.
Arya holds up a note expressing her genuine happiness at seeing the man again today. The black-haired man remains silent as he stares at Arya, his expression unreadable and calm.
The man admits he finds Arya interesting, a slight smirk-like smile appearing on his face.
Arya thinks about the people who care for her and feels a genuine smile forming. Surrounded by a magical floral aura, Arya smiles brightly while holding up her latest note. Arya watches the man's reaction closely, realizing he has acknowledged her silent presence and intentions. The man wonders why Arya rode a hound across the palace just to see him. The group reflects on the long absence since they last saw each other in prison. The man continues to stare at Arya, his curiosity about her strange behavior clearly piqued. The man asks if Arya's visit means she wants to play a gameka.
Arya is caught off guard, frantically thinking about her true purpose for visiting the man.
The black-haired man rests his hand on his chin, contemplating how to handle the child. The man asks if he should play with Arya using his son's intense training methods. The butler panics and objects, knowing the man's games are too dangerous for a child. The butler reminds the man that Arya is a fragile outsider who was recently sick.
Arya imagines the Valentines playing violent, bloody games like devils, which leaves her feeling horrified.
The man insults Arya's strength, but she nods when he asks if she is recovered. The man smiles mischievously while asking what Arya plans to do in his presence now. The wolf looks between the humans with confusion, unable to follow the current tense conversation. The man remains skeptical of Arya's intentions, asking why she is currently in his room. Arya becomes dizzy and overwhelmed by the man's interrogation, her eyes spinning in her head.
Arya presents a note definitively stating that she wishes to stay by her father's side.
Arya begins to cough as she notices the thick cigarette smoke filling the grand office. The green-haired butler whispers that secondhand smoke is bad for the weak young lady and reminds the black-haired man that many documents need approval today. The green-haired butler continues his quiet advice, suggesting the black-haired man tell Arya to come back later, which he eventually accepts. The black-haired man extinguishes his cigarette and orders the staff to ventilate the room, an instruction the butler immediately confirms. The large, ornate wooden doors of the study swing wide open, letting fresh air flow out into the quiet balcony. Arya stands in the doorway looking slightly dazed and unwell, her pink hair and lace mask highlighted by the morning light. Arya shivers in the drafty hallway, thinking about how cold it feels while clutching her dark dress with trembling hands. The black-haired man claims he is quite observant before tossing his heavy, dark cloak toward the small and shivering girl. The black-haired man gently drapes his large cloak over Arya's head and shoulders to protect her from the cold palace air.
Arya peeks out from beneath the oversized fabric, wondering why the man suddenly decided to cover her with his own clothes.
The man remarks that Arya seems weaker than he originally thought as his hand reaches down to retrieve her dropped note. Arya watches in shock as the man collects her card and tucks it into his pocket, wondering why he took it. The black-haired man offers a subtle, knowing smile and instructs Arya to stay by his side and take a deep, steady breath.
Arya questions the odd instruction to breathe while the large gray wolf nearby sits on the floor and pants heavily.
Arya begins counting her breaths, wondering if breathing feels difficult simply because she has become suddenly and intensely self-conscious of the act. The black-haired man warns Arya that she will run out of breath entirely if she continues to obsess over the simple action. Arya feels indignant and frustrated, silently thinking that her current difficulty breathing is entirely the fault of the man's presence. A butler slams a massive stack of books and documents onto the desk, declaring they all need to be approved today. The black-haired man wishes he had time to breathe, but the butler insists he can survive without breaks while presenting more work. The man questions if he is expected to work even while suffocating, but the butler claims it is just a simple misunderstanding. Arya asks if it is all right for her to just sit and watch quietly since she has nothing else to do.
Arya's pink eyes widen with a sudden realization as she observes the serious conversation happening between the men in the room.
Narration explains the people's fear of a spreading curse and mentions Viscount Cavendish's involvement in a recent and troubling incident. A shadowy man in a top hat is described as having made an obvious mistake but receiving a huge amount of compensation nonetheless.
A hand taps the desk as narration describes people who barged into the territory and got cursed, leading to feelings of regret. The black-haired man sits at his ornate desk in a pensive mood, resting his face against his hand in quiet contemplation.
The man asks about the investigation, and the green-haired butler reports finding clues of fire in the forest, but nothing else noteworthy.
The man contemplates killing those responsible for the annoyance, but the butler warns that killing the Viscount would cause even more trouble.
The green-haired butler firmly rejects the idea of murder, maintaining a professional and composed expression during the dark discussion.
The man reflects on family principles and decides that giving the target money is a better way to cultivate false hope.
A hand taps the desk as the man anticipates watching his target eventually crawl and beg for death after losing everything. The black-haired man looks cold and menacing while predicting that his enemy will soon be begging for death at his feet.
The butler awkwardly clears his throat and reminds the man that the young lady is right there listening to his plans. Arya considers the man's strategy, wondering if giving bait to a known scammer is truly the most necessary or effective option. Gold coins fall as narration explains the Viscount was a gambler who lived lavishly and would likely never change his ways. Arya thinks that the man's plan to lead the Viscount into deeper trouble actually seems like a very good way to handle him.
Arya begins writing a new message on a piece of paper with her quill, the scratching sound echoing through the office.
Arya presents a note claiming she knows how to heal, which causes the black-haired man to look at her with skepticism. The black-haired man leans over his desk to watch Arya closely as she continues to write her silent, written responses.
The black-haired man maintains a serious and focused gaze as he stares directly at Arya while she finishes her latest message.
Arya completes a note stating that medicine for treating worms will work on the parasites, causing the man to observe her curiously.
The black-haired man finds Arya's suggestion absolutely fascinating and laughs, while she wonders why he thinks her written comment is funny.
Arya looks genuinely annoyed and asks the laughing man exactly what part of her medicine suggestion he finds so incredibly funny.
The butler expresses a loss for words while reflecting on the worm medicine situation, while the man praises Arya's intelligence for deducing the presence of parasites from seeing fire in the forest.
Arya reflects that riding the hounds is why she can see her father daily, but realizes the creature is currently heading away.
Arya panics and clings to the speeding hound, wondering exactly where the animal is taking her in this completely opposite direction. Arya is shocked to see the mansion that originally bought her as she rushes through the surrounding gardens on the beast's back.
A blonde woman and a dark-haired man in military uniforms look surprised as Arya arrives suddenly at their location.
The dark-haired knight asks why the young lady has come here while she puts a finger to her lips for silence. The knights find Arya's attempt at eavesdropping and playing detective to be absolutely adorable, though they doubt her heightened hearing will allow her to actually hear anything through the walls. Arya reflects on the difficulties of being a child, while the two knights watch her with sparkling, excited, and appreciative eyes.
Arya holds up a blunt note that simply says murder while signaling for the knights to remain quiet about her presence.
Arya grows increasingly annoyed as the knights continue to fail at their babysitting duties.
Arya decides to take matters into her own hands and prepares to investigate the situation.
Approaching the large wooden doors, Arya suddenly pauses when she overhears a familiar voice inside. Inside the room, voices discuss the illogical claiming of damages regarding a recent parasite outbreak.
The black-haired man claims that the parasites are his property and the Count is mistaken.
The black-haired man intimidates the trembling Count by accusing him of theft without permission.
The Count begs for mercy while internal thoughts reveal the desperation to avoid taking blame.
Narration explains the servants got sick after pathetically eating snakes found in the Valentine Mountains.
The Count blames droughts for his financial desperation, but the man demands he get to the point.
The black-haired man remains unimpressed by the excuses, stating that he is completely speechless.
A sword is drawn, causing the terrified Count to hiccup in fear of his life.
The black-haired man questions why he would travel just to see such a filthy individual.
The butler pleads for a brief audience while the man warns he simply hasn't killed him yet.
Grabbing the Count by the collar, the man gives him 5 minutes to speak with honesty. The Count offers a 500-year-old artifact as Arya listens from outside the door in shock.
The black-haired man finds the offer acceptable, finally relaxing his intense and lethal posture. The man demands $700 million immediately and the remaining $300 million within a month.
The black-haired man turns away, coldly stating that 1 month is more than enough time.
The man orders the Count to leave and the terrified noble scurries toward the exit.
Arya panics as she realizes the man is approaching the door where she is eavesdropping.
The heavy doors swing open abruptly, revealing Arya standing there in the middle of the hallway. The Count looks down at Arya with disdain, rudely questioning the child's presence in his way.
The Count tells Arya to move but stops suddenly when he recognizes her distinct hair color.
The man roughly grabs Arya's hair accessory, his face twisting into a sinister and greedy expression.
The Count laughs maniacally, realizing that this child is the key to a massive fortune.
Arya trembles in sheer terror as the man looms over her with a predatory and crazed smile.
The Count realizes Arya is the Siren's daughter and wonders how such news remained a secret.
Grabbing her arm, the Count threatens to expose her identity unless she sings her siren songs.
The man calls Arya a divine angel and mocks how much her father would love her.
Arya's expression turns dark as she is flooded with traumatic memories of her painful past life. Narration describes the unwanted secrets whispered to her while trapped behind the bars of a cage.
Arya recalls the horrific torture of losing her legs and being forced to sing until vomiting blood.
Blood splatters across the scene as Arya reflects on the miserable life she was forced to endure.
A vision of a regal man appears, standing in a brightly lit and high-ceilinged room.
The black-haired man intervenes with lethal force, his blade drawing blood as he defends the girl.
The Count's body hits the floor with a dull thud, signaling the end of this life.
The butler observes the corpse while the man dismisses the death as a result of causing trouble. The green-haired butler sighs, reflecting that the situation resolved itself much easier than he had anticipated.
The black-haired man gazes into the distance, admitting that he never expected this specific turn of events.
Looking at Arya, the man notices her desperate and fearful expression as she shrinks from him. The man asks if being the Siren's daughter is that painful before wiping her face clean. The man orders a list of conspirators while the butler complains about the constant battlefield cleanups. Arya reaches out to touch a nearby curtain, her small hand moving with a sense of wonder. Arya presents a note thanking the man for his protection, though she looks somewhat dazed. The butler is horrified that the girl is thanking a man for committing a cold-blooded murder. The man questions if death is worth thanking for while placing a comforting hand on her head.
Several days later, the mansion remains quiet under the soft glow of many flickering candles.
The black-haired man sits on his ornate chair, deep in thought amidst the silence of his room. The man looks at the toys and flowers, questioning why he bought so many childish things.
Resting his chin on his hand, the man concludes that these objects do not fit his palace.
Arya considers sleeping on a sofa since the wolf's muscular build might be too firm.
Arya holds up a note thanking her father while surrounded by a joyful, sparkling aura.
The black-haired man reflects on the numerous childish gifts he recently purchased for the grow.
While looking at maps, the man considers Arya's constant written praise for his actions. The black-haired man remains deep in thought, staring blankly with an uncertain hum. The man says something is missing while the butler critiques the office's new playroom appearance.
The black-haired man orders the staff to light his cigar while he continues to contemplate.
Arya stands among her new toys and flowers, appearing small and lost in the room. The man abruptly changes his mind and orders the butler to extinguish the lit cigar.
Arya's small, pale hand reaches out tentatively to touch the surface of the wooden table.
Arya looks up with wide, hopeful eyes, her expression soft and filled with quiet wonder.
Arya presents a glass jar filled with colorful star-shaped candies tied with a brown ribbon.
The man asks what the jar contains, reads Arya's note, and questions if she wants him to eat it.
The man considers the jar, noting that children usually enjoy eating these types of sweets. The doctor reports that while physically healthy, Arya is malnourished because her body refuses food. The black-haired man reclines in his chair, impatiently demanding the doctor get to the point. The man stares intensely as the doctor mentions the massive psychological impact on the young girl. The doctor explains that psychological therapy through conversation helps stability, noting Arya hasn't eaten because she has devoured something else.
The man demands the doctor put his explanation simply as the elderly man continues to sweat. Arya sits alone in a white nightgown, appearing incredibly fragile and weighed down by sorrow. The doctor calls his theory a hypothesis, but the man demands to know why she isn't cured. The doctor looks at the man with absolute terror, stammering a fearful and uncertain response.
Facing the man's wrath, the terrified doctor begs desperately for his life to be spared.
The green-haired butler whispers to the man, who responds with a cold and dismissive question.
The butler reminds the man the doctor found the cause of Arya's disorder and suggests it is unwise to kill him. The butler suggests that even if the doctor failed to cure her body, the man might heal her heart. The man realizes his presence alone makes Arya happy and prepares for her daily visit. Within the grand study, the man suddenly announces that Arya will be getting married soon. Arya clutches her teddy bear in shock, her eyes wide with confusion at the sudden news. Arya is shocked by the sudden news while the man promises a wedding as luxurious as the Empress's. Arya's note asks about Lloyd's feelings, but the man says it is groundwork and offers divorce once she becomes an adult. Arya worries that forcing Lloyd into marriage will permanently damage their relationship and his feelings. Arya realizes she doesn't want a loveless marriage and would rather stay and play with father.
The man notes Arya's eating difficulties and watches her reaction with a concerned, steady gaze. The man admits he doesn't understand repressed feelings but vows to tear the mouths of anyone who criticizes her.
The man vows to gouge out the eyes of anyone who looks at Arya unpleasantly.
The man threatens to maim anyone who dares to touch her without his express permission.
Kneeling, the man tells Arya she is free to cry, laugh, or be angry whenever her heart allows.
The green-haired butler is horrified that the man followed such terrifying threats with a sentimental offer.
Overwhelmed by the man's words, Arya begins to shed silent tears that fall like rain. The man embraces Arya, claiming that everything else in the world has become completely irrelevant.
Arya's small hand grips the man's dark cloak tightly as she seeks comfort in his embrace.
Arya presents a note to the brown-haired maid stating that she finally wants to eat.
The maid suggests soup, but Arya shakes her head in a firm and silent refusal.
The maid is overcome with joy that Arya has finally found something she wishes to eat. The maids rush to inform the chef that the young lady has requested scrambled eggs. A fresh plate of fluffy scrambled eggs and tomato is prepared and ready for something. A servant carefully carries the warm plate of food toward the waiting and hungry young girl. Arya thinks the food looks tasty and smells like sweet, warm milk as she prepares to eat. Arya lifts a spoonful of the fluffy eggs, finally ready to take a small, tentative bite.
Arya takes her first bite and enthusiastically declares that the food is absolutely delicious.
Arya reflects on her past indifference toward food, realizing for the first time how taste feels.
Overwhelmed by the joy of eating, Arya thinks to herself that she wants to cry again.
A clean and empty plate remains on the table, indicating that the meal was thoroughly enjoyed.
The chef and maids nervously ask the young lady if the food suited her personal taste. Arya holds up a note describing the food as mushy, causing a sparkle to fill the room.
The staff excitedly offers Arya a strawberry cake, the chef's special cookies, honey-coated fruits, and various colorful candies.
Arya presents a heartfelt note that simply says thank you while surrounded by a floral aura.
The chef over-exaggerates his reaction, tearfully shouting that the young lady possesses a divine halo.
The staff expresses their gratitude for seeing her note, though one maid gets hit by a colleague. A person asks who Arya is, while she wonders exactly who they are as well in return.
The Grand Palace stands tall under a clear sky, framed by the lush green leaves of trees.
A pair of polished white shoes steps onto the dark carpet outside a parked carriage.
The black-haired boy walks away from the carriage, his elegant attire decorated with many ornate silver chains.
The black-haired boy gazes forward with a calm and serious expression under the bright daylight.
The black-haired boy continues his walk through the palace courtyard, passing by a variety of blooming flowers.
The black-haired boy stands silhouetted against the bright blue sky, looking toward the horizon in quiet thought. The black-haired boy stops as a blonde boy approaches and asks if he has arrived as well.
The blonde boy explains that he has returned home because the academy is currently on vacation.
The boys walk together, with the blonde boy noting he'll take the comment as a compliment.
Servants carry heavy items through the courtyard, noting that the entire castle feels quite cluttered today.
The men observe the construction, commenting that it looks like a strange new building is being erected.
A worker presents a blueprint to the black-haired boy, stating that the Grand Duke requests it.
The black-haired boy and the blonde boy look over the large weathered piece parchment together. Looking at the detailed sketch, the black-haired boy asks what on earth he is looking at. The boys realize it's an amusement park, comparing the massive project to building a luxury cruise ship.
The worker explains the playroom is for the lady, prompting a confused question from the boy.
The black-haired boy looks away with a sharp gaze, asking someone if they are still there.
The black-haired boy looks dark and menacing, stating it doesn't matter if the child actually dies. The blonde boy suggests staying comfortable as a son, but the black-haired boy tells him to leave.
The sun shines through the arches of the palace balcony, casting soft shadows on the floor.
The garden is filled with bright light and lush greenery, creating a peaceful and serene atmosphere.
The black-haired boy criticizes the inefficient route, while the blonde boy asks why he won't go first.
Arya sleeps peacefully in the grass, surrounded by a black panther, deer, rabbits, and small squirrels.
Arya remains in a deep sleep, her face illuminated by the soft, sparkling light of the afternoon.
The blonde boy watches the animals, thinking it's not a forest fairy, but something else entirely.
A large, jagged speech bubble declares that Arya is a species capable of disturbing the entire ecosystem. The observer wonders if her nature is innate, noting that such things are possible for the legendary siren.
Thoughts explain she tamed a beast that only follows its master and even tamed the demonic duke.
The black-haired boy gazes at the sleeping girl with a look of quiet and intense curiosity.
Arya's peaceful sleeping face is shown in profile, her pink hair falling softly around her shoulders. Arya wakes up and rubs her eyes, wondering exactly when she had fallen asleep in the grass.
Looking at the ground, Arya wonders what footprint she is seeing and who could have been there.
Arya looks up at the trees, silently questioning who might have come and gone while she slept.
A fresh plate of salmon and clams is served, glistening under the bright lights of the room.
Arya eats the seafood with a fork while the chef and maids watch her with hearts in their eyes.
The maid praises Arya for finishing her meal, expressing happiness that she is eating well these days.
Arya touches her stomach and reflects on gaining weight, noting that her socks no longer come off.
Arya looks at her hands, thinking her strength isn't enough to sing songs of healing or destruction.
Narration describes the healing song that cures disease and the destroying song that can shatter an opponent.
Arya explains those two songs can only be sung after she turns 14, but they must advance that time. Arya reflects that if she can't sing quickly, Lloyd's life will end miserably like in the previous timeline.
Arya presents a note saying she wants to eat more, causing the servants to react with extreme shock.
The maid is moved to tears as the chef promises to bring out the next dish immediately. A large, glistening ham garnished with fruits is presented on a silver platter with a sparkling aura. Arya admires the artistic food and thinks it is delicious as she cuts into the thick ham. The maid watches Arya thoughtfully and asks if she has ever learned how to eat separately. Arya freezes in mid-action, her wide eyes reflecting a sudden sense of alarm and realization. The maid finds every step unusual, while Arya worries that she was being incredibly careless.
Arya realizes that in a course meal, her dining etiquette revealed her past as a siren.
Arya looks down with a saddened expression, feeling dejected about her unintentional display of past training. Arya's expression is soft and uncertain as she continues to process the maid's sudden question.
The servants fight over cutting the meat for the lady, with one claiming to have a license.
Arya sits quietly at the table while the servants continue their loud and energetic discussion nearby.
The chef proudly claims he chews best while the other servants look at him with sheer annoyance.
Arya feels overwhelmed by the chaotic staff and mentally calls out to the maid, Dana, for help. The maid asks if she can cut the food, prompting the chef to beg for her pardon. The maid happily offers to cut the food while the chef trembles in the background.
The maid says she will cut it while the chef and servants cry about their own abilities.
Tall sunflowers bloom under a bright blue sky, creating a peaceful and vibrant summer scene. A hand strokes Arya's hair as a voice compliments her on looking pretty today as well. Arya stands in an elegant yellow dress, surrounded by flowers and a shimmering, magical blue aura. The maid asks if Arya likes her look, and she responds with a polite note of thanks. The maid explains that the Grand Duke's relative returned yesterday and offers to guide Arya to him.
Arya vigorously shakes her head in a firm refusal, clearly startled by the maid's unexpected suggestion.
Arya worries about Lloyd being fine and plans to kick him out for not turning something off.
The maid tells Arya to be careful as she runs off, comparing her to a cute rabbit. Sunlight fills a grand library with tall, arched windows and shelves containing a vast collection of books.
Arya decides not to see Lloyd yet and will avoid him until the Grand Duchess is cured.
Arya pauses in the middle of the library, her expression becoming thoughtful as she considers her options. Narration explains that Arya fled to the library because there is no better place to practice her singing. Arya reaches for a book, thinking that being in the library will make her look like a booker. Arya smiles while surrounded by books, hoping the Grand Duke will see her as a diligent student.
Arya is caught by surprise, turning her head quickly as she hears a voice addressing her suddenly.
A high-angle view shows the vast library with a blonde boy standing among many stacks of books. Arya looks back with a look of intense curiosity, wondering about the identity of the mysterious child. The blonde boy smiles and greets Arya warmly, calling her his sister-in-law in a very friendly tone. The blonde boy maintains his cheerful smile while standing amidst a garden of purple and blue flowers.
Arya realizes the boy is the Grand Duke's relative, adopted for his genius but later turned into a spy.
The blonde boy closes his eyes with a gentle smile, stating that he is very grateful to him. Narration explains the boy was a symbol of success, raised as an orphan before being revealed as a spy. Narration describes how Vincent Valentine relied on drugs and liquor before ending his miserable life in the past.
The blonde boy stands in the library, his nickname being the Jinx Genius, as narration provides his background.
Arya questions if the boy being a spy was true, her gaze becoming intense and deeply suspicious.
The blonde boy asks what is wrong while Arya considers how cunning he must be to spy here. The blonde boy notes Arya's interest in epistemology, prompting her to wonder about the book she randomly picked. Holding a philosophy book, Arya wonders why she picked it and realizes she has never learned about this. Arya reflects on her lack of education while trapped, reading that humans must acknowledge things to exist. The blonde boy explains that ontology and epistemology are related and asks if Arya is interested in phenomenology. The blonde boy describes phenomenology as understanding things from a first-person point of view amidst the library shelves. Arya stares at the book in her hands, bewildered by the unrecognizable and complex text. Vincent expresses joy over Arya's interest in knowledge while she realizes he has completely misunderstood her. Vincent pauses for a moment, his expression shifting as a sudden realization dawns on him. Vincent explains that his survival is due to his reputation as a renowned young genius. Vincent's smile turns cold as he states that he has no patience for intellectual laziness. Vincent questions the value of an ignorant life, claiming he would rather die than be a failure. Arya watches him in silence, her expression unreadable as she processes his intense and dark worldview.
Arya reflects on how the boy's banishment was ultimately a result of his terrible luck.
Determining her next move, Arya looks up while Vincent maintains his calm and pleasant facade. Vincent greets Arya again while she wonders if his presence in the library is truly accidental.
Arya laments that the library's acoustics make practicing her secret songs far too difficult and risky.
Vincent questions why Arya is hesitating to choose a book from the massive library collection.
Arya grows annoyed, wondering why Vincent is so persistent despite her clear lack of interest in conversation.
A small hand reaches out, tapping a shoulder to finally get the other person's attention. Arya presents a note asking for a recommendation, prompting Vincent to offer his intellectual guidance. Vincent offers a specific book to Arya, his expression filled with a sense of helpful curiosity. Arya stares at a basic arithmetic book, her silence conveying a deep and simmering frustration. While Vincent acts superior, Arya struggles with simple math and internally fumes at his smug attitude. The scene shifts to a grand, elegantly decorated room filled with tall windows and opulent chandeliers.
Dana looks at Arya with concern, asking if something has been troubling her lately.
Overwhelmed by her current situation, Arya imagines herself as an erupting volcano ready to explode. Arya struggles to tolerate Vincent's interference, questioning if she should ignore him or take more drastic measures. Arya approaches a magnificent pipe organ in the library, noticing someone is already watching her.
Vincent comments on Arya's arrival, noting that she seems to be a bit late today.
Annoyed by the interaction, Arya decides to leave and turns away from the talkative boy. Vincent stops Arya, suggesting she must be musically talented given her prestigious and artistic family background.
Vincent details the genius of Maestro Cortez, Arya's grandfather, who revolutionized music with his mathematical inventions.
Vincent mocks Arya's silence before the girl's patience finally snaps under the weight of his arrogance.
Arya walks away in a huff while Vincent drops his book in surprise at her departure. Arya sits at the grand organ, her small figure dwarfed by the instrument's massive white pipes.
Vincent watches skeptically as Arya begins to play, criticizing her performance as short and poorly executed.
Vincent orders Arya to stop, warning her not to play such a legendary instrument without proper knowledge.
Arya's fingers dance across the keys, suddenly producing a sound that fills the room with light. 16 words.
Vincent is stunned as he recognizes the complex masterpiece Arya is playing, realizing her true musical talent. The music transforms the atmosphere as Vincent reflects on the divine and heavenly nature of the organ. Vincent envisions a grand king of composers, moved by the sheer power and mastery of Arya's performance. Entranced by the shift in melody, Vincent realizes Arya is now flawlessly performing a complex violin piece. The music evokes a vision of free nomads dancing joyfully across a vast and windy grassland.
Bright wildflowers sway in the breeze as the beautiful melody continues to flow through the air.
Arya's hands move with expert precision, the golden light of the music swirling around the keys. Arya finishes her performance with a cold glare, flatly telling the stunned Vincent to get lost. Vincent admits he was chased out, but feels satisfied that his predictions about Arya were finally proven. Vincent looks back with a knowing gaze, labeling the girl as a dangerous and invasive species. Vincent acknowledges Arya as a rare genius, possessing a talent that is truly overwhelming and undeniable. Vincent boasts about his own genius, while Arya reacts with a look of extreme, silent disbelief. Arya's peaceful breakfast plans are ruined by Vincent's arrival, causing her to glare at him with annoyance. Vincent attributes his survival to his intellect, while Arya finds his explanation both vague and strangely fascinating. Vincent claims he cannot forgive geniuses who hide their talents, staring intensely at the silent girl. Vincent deduces that Arya has been practicing in secret, while she grows tired of making up excuses. Vincent leans in close, teasingly asking if Arya hides her face because she is an exceptional beauty.
Vincent rests his hand on the book, acknowledging the shared burden of their intellectual gifts.
Fixing his hair, Vincent complains about the burden of being a genius with such natural beauty. Vincent observes that the line between genius and fool is thin while Arya eats her dessert. Vincent lazily poses while explaining that his exhaustion is merely a side effect of his handsome face.
Vincent places his hand on the thick volume and asks if Arya is referring to this book.
Vincent clarifies that he has already reviewed the draft of the law before any final adjustments were made. Arya questions why Vincent is reading outdated laws and asks if he intends to become a judge. Annoyed, Vincent tells Arya not to change the subject as her true intentions are finally exposed. Setting down his tea, Vincent notes that Arya's young age makes her genius status even more impressive.
Arya recalls her father's past praise, confirming her belief that she is indeed a musical genius.
A memory surfaces of Arya being told she is a true genius amidst a flurry of papers. Arya's father once praised her perfect pitch before cruelly dismissing her singing as mere annoying noise. The traumatic memory shifts to Arya being physically restrained and silenced while she tries to sing. Her father shouts in a drunken rage, accusing her of stealing the musical talents of her grandfather. Drunk and resentful, her father screams that the talent she possesses should have belonged to him instead. Arya realizes that her father's self-loathing only served to prove the reality of her own natural gifts. Narration describes the monstrous ancient abilities and heavenly pitch Arya inherited from her prestigious musical lineage.
Arya understands Vincent's frustration, knowing that anyone who witnesses her talent immediately desires to possess it.
Despite her incredible gift, Arya reflects on the fact that she has never truly been happy.
The image of a caged dove represents the sorrow Arya feels toward her own restricted musical talents. Vincent claims the Valentine family will support Arya because they value art above everything else in life.
Arya recalls her past status as a divine figure to the Emperor, realizing humans can never be gods.
Looking down, Arya concludes that the pursuit of divinity is an impossible feat for any mortal human.
Arya silently slides a new note across the table to catch Vincent's attention during their meal.
Vincent is confused by Arya's sudden note, wondering if she is actually planning to sing for him.
Arya's note warns that surviving as a genius also means one can die because of that genius.
Arya presents a note explaining that those who label her a genius are the true source of danger.
Vincent stares at the note in stunned silence, his face pale as the message sinks in. 15 words.
Arya writes that seeking recognition is futile, as true talent will naturally be acknowledged over time.
A flustered Vincent blushes and dismissively claims that such a concept should have been obvious to everyone.
Twisting his fingers nervously, Vincent admits he is surprised by the depth of Arya's mature and complex thoughts.
Arya asks for guidance on her next move, but Vincent dismisses the request as completely irrelevant now. Vincent notes that Arya's intense gaze makes her look remarkably similar to his brother Lloyd.
Vincent boasts about his own brilliance, claiming the sun itself is jealous of his natural and radiant light.
Vincent reacts with surprise as Arya holds up another note for him to read during their conversation.
Arya provides a final piece of advice on her note, telling Vincent to simply do his own thing.
A tense silence falls over the dining table as Vincent processes Arya's blunt and final words.
The remains of their dessert and tea sit on the table as the awkward conversation finally ends.
Vincent laughs and claims he was just joking, though he admits Arya's intensity actually scared him.
Unmoved, Arya looks at him with a flat expression and shows a note asking him to leave.
Vincent is struck by a metaphorical bolt of lightning as the room falls into a heavy silence.
Vincent gazes at Arya, realizing that her true personality is entirely different from any of the rumors.
Vincent is disturbed by Arya's cold gaze, wondering if normality even exists for a child of her age. 17 words.
Vincent turns serious and asks Arya what she believes her ultimate purpose or job truly is.
Arya quickly writes her response, stating that her future path has already been decided for a long time.
A vision of Lloyd appears, representing the destiny that Arya is determined to follow in this life.
Surrounded by roses, Arya presents a note declaring her true mission is to protect her own people.
The sun shines on a beautiful garden pavilion, where the peaceful atmosphere contrasts with Arya's intense resolve.
Arya's elegant shoes click against the stone path as she begins to walk through the palace garden.
Walking alone, Arya looks up at the sky and thinks it is finally time to take action.
Arya smiles gently, her eyes reflecting a quiet and determined hope for her future.
A white dove carries a delicate pink flower through the air above a lush garden.
Arya notices the dove, thinking that today it brought a flower instead of a letter.
Arya observes the peaceful scenery, concluding that her thoughts on the situation are indeed correct. A woman with dark hair looks out the window, her expression filled with quiet contemplation. Arya watches the bird land, realizing the actual reason behind its unexpected and sudden appearance. Arya holds the flowers, thinking that more trouble will likely find her again very soon.
The white dove takes flight once again, disappearing into the vast and cloudless blue sky.
Arya watches the dove fly away, wondering why it decided to leave so abruptly today.
Lloyd walks through the garden, accompanied by his loyal and imposing black jaguar. 14 words. Lloyd glares at Arya while she wonders if he intends to try and remove her. The massive jaguar prowls forward, its sleek black fur glistening under the bright morning sun.
Arya reaches out, thinking that the jaguar's dark fur perfectly matches the color of Lloyd's hair. The jaguar dodges Arya's hand, leaving her to stare at the empty space in surprise.
Arya repeatedly tries to pet the jaguar, but the clever animal consistently avoids her touch.
Arya is confused that the creature approached her only to retreat when she tried to touch it.
Lloyd watches the interaction in silence, his expression showing a hint of confusion and discomfort.
Lloyd notes that Arya has never exercised the authority of the Grand Duke he gave her.
Lloyd warns Arya that she will eventually lose her rights if she continues on this path.
Lloyd states that she could be kicked out without even a single penny or place to stay.
Someone reaches out and tells the other person to wait as the tense conversation continues.
Arya realizes what has happened, a soft exclamation of understanding escaping her during the moment.
Arya winces as she realizes she was hit, seeing red marks appearing on her skin.
Arya notes that her wrist is only sprained, but then something else catches her sudden attention.
Lloyd and Arya stand together in the garden, the atmosphere thick with unspoken and tense emotions. Arya is startled by Lloyd's presence, wondering exactly when he managed to get so close.
Lloyd scolds Arya for touching the beast, questioning why she would do something so reckless.
Lloyd reaches out and firmly takes Arya's hand to examine the injury she just sustained.
Lloyd asks how she can be so defenseless as to offer her hand to anyone.
Lloyd thinks the situation is annoying while he stares at the vibrant garden around them.
Arya's injured hand is bandaged to protect her wrist while it heals from the incident.
Lloyd questions the excessive bandage for an injury that did not even break any bones.
Lloyd asks if her weak physical condition is just another trick to gain his caring.
Lloyd claims she gets sick or injured whenever he tries to drive her away.
Arya asks why she would trick him and if he thinks she wants his care.
Lloyd is caught by surprise, his eyes widening as he processes Arya's unexpected and blunt question.
Lloyd looks away and flatly denies the claim that she is trying to make him care.
Lloyd tells Arya that she should leave for real this time once her injury is healed.
Arya stares at him, prompting Lloyd to ask why she is looking at him that way.
Arya observes that the jaguar is exactly like its owner, leaving Lloyd and the animal confused.
Arya smiles to herself, thinking that Lloyd is actually sweet despite his harsh and cold attitude. Narration explains the 7 categories of siren songs, noting that many subcategories also exist. Narration lists the songs of peace, life, charm, sleep, and healing as part of the lineage.
Arya struggles to sing the song of destruction, coughing painfully as she tries to perform. Arya collapses on the library floor, panting heavily from the physical strain of her practice. Arya worries about her lack of improvement despite eating well and taking regular daily strolls.
Arya reflects on her previous life's mastery and the urgent need to save the Grand Duchess.
Arya lies on the floor, reflecting on her past level and the need for consistent practice.
Arya wonders if a more efficient method exists to help her achieve her goals faster.
Arya's eye widens as a sudden and powerful realization strikes her in the quiet library.
Arya stands up abruptly in the library, confirming she has finally reached a major realization.
Arya touches her throat while considering the potential and development of her unique siren powers.
A carriage journeys through a mystical forest where a powerful fantasy barrier protects the travelers.
The narration explains that a magic barrier is essential for safe passage through this dangerous territory.
A hooded figure manipulates swirling magical energy while narration details the growth of their innate abilities.
A decorative title card announces the start of Chapter 21 in the ongoing story.
Arya reflects on the shared essence of energy types, concluding that her methods are more efficient.
Walking through the palace, Arya considers energy manipulation and the common power sources within the Empire.
Arya's eyes widened in surprise as she suddenly stops, noticing something unexpected in the grand hallway. Documents fly everywhere as an exclamation of surprise marks a sudden collision in the palace hallway.
Arya winces while sitting on the floor, surrounded by the papers that fell during the accident. Arya looks at the mess on the floor, expressing confusion about what just happened to her.
Staring at a scattered document, Arya notices something intriguing that immediately captures her full attention.
A brown-haired man expresses annoyance, asking if Arya even watches where she is walking.
Arya looks up as the man recognizes her status, addressing her with a formal greeting.
The man panics and asks if she is hurt, while Arya wonders about his identity.
The man introduces himself as Rosen Stewart, while Arya correctly identifies him as a baron.
Baron Stewart explains his task of arranging scribe documents while Arya responds with a simple acknowledgement.
Arya dusts off her dress and concludes that there is nothing suspicious about the man's presence. Baron Stewart politely excuses himself as he reaches down to gather the documents from the floor.
The man looks back nervously, wondering why the girl is staring at him with such intensity.
The man grows suspicious, questioning if Arya managed to read the confidential information on his documents.
Arya watches in silence as Baron Stewart gathers his papers and prepares to leave the hallway.
Baron Stewart dismisses Arya's gaze, doubting her reading speed and criticizing her lack of formal manners. Walking away, the man thinks Arya will be evicted the moment the Grand Duchess passes away.
Arya stands alone in the vast hallway, staring silently after the man who just departed.
Arya admits she has an unsettling feeling as she reflects on the brief and strange interaction.
Arya realizes why Vincent studied law, wondering if a certain group is aiming for something specific.
Arya hums thoughtfully to herself as she considers the implications of her new and unsettling discovery.
Arya is seen through a window pane, her expression showing a deep sense of quiet contemplation.
Baron Stewart carries a heavy stock of documents past the grand spires of the palace exterior.
Delicate white feathers drift through the air in front of the palace's tall and elegant windows.
Arya reaches a hand toward a group of white doves fluttering around the palace hallway.
A close-up shows a hand pointing toward the sky as white birds continue to circle nearby.
The white doves beat their wings as they take flight against a clear and bright sky. Baron Stewart pauses, startled by a sudden sound while feathers fall gently around his confused face. The man is swarmed by white birds, shouting in alarm as his documents begin to scatter.
Panicked and sweating, Baron Stewart cries out in distress as his papers fly into the air.
A wide view shows the palace with scattered documents floating away into the bright blue sky.
Arya watches the scene from behind a window, her expression calm despite the chaos outside.
Arya turns her head quickly, her long pink hair flowing as she shifts her immediate attention. 16 words.
Arya determines that meeting a specific person is urgent, deciding to skip confirming any current rumors.
Arya's shoes click against the floor as she opens a door to begin her next mission. A large gray wolf barks joyfully, wagging its tail in excitement as it greets the girl.
Arya greets a wolf named Silver, who responds to her presence with a very happy bark. Arya asks for the strongest person besides the captain, clarifying she means the one after Lloyd.
Silver lets out a powerful howl, seemingly responding to Arya's request for information about the strongest.
Arya's eyes glow with a vibrant pink light as she makes a serious and determined decision.
Arya commands Silver to lead her to that person while looking toward the Grand Palace exterior. A majestic white tower reaches toward the blue sky, surrounded by a dense forest of trees.
Arya and Silver arrive at the room located at the top of the East Tower.
Arya looks up at the palace tower, feeling the weight of the mission ahead.
Arya stands before the door and asks Silver if the person is truly inside.
Looking at the door, Arya repeats her question to Silver as they wait for entry. 16 words. Arya raises her hand and knocks firmly on the wooden surface of the tower door.
Arya and Silver wait together in the silent hallway for a response from within. Arya senses a human presence and wonders if her knock is being purposefully ignored.
Arya looks back at Silver, contemplating her next move to gain entry to the room. 16 words. Silver begins to scratch at the door, trying to help Arya get inside the laboratory. Silver throws his weight against the door to force it open for the young girl.
Arya enters the room and praises Silver while noting that the place is a mess.
A purple-haired man swears in frustration as Arya and Silver burst into his laboratory.
Kaelin asks why they damaged his lab just to pretend no one was inside.
The man stands tall in his green cloak, looking down at the uninvited guests.
Arya apologizes for the intrusion while Kaelin identifies himself as the palace shaman. Arya reacts with sudden surprise upon learning that the man is actually a shaman.
Arya reflects on Kaelin's reputation as a criminal shaman capable of replacing the devil.
Kaelin stares at Arya with a weary expression, noting that she acts very grown up. 15 words. Arya notes that most people mistakenly identify her as a simple mage instead of siren.
Kaelin declares he is busy and tries to usher Arya out of the room.
Arya holds up a note stating her desire to learn how to use energy.
Kaelin stares at her in silence, caught off guard by the girl's direct request.
Kaelin is surprised that Arya even knows about the complex concept of energy manipulation.
Kaelin explains that energy is a general term for various types of magical powers. Kaelin warns that attempting to use energy without talent or strength results in death. Kaelin boasts about his rare genius while dismissing the possibility of Arya succeeding. Arya asks how long energy control takes, and Kaelin replies it takes several years.
Arya realizes that waiting several years would make her plans far too late to succeed.
Arya presents a note asking if she can forcibly pierce her own core.
Kaelin sighs deeply, clearly frustrated by the girl's reckless and dangerous line of questioning. 16 words.
Kaelin shouts at Arya, asking if she is crazy for suggesting such a thing.
Kaelin explains that running out of core energy is as fatal as losing blood.
Kaelin tells her to stop the nonsense while she asks if shortcuts are possible.
Arya looks at him with sparkling eyes while Kaelin admits the method is possible.
Silver lies down as Kaelin mentions that some people are trained through mindless methods. 16 words.
Kaelin notes that success requires resistance far beyond the capabilities of a normal human. Kaelin quotes a proverb about wisdom while advising the young girl to simply give up.
Kaelin tells Arya to just give up on her quest to learn energy control.
Kaelin reaches out his hand, offering to walk Arya out of his laboratory room.
A brilliant pink energy swirls between their hands as Arya touches the shaman's fingers. Kaelin is struck with sudden shock as he feels the immense power within the girl.
Kaelin recoils in disbelief, unable to process the incredible energy he just experienced.
Kaelin wonders how a person can possess such an overwhelming amount of energy and charm.
Arya realizes that she cannot hide the limits of her power from this person.
Kaelin recognizes Arya's true identity, finally realizing that she is actually a siren.
Arya stands silently with glowing pink eyes as the shaman discovers her secret.
Kaelin turns away, his back to the girl as he considers the dangerous secret. Kaelin clutches his hair in intense frustration, struggling to process the presence of a siren. Arya remains perfectly still, her calm gaze contrasting with the shaman's visible and mounting distress.
A decorative title card announces the title of the series in stylized purple and blue. Establishing lab shot with jar scrolls, a skull, and various alchemical equipment on shelves.
Kaelin sighs deeply while acknowledging the heavy truth about Arya's hidden and immense power.
Kaelin clutches his head in frustration, asking Arya if she has hidden her powers forever.
Kaelin notes that Arya's cold demeanor stems from her inability to feel life's miraculous energy.
Arya reveals to the shaman that she possesses memories of her previous life.
Kaelin is bewildered by Arya's explanation, unable to justify her existence using any magical theories.
Grabbing the shaman's cloak, Arya insists she already knows the fundamental basics of manipulating energy. Kaelin questions her ability to use energy without a core, and Arya simply says she does.
Kaelin is stunned by Arya's nonchalance while she confirms her ability with a simple nod.
Kaylin questions why she uses crude methods when her powers are inherently artistic and delicate.
Arya explains that the crude method is her only way to finally learn how to sing.
Arya reveals she sang until she vomited blood, leaving the shaman in a stunned silence.
Narration describes Count Cortez as a cruel leader who controlled others like a heartless puppeteer.
Narration explains how Cortez exploited a siren and sold her daughter due to her silence.
Narration details a heartless species that abandoned human morality in exchange for mountains of gold.
Inner monologue questions if Arya's childhood trauma led her to request such a dangerous procedure.
Kylan expresses his intense hatred for such evil people while Arya stares at him silently.
Shifting the subject, Kylan asks Arya for the true reason she came to find him.
Arya demands he pierce her core, but the shaman pleads with her not to force him.
Kylan warns that piercing a core won't grant mastery, but Arya insists she'll be ready.
Kaylin asks Arya to explain why she is in such an urgent rush to gain power.
A heavy silence fills the cluttered laboratory as Arya and the shaman face each other.
Arya admits that the next part of her explanation will make her sound completely insane.
Clenching her fist, Arya decides that revealing the truth is the only way to convince him.
Arya looks up with a resolute expression, her eyes filled with an intense and unwavering determination.
Kylan reacts with a sudden look of shock and confusion as Arya begins her revelation.
Arya attempts to discuss future events, but the shaman frantically tells her to wait a moment.
Kylan asks if she has predicted the future, but Arya dismisses the importance of her gift.
Arya reflects on the shaman's reaction, wondering why he would dismiss something so naturally intriguing.
Arya claims the future cannot be changed, leading the confused shaman to ask for her reasoning.
A hand is raised as a voice explains that every single person has their own destiny.
Arya contemplates her destructive destiny and wonders why she must bear such a heavy fate.
Kylan asks if destiny is divine will, while Arya explains the world follows set laws.
Arya describes the world as a precise machine where events fit together like tightly interlocking gears.
Narration notes that Arya seems to truly understand the complex meaning behind the shaman's words.
Simple truths are presented, stating that apples are red and the sky is always blue.
Nature's cycle is shown through a deer eating grass and a lion preying on the deer. A glowing geometric magic circle represents the immutable and ancient order that governs all life.
Arya holds an hourglass amidst clockwork, concluding that humans cannot change the world's fixed order.
Arya likens changing the future to replacing a gear within the world's vast and complex machinery.
Kylan notes that the world should naturally return to its original state without external interference.
Arya asks if breaking the old laws will cause a brand new law to emerge. Kylan praises Arya for her quick understanding of the fundamental problem they are currently facing.
A dark, spectral figure looms over Arya as the narration warns of possibilities that could occur. A blood-splattered hallway serves as a reminder that saving a life requires another in return.
Clenching her dress, Arya worries about the consequences if the current path remains unchanged.
A vision of Lloyd appears, representing the one Arya is most determined to protect.
Arya recalls that Lloyd was her savior, and her resolve to save him becomes absolute.
Blood splatters across the screen as Arya realizes the dire consequences of failing to change. Blood splatters as narration warns that the terrible tragedy is destined to repeat itself.
A dark-haired man sits upon a throne surrounded by blood, representing a grim future.
Narration states that he doesn't mind being ruined even while knowing it is currently happening.
Arya looks up with fierce determination, declaring that she cannot allow that tragedy to happen.
The scene shifts back to the quiet and cluttered laboratory filled with various alchemical supplies.
Arya stands silently in the laboratory, her gaze lost in deep and heavy thought.
Arya breaks the silence by noting that there is something strange about the current situation.
Kylan looks at her with a questioning expression, asking her exactly what she means by that.
Arya questions why she would possess knowledge of the future if it were truly unchangeable.
Arya asserts that her knowledge of the future compels her to try and change things rather than doing nothing, while the shaman expresses his own uncertainty regarding the matter.
Kylan is left speechless and utterly confused by the girl's bold and logic-defying claims.
Arya declares that her actions are destined and that she embodies the world's will, commanding the shaman to simply follow her lead.
Kylan comments on Arya's extreme stubbornness as she stands her ground firmly before him.
Arya acknowledges that changing fate will be difficult and might fail, but she insists on doing what is right because she refuses to accept a wrong world.
Arya resolves to pay whatever price is necessary for change instead of living in fear of the consequences.
Kylan clutches his head, wondering why the young girl would take such a heavy burden of responsibility upon herself.
Kylan reflects on Arya's belief in justice despite her uneasy past, questioning why she still trusts in the world.
Kylan challenges Arya to prove her conviction as they stand together in the messy laboratory.
Arya requests permission to leave the palace temporarily, promising the shaman that she will return later.
Narration identifies a cheap palace scroll containing teleportation magic, which is currently the subject of their conversation. Kylan looks exhausted while Arya holds up the teleportation scroll she intends to use.
Looks like Kylan just realized his pockets were picked by a child as he laments that his scroll has already been stolen.
Kylan grumpily asks if he can at least make a clone to replace her while she is gone.
Kylan warns that the Grand Duke and the Emperor will quickly notice a fake, urging her to return soon, but Arya promises to be back before anyone discovers her absence.
Kylan rubs his temples, admitting he is unsure if letting her go is actually a good idea.
Kylan tells Arya that he provided the scroll for her safety and commands her to return immediately if she encounters any danger.
Arya's hands tear the magic scroll, activating the teleportation spell in a burst of light.
Silver the wolf barks loudly as he jumps into the teleportation circle at the last second.
Arya is surprised as Silver suddenly lunges toward her just as the magic takes hold.
Kylan shouts for them to wait as a bright flash of light consumes the entire laboratory.
A magical light swirls in the empty room after Arya and the wolf successfully teleport away.
Arya arrives at her destination, looking around in surprise at the sunset-drenched surroundings.
Arya finds herself in the holy empire of Garcilla while Silver barks happily by her side.
Arya realizes that Silver followed her, calling out the wolf's name as he wags his tail. Arya looks back with a huff of annoyance, clearly frustrated by her uninvited traveling companion.
Arya scolds the wolf for barging into the teleportation circle, reminding him that the journey is dangerous.
Arya pets the wolf while contemplating his loyalty and his place in her mission.
Arya wonders if Silver felt threatened by her closeness with the jaguars, ultimately deciding that the wolf is cute despite his slower speed. Arya decides to head toward the rising sun as she looks out over the vast city.
Narration observes that darkness always exists alongside light, even in the most luminous parts of the world. Narration explains that the Holy Empire is no exception to this rule, despite being chosen by gods.
Narration notes that even the Pope's best efforts to help the poor could not prevent starvation.
A compass points toward the east, where a village known as the Slums is located.
Narration explains how the village formed from ruins when criminals and wanderers gathered there out of necessity. Arya walks through the dry and cracked streets of the impoverished village.
Arya and Silver overlook the slums, described as an uncivilized area with no one to guard it.
Arya pulls a dark hood over her head to hide her face while entering the dangerous territory.
Arya reminds herself to be careful as she and Silver navigate the crowded village streets.
Arya accidentally bumps into a large man, causing a tense moment in the busy slum hallway.
The man shouts at Arya to stop messing around and to get out of his way.
The large man notices Arya's unique hair color as she tries to pass through the slums.
Looking at Arya's face, the man claims that she will sell for a very high price.
The man reiterates that her pretty face ensures she will sell for a significant amount of money.
A stylized title card appears in purple and blue against a light and sparkling white background. 16 words.
Looming over her, the man asks if he shall take a look at the girl's face.
Arya squeezes her eyes shut while Silver growls fiercely, causing the startled man to flinch in fear.
Silver the wolf steps forward with a menacing growl while the man screams and retreats in terror.
The man flees while shouting for help as Arya realizes she was almost kidnapped before entering the city.
Arya grips the edge of her dark cloak, her hands trembling from the stress of the encounter.
Arya adjusts her hood, reflecting that she can see exactly why the Pope chose to leave this place. Silver barks happily at the girl, who looks back at him with a silent and thoughtful expression. 16 words.
Arya tells Silver to wait for her, explaining his size draws too much attention and warns that he could be sold to the black market, so he must hide in the woods.
Arya stands alone in the middle of a stone street, staring ahead with a determined, quiet expression. Looking at the village architecture against a darkening sky, Arya notes that it is getting late.
Arya's dark shoes click against the stone pavement as she hurries toward her secret and urgent destination. A dark silhouette shows a man harassing a woman in an alleyway, highlighting the town's lawless nature.
Arya watches from the shadows as a victim in a nearby alleyway desperately pleads for someone to help. Looking on with a pained expression, Arya thinks to herself about how cruel the situation truly is. Narration expresses uncertainty if anyone still remembers that a temple once stood in this forgotten and ruined place.
The narration describes how the current land has lost all of the ancient glory it possessed in the past.
Narration explains that the temple crumbled until no one knew a hidden relic was stored within the ruined structure.
In a vision, a blonde woman holds a branch while explaining that only the saintess searching at the deepest place could find the hidden relic.
The blonde woman wonders who would imagine a saintess falling into a deep sleep inside an abandoned temple.
Arya hears a sudden rustling sound in the nearby forest and looks up with a startled expression.
Arya arrives at the ruined stone temple, announcing her arrival under the vast and sparkling night sky.
Arya moves cautiously along the exterior of the ruins, using the stone wall to guide her path.
Arya feels along the masonry while guessing that the entrance she seeks must be somewhere nearby. Arya looks down at her feet and confirms she has arrived at the correct spot for entry. Arya kneels in the tall grass, looking down at a wooden trapdoor set into the temple floor.
Arya reacts with surprise to a sudden sound, wondering what it is and why it is so noisy.
Arya hesitates as she senses someone is already here, wondering what her next course of action should be.
Arya spots a man sleeping on the floor and realizes he is simply unconscious from drinking too much.
Arya looks toward the interior of the ruins, thinking she must hurry and take the item back.
The wooden trapdoor swings open, revealing a dark and narrow square passage leading deep into the ground.
Arya descends into the hidden room, thinking that the area is much darker than she had originally expected.
Arya searches through the dark and quiet room, certain that her objective must be hidden around here.
A stone pedestal stands alone in the center of the dark room, holding a small object.
Arya opens a dark wooden box, her hands reaching inside to finally claim the mysterious hidden item.
Arya finds a branch while narration explains that God struck thunderbolts to punish power seekers, turning the hip branches into relics holding divine judgment.
Arya places her hand against the cold stone wall, feeling for a hidden latch or a secret mechanism.
Arya is momentarily confused when she discovers that the area she is touching is just a solid wall.
Arya wonders if there is something on the other side of the wall, or if she simply needs to remove a single brick.
A stone is removed from the masonry, revealing a dark and narrow gap hidden within the wall.
Arya asks if it is alright if she comes in while she peers into the newfound hidden chamber. Arya holds an intricate gold necklace in her open palm, examining the piece with a curious expression.
Arya identifies the jewelry as the specific necklace that Saintess Veronica was known to always wear.
Arya notes the necklace holds no divine power but wonders what it is for before deciding to take it with her first.
Looking out from the opening, Arya realizes she is in trouble as several men surround her position.
A man speaks to Arya from above, mockingly telling her that she has finally arrived as they expected.
The group of men looms over the young girl who is trapped inside the narrow stone opening.
A rough hand reaches out and firmly grabs the edge of Arya's dark cloak.
One of the men suggests checking her belongings, noting that her sword appears to be stolen from a noble.
The man recoils with a look of intense disgust and confusion.
A close-up reveals Arya's small hand clutching the seemingly worthless wooden branch.
The men question why she brought a mere branch, wondering if she sought treasure in the secret passage, but concluding it was a total waste of effort.
Arya flinches in surprise as she realizes the men have discovered her presence. A hand roughly pulls her cloak again while a voice suggests they can sell the little girl.
Arya remains perfectly still under her hood as the men continue to hover around her.
Arya is revealed wearing an ornate bunny-eared mask and elegant, dark high society clothing.
The men wonder how she arrived in such luxurious clothes, mockingly asking if she was out for a simple night walk. A man warns that bad guys catch those out for walks, while Arya's eyes begin to glow with a dangerous pink light.
Arya worries to herself about the terrible security of the area and her desire not to stand out. Looking down with glowing eyes, Arya decides she has no choice but to sing to erase their memories.
A man's hand reaches toward her while he condescendingly tells her to be a good little girl.
A young boy with pale white hair and a regal papal uniform suddenly appears behind the group.
The men consider selling the boy as well, but hesitate upon recognizing his Vatican Knight uniform.
The boy stands surrounded by delicate blue flowers, his appearance strikingly fragile yet noble.
Turning toward the thugs, the white-haired boy asks if they are currently bothering a child.
The men mockingly ask if they should bother him too, questioning if he understands the term extraterritorial jurisdiction.
The boy preaches that the thugs burst into mocking laughter at the boy's attempt to preach divine doctrine.
Dark silhouetted figures with menacing white eyes loom over the brave but outnumbered young boy.
Narration notes the irony of coming to the poorest places to preach the doctrine of God. An inner monologue questions why God doesn't inflict a wretched punishment if he is truly watching.
The thugs gasp in sudden surprise as the atmosphere shifts and a strike occurs.
The bloody boy lies defeated on the grass while a thug calls him unlucky for interfering.
Arya wonders what his purpose was, admitting she expected him to win since he wore a papal knight's uniform.
Arya stares blankly at the scene, processing the unexpected turn of events. Looking closer, Arya realizes the boy is only wearing an apprentice knight uniform.
Arya notes he hasn't been an apprentice long and reflects that Garcia allows anyone to become a knight regardless of skill.
The men curse because the boy's bloody face decreases his value, calling him an innate failure who should have attacked to the end.
Arya observes the defeated boy with a silent expression, noting that he couldn't even throw a single punch. Despite the boy's failure, Arya admits that she received help from him unintentionally.
Arya places her fingers to her lips and lets out a sharp, summoning whistle.
A man reacts with shock, wondering why a whistle sound suddenly echoed through the ruins.
The nearby bushes rustle violently as a hidden presence prepares to strike from the shadows.
Silver the Wolf lunges at the thugs, who scream in terror and beg to be saved.
Arya reflects that the Grand Duke likely promised to feed humans to his hounds. Closing her eyes, Arya decides she doesn't need to witness the violence unfolding before her. Arya wonders if the wolf is biting their necks, noting that the screams are getting farther away.
Silver returns with a piece of cloth, leading Arya to conclude the vagrants are now naked. She praises the wolf for a good job.
Arya tells Silver it is time to go back while the wolf barks in agreement.
Arya pauses to look back at the clearing one last time before departing.
Arya gazes down at the unconscious boy, realizing that he is much heavier than he looks.
Arya and Silver struggle together to drag the bloodied boy across the grassy field.
Arya thinks that while moving him will take a long time, she cannot leave him in such a dangerous place.
Arya decides they should head toward the papal palace to drop off the injured boy.
The grand papal palace stands majestically under a vast star-filled night sky and meteor shower.
After placing the boy safely near the palace, Arya thinks to herself that this should be enough.
Arya hurries away into the night, thinking that she really needs to go back soon. Arya stands silently in the palace, her gaze focused as she processes the night's events. Arya and Silver look down at the boy, wondering if he is broken after the ordeal.
Narration describes the absurdity of a world where greedy people sacrifice those who keep their faith.
Arya tells Silver to move the boy as a bright magical energy begins to swirl nearby.
A bright flash of light emanates from the palace tower as the teleportation magic concludes.
Arya and Kylan stand face to face in the cluttered laboratory, the air heavy with tension.
Arya stares in silent shock as she realizes the consequences of her late return.
Kylan displays a fearful expression while the girl ignores his comedic and exaggerated distress. Kylan demands to know what happened while he notes that the young girl is extremely late.
Arya nonchalantly dismisses her lateness, claiming that nothing out of the ordinary occurred during her trip.
Narration notes that evidence now identifies the second prince as the mole within the palace walls. Arya expresses surprise at the rapid investigation, noting it was faster than she originally anticipated. Kylan asks if she was already aware of the situation while they stand in the lab.
Kylan explains that his actions were a desperate attempt to stop a tragic future from manifesting.
Holding a dark box, Arya questions the current plan, noting it seems to lack any benefit.
Kylan sighs and orders the girl to leave to avoid further complications from their association. 16 words.
Kylan warns of a trial while Arya confirms she understands the gravity of their situation. Arya leans down to whisper a secret command to Silver, referring to him as her captain.
The scene shifts to the dark and oppressive prison hallway lined with heavy iron-barred cells.
A hand holds a burning cigarette against the backdrop of the cold prison bars.
A blonde-haired boy stands in the shadows of his cell, looking down in deep sorrow.
The black-haired man asks the prisoner if he has encountered these specific faces before.
Men discuss funding while observing a bound prisoner who was caught right off the street. 15 words. The middle-aged man in the blue suit believes he finally has a chance at winning. The prisoner is threatened with a supply ban if he refuses to reveal the truth.
A hand tosses a glowing red gemstone, underscoring that the situation is far from a joke.
The black-haired man remains seated while the bound prisoner finally admits to having seen them. The interrogation continues as the captors demand to know exactly when the prisoner saw the faces. Narration introduces Vincent Valentine, a child who once navigated treacherous mountains without any protection.
A flashback reveals Vincent's battered state after his arrival, his body covered in painful wounds. Vincent presented a ceremonial blade to the Grand Duke to prove his legitimate Valentine heritage.
A young, bandaged Vincent smiles brightly while pleading for the monarch to take him in.
The black-haired man clutches his head, looking visibly exhausted by the weight of the investigation.
The Grand Duke asserts that loyalty matters more than origins, but Vincent questions his own knowledge.
Vincent claims he knows nothing about the master's right hands, dismissing himself as a mere lowlife. Vincent claims he saw someone at the feeding den, prompting the man in blue to shout. The man in blue stands frozen in stunned silence as the accusations against him are voiced.
Vincent walks away from the conversation, insisting that he is only telling the absolute truth.
The Grand Duke questions Vincent's presence in the den, but the boy denies being a mole.
The Grand Duke offers Vincent a final chance to answer the questions properly.
Vincent remains silent, refusing to respond to the demand for a proper and truthful answer. The black-haired man stares coldly, his expression unreadable as he awaits the boy's next response. The black-haired man commands his guards to take the prisoner away and lock him in prison.
Vincent wonders if his journey is over, as narration warns that genius can lead to death.
Narration describes the tragedy of a genius being ruined by those who admire their brilliance.
Guards surround the blonde boy while he looks up with an expression of pure desperation. Arya suddenly runs forward and grabs the blonde boy's hand to stop him from being taken.
Arya and the boy stare at each other in shock as their paths unexpectedly cross again.
Vincent tearfully recognizes Arya as his sister-in-law while the guards react with utter confusion.
Crying, the boy asks why she came to find him in such a wretched place.
The black-haired man stops Arya with a firm grip, telling her to wait a moment.
Arya looks back at the man with a surprised and wide-eyed expression.
The black-haired man warns her against doing anything he considers to be entirely pointless. Dark text on a grainy background reinforces the command to not try in vain. The black-haired man stands amidst flowers, his gaze intense as he maintains his firm stance. 16 words.
A stylized title card for the siren appears over scrolls and a desk of ink. Seated on his throne, the Grand Duke looks up with a look of mild curiosity.
The black-haired man confronts the Grand Duke, noting he gave orders to bar entry. The man in blue suit confirms the order, claiming the young pair have no involvement.
The Grand Duke understands their worry, but the black-haired man asks who is truly worried. Looking at the scrolls, an inner thought notes that this was not the intended purpose. 16 words.
The Grand Duke asks if she has brought something even more important than the scrolls.
Arya confirms her arrival with a yes while revealing the small wooden branch she found.
A close-up shows a hand holding the seemingly ordinary branch up against a light background. Observers question the significance of a tree branch as the Grand Duke reacts with surprise.
Light swirls around the wooden branch as a voice asks if it is a divine artifact. The man in blue suit screams in shock, unable to believe he sees a divine artifact.
Looking distraught, the man in blue questions why a simple branch is being called an artifact.
Vincent stares at the branch with wonder, identifying the item as a symbol of God's judgment.
Vincent reflects on the failed searches of the past, wondering if God has finally chosen her.
Arya stands with the branch while a thought observes she truly knows how to surprise people.
The man in blue clenches his fist, demanding to know what God's judgment actually is.
Vincent preaches that those who lie to God will face punishment, which is called divine judgment. Standing before the bars, the man in blue dismisses the concept of divine punishment as nonsense.
Arya begins to hum a soft tune, her lips parted as her pink hair flows down.
The black-haired man invites the curious party to see the power of the artifact themselves.
The black-haired man stands with Arya, announcing it is time to test the divine artifact's power.
The black-haired man tells Vincent to go first while Arya hands the branch to him.
The black-haired man asks Vincent directly if he is a spy while Arya watches closely. Holding the branch, a tearful Vincent denies the accusation that he is serving as a spy.
Shadows of prison bars fall against a stone wall, marking a transition in the scene. 15 words.
The black-haired man asks if Vincent harmed the family, and the boy denies it absolutely.
The Grand Duke leans back on his throne, responding to the boy's answer with a thoughtful hum.
The Grand Duke questions Vincent about his reasons for entering the Forbidden Cave in the past.
Vincent apologizes for his silence, insisting he did not hurt the family despite not explaining himself.
A profile view of the Grand Duke shows him listening intently to the boy's desperate plea.
Looking at Vincent, the Grand Duke declares that the current line of questioning has reached its end.
The man in blue suit looks up in terror, desperately asking if the Duke is just kidding.
The man in blue suit curses Arya, reflecting on his son's demotion while resenting the girl's interference.
The mustachioed man questions the branch's validity, suggesting someone cast magic on it to fake its power. The black-haired man notes the mustachioed man is implying they are fools who cannot identify artifacts.
The black-haired man challenges the mustachioed man to hold the branch and claim he is innocent. The mustachioed man claims he is innocent before being struck by a bolt of lightning.
Terrified, the man in blue suit begs for forgiveness and offers to admit all of his guilt.
The man in blue suit insists his actions were a misunderstanding and begs for royal understanding. The Grand Duke asks if the man accused his son out of a sense of justice.
The Grand Duke reviews the documents, noting their sole purpose was to blame his child before asking the man if he has something against Vincent.
The man in blue suit stands in complete shock, asking how such a revelation is possible.
The Grand Duke mockingly asks if the man's intelligence is insufficient to understand his current words.
Vincent sarcastically apologizes, noting that facing the truth must be incredibly painful for the corrupt man.
The man in the blue suit yells at Vincent, claiming his words make him angry. 16 words.
The man in the blue suit conceded, suggesting the boy's explanation might be slightly understandable.
Smiling smugly, Vincent points out that if he is being accused of spying, there should be a clear plan involved.
Vincent advises the man that gaining trust should have been done slowly rather than by rushing in such a hurry. Vincent wins the most creative insult award by claiming his intelligence drops just by breathing the same air. Vincent touches his forehead while repeating his insult about the man's negative impact on his own intelligence.
Exploding in a fit of rage, the man in the blue suit screams an insult. 15 words.
Standing amidst white flowers, Vincent declares he knows why the man visited the feeding den. The man in blue suit denies accusations of being connected to the second prince or being at the feeding den.
The Grand Duke observes the prisoner's excessive talking with a cold and piercing gaze.
The Grand Duke demands that the man stop hesitating and spit out whatever he has to say.
The Grand Duke looks at Arya with interest as he asks for clarification regarding her discovery.
Arya identifies the crime as manipulation of the law, her eyes glowing behind her mask.
The Grand Duke explains how the vocabulary and data were falsified to manipulate the new legislation.
Baron Stewart reacts with disbelief while the man in blue clutches the wooden branch.
Baron Stewart wonders how a mere child could have uncovered their secret legal scheme.
Inner thoughts reveal Baron Stewart's suspicion of Vincent and his confusion over how the child found out his secret. Baron Stewart stares intently, wondering if the boy has finally spoken about their secret deal. Vincent stands calmly as the weight of the accusations shifts toward the corrupt nobleman.
A flashback reveals Arya finding the incriminating document after it fell during a past encounter.
Baron Stewart realizes Arya read the document when it fell, wondering if she discovered everything just by picking it up.
A mental observation notes the disbelief that a 10-year-old girl could be so perceptive.
The Grand Duke lists several serious crimes, questioning if the goal was to destroy Valentine to commit such atrocities.
The Grand Duke expresses his outrage at the man's audacity to commit such widespread crimes.
The two men stand in the silent prison hallway, facing the consequences of their actions.
Seated on his throne, the Grand Duke exudes an aura of absolute and terrifying authority.
From behind, the Count is questioned about the validity of the damning evidence presented.
The Grand Duke demands an answer from the Count, his patience visibly wearing very thin. The Count reflects on his misfortune while Baron Stuart is watched by several surrounding guards.
The man in the blue suit clenches his teeth in a display of intense frustration.
The two corrupt men exchange glances while a hand reaches out toward the wooden relic. Baron Stuart accuses the Count of the gravest sin, claiming he only followed orders in exchange for a promotion.
Holding the branch, the Count mockingly denies ever promising a promotion to Baron Stuart. 15 words. The Grand Duke notes the branch's lack of reaction, concluding that the truth is revealed.
The trio stands firm, thinking that the corrupt man has essentially dug his own grave.
Arya observes that the men were fully aware they were breaking the established royal laws.
A sharp sound echoes through the hall as a lethal blade is drawn from its sheath. The Grand Duke announces that immediate punishment will be carried out for all their crimes.
Arya reflects on the Grand Duke's overwhelming power, feeling insignificant in the presence of his aura. Trembling, Arya stands beside the Grand Duke as he prepares to execute his divine judgment.
The Grand Duke reaches out and gently covers Arya's eyes to shield her from violence.
Vincent watches the scene with a solemn expression as the final judgment begins to unfold.
A massive spray of blood erupts against the white background, marking the end of the trial.
The prison's stone exterior remains indifferent to the swift justice being served within its walls.
Dark blood pools on the stone floor, signifying the violent conclusion of the interrogation.
The Count stares in pure terror as a sharp blade is held against his throat.
Kneeling in desperation, the Count begs the Grand Duke to wait before delivering the final blow.
The Grand Duke mockingly asks if the condemned man still has anything left to say.
The Count desperately begs to be heard, claiming he knows an important secret regarding the feeding den.
The Count claims he knows the secret reason behind Vincent's inability to explain his past options.
The man in the blue suit screams that Vincent is only the son of a prostitute. The man in the blue suit continues screaming insults while Vincent shields the girl's eyes.
The black-haired man watches the scene with a silent and focused expression.
The man in the blue suit yells that the boy's origin is irrelevant now.
Vincent's hands tremble as he shields the girl, who notes that he is visibly shaking.
The man in the blue suit smiles maliciously even as a blade touches his throat.
The man in the blue suit shouts that the boy is simply the son of prey.
Through a blurred perspective, narration reveals Vincent was trying to hide a deeper secret.
Standing in total darkness, Vincent reflects on the burden of being labeled as prey.
The man in the blue suit claims the children of prey are doomed for generations.
The man in the blue suit rants that deadly secrets belong in the dark.
The man in the blue suit questions Vincent about his secret visits to the palace.
The man in the blue suit screams about rescuing the boy's mother from the basement.
The man in the blue suit yells about a shameless marriage to an imperial member. Narration details the Beaufort noble bloodline and a marriage that connected them to the emperor.
A flashback depicts a shifting government power following Emperor Sunday's ascension to the throne.
Narration introduces Vincent Valentine as a distinct figure compared to the rest of the family.
Adopted as a distant relative, Vincent was quickly recognized and praised as a child genius.
A younger Vincent stands in the sunlight, wondering about the meaning of his new life.
The man in the blue suit rants that Vincent will eventually be brainwashed by his mother.
Vincent slowly lowers his hand from the girl's eyes as the shouting finally stops.
A close-up shows Vincent gently holding the girl's hands to offer her some comfort.
Vincent tells Arya she is just herself and has no reason to tremble anymore.
The man in the blue suit insists that the boy's background truly does not matter.
The black-haired man addresses the Count, his voice cold and filled with a lethal intent.
The black-haired man states he will kill everyone involved, having lost his patience entirely.
Blood splatters across the black-haired man's clothes, marking the grim end of the confrontation. The black-haired man tells the children to leave while Lloyd reacts with visible annoyance.
The children stand in the grand hallway as guards prepare to escort them away.
Two knights bow deeply to the young nobles as they make their way out.
Lloyd demands to know why he was kicked out, insisting the matter concerns his family. Arya stands alone among white flowers, reflecting on the heavy revelations she just heard. Chibi Lloyd claims that he is no longer angry after the intensity of the confrontation.
Arya and Lloyd walk through the palace together, the atmosphere still heavy with tension.
Lloyd looks at the girl, confirming that he followed her instructions exactly as requested. Lloyd sits alone in a lavish room, focused on reading a large, ancient book.
A close-up shows Lloyd turning a page, revealing complex magical symbols within the tome.
A sharp knocking sound echoes through the quiet room, interrupting the young boy's study.
The heavy wooden door slowly creaks open, revealing a visitor arriving late at night.
Lloyd lets out a tired sigh as he looks up from his magic book.
Arya enters the room and Lloyd mockingly identifies her as a saboteur who appeared.
Lloyd asks what she wants at this late hour, assuming there is no visit reason.
Arya walks forward silently, her footsteps echoing on the polished wooden floor of the study.
Arya presents a letter and asks Lloyd if the Grand Duke's authority remains valid. Lloyd confirms the authority is valid, noting the Grand Duke's need for absolute power.
Lloyd reacts with shock and confusion as he processes the girl's unexpected and bold request.
Holding the letter firmly, Arya orders Lloyd to do exactly what she says next. 15 words.
Stunned, Lloyd questions why he would ever agree to follow such an outrageous command.
Arya clarifies she is talking about the Grand Duke's authority to secure his absolute compliance.
Lloyd sighs and gives in, telling the girl to just speak her mind already. The Grand Library stands silent, its towering pillars and endless shelves bathed in soft light.
Lloyd reflects on Vincent's acquittal and the fall of the corrupt men, but he remains dissatisfied.
Lloyd calls out to Arya, who looks back with a look of pure confusion.
Lloyd asks if her current request is truly the only way she intends to use his authority.
Arya stares back silently, her large pink eyes unreadable behind her mask.
Lloyd observes that she ignores wealth and fame, wondering if he should finally ask about her intentions.
In a rainy memory, a hand grips a dagger while voices discuss taking advantage of the chaos. Standing in the rain, Arya claims she wants a head rub because it makes her feel good.
Lloyd dismisses the thought as complete nonsense, while Arya continues to look at him with confusion. Lloyd sighs, noting he is getting caught up in her pace and deciding they must leave.
Lloyd addresses Vincent, suggesting they finish their conversation at a later time.
Smiling brightly, Vincent agrees to speak later and addresses Lloyd as his brother.
Lloyd walks away abruptly while Arya watches his departure with a lingering, thoughtful gaze.
Vincent stands alone in the hallway, looking down with a somber and lonely expression. 15 words. A hand holds a crumpled letter, the paper worn from being gripped tightly in frustration.
Facing Vincent, Arya notes she finally understands the reason behind his desperate words and actions.
Arya observes that he must be desperate to survive and avoid being ignored by the family.
Arya notes his schemes to gain support were cute, despite his claims of being a child genius. Arya warns him not to cross the line unless he wishes to die young like other geniuses.
Vincent wonders if he just received a threat while Arya reaches out to pat his head. 17 words.
Vincent stares in wide-eyed shock as Arya's hand gently rests upon his blonde hair.
Blushing furiously, Vincent stands frozen while processing the unexpected physical affection from the girl. Arya stands calmly, her expression hidden as she reflects on the impact of her warning.
Vincent remains in a daze, watching Arya as she turns and walks away from him.
The massive and ornate palace stands under a clear sky, exuding an air of royal permanence. Piles of heavy books and scrolls clutter the tables within a sunlit and quiet study room. Reading in the library, Arya wonders if her previous warning was too much of a shock for Vincent. 17 words. Arya ponders if the boy will repeat the tragic mistakes of his previous lives.
An open notebook sits among stacks of books as a thought asks if the Duke will find him.
Vincent appears with a stack of books, greeting Arya as his sister-in-law for the first time lately. 17 words. Arya looks up from her book with a start, surprised by the boy's sudden appearance. Arya observes the heavy tome in his hands, realizing it is a book regarding the law. Vincent explains that the Emperor and Lloyd have moved his mother to a safe location. Vincent leans back with a smug smile, noting that Arya seems to be very curious.
Arya looks away, simply acknowledging his statement with a quiet and internal confirmation.
Narration explains that in the past life, Grand Duke Lloyd only found Vincent after several years. The grim truth follows, revealing that they only discovered Vincent's cold and lifeless body. Arya sits alone, questioning if her interference is truly enough to stop Vincent's destined death.
Vincent addresses her as sister-in-law, prompting Arya to look back at him with interest.
Sitting at the large table, Vincent asks Arya if he can inquire about something important. Vincent asks Arya directly why she felt the need to help him in the first place.
Arya claims she protects her people, but Vincent asks if he is counted among them.
Arya clarifies he is only Lloyd's brother, causing Vincent to look absolutely devastated.
Vincent asks if he has any chance of becoming one of her people, but Arya repeatedly refuses.
Arya finds his stubbornness annoying, noting she only helps him because of his relation to Lloyd.
Vincent vows to earn a chance, accusing Arya of discriminating too much while she asks for his opinion.
Vincent smiles confidently, asserting that he is simply very sure of his own great abilities.
A hand taps rhythmically on the table, punctuating the silence of the grand study room.
The camera pans across the library, showing a model ship resting near the window.
Arya stands surrounded by falling petals, looking up as a new realization strikes her.
The lavender-haired man stands in the grand room, muttering a curse under his breath.
The Grand Duke asks the lavender-haired man if he intends to surrender the items brought.
The lavender-haired man blames Arya's persistence for his presence while she hums nearby in chibi form.
The Grand Duke questions the man's claim, noting Arya has never needed his own gifts.
The Grand Duke's jealousy flares as he wonders why Arya would ask the man for anything.
The lavender-haired man quickly clarifies that Arya did not actually make a fuss when asking.
The Grand Duke becomes furious at the thought of Arya politely asking the man for something.
Chibi Arya smiles brightly while the lavender-haired man screams for help within the palace walls. 16 words.
A pair of hands displays a necklace found at the temple, marking it as a discovery.
The lavender-haired man examines the jewelry, asking if the necklace is truly a holy relic.
The man explains that holy relics usually hold power, which he cannot sense from this item. The conversation shifts toward objects that drain life force as metal cages sit in the background. The man describes a magic sword that drains the life force of ordinary people upon contact.
The man warns that cursed gems like the necklace can take the life of their owner.
A vision of a blonde woman appears with the note that the saintess cannot die.
The lavender-haired man blows onto the necklace while standing in his laboratory filled with flasks.
The necklace gem flashes a deep red before returning to its clear and original white state.
The man confirms magic is ineffective, leading Arya to ask how the power is accessed instead.
Arya notes the relic can hold divine power, blood, or perhaps even a person's soul.
Arya imitates the man's earlier action and blows onto the gem of the gold necklace.
The gem begins to glow, confirming that the necklace indeed possesses a hidden divine power.
Arya puts the necklace on, declaring she wants nothing more to do with gods or powers.
Arya focuses her attention and suggests they move on to the main point of discussion.
Arya commands the lavender-haired man to pierce her core, which he immediately and flatly refuses.
The man walks away, claiming he already proved why piercing her core is completely impossible.
The man rants about the risks to her life while Arya calls him a fraud.
The man explains that his visit to the tower was normal due to the coordinates located there.
Arya reflects privately that the capital is actually the most dangerous place for her to be. Narration explains that the siren healed diseases and created miracles, challenging the authority of God. Thoughts reveal the public would lose their minds if the siren's existence became widely known.
A bloody castle background underscores Arya's guilt over a war started because of her existence.
Arya and the lavender-haired man stand silently in the laboratory, surrounded by various scientific equipment.
The man observes Arya's focus on having her core pierced despite his continued refusal and nagging.
Frustrated by the girl's persistence, the lavender-haired man clutches his head and lets out a groan.
Arya watches him, thinking that sometimes it feels like he is actively looking for death.
The lavender-haired man maintains his refusal and announces that he is leaving the room now. Surprised by his sudden departure, Arya reminds the man of a promise he supposedly made earlier. Arya stands alone in the laboratory with Silver the Wolf as a magic circle glows nearby. Arya exhales a tired sigh as she reflects on the difficult conversation she just had.
Silver the Wolf looks up with a friendly expression, panting as it watches the girl.
Looking directly at the gray wolf, Arya calls out to the animal using its name.
Arya instructs Silver to bite the shaman's backside if they ever encounter the man again. A determined declaration vows to do whatever is necessary to have her core pierced eventually.
The Grand Palace exterior features a quiet pond reflecting the tall, ornate stone arches.
Arya stands near the water, looking at the distant castle architecture under the clear sky. Arya notes that Sabina's letter has not arrived, which she finds to be very strange. Rain begins to fall over the courtyard as Arya stands alone in the open air. Arya looks toward the side as the falling rain begins to soak her pink hair. A man suddenly appears and holds a black umbrella over Arya to shield her from rain. Lloyd stands before Arya with an umbrella, prompting the girl to call out his name. Lloyd stands silently in the rain, holding a black umbrella to shield Arya. Standing in the garden, Arya looks up and calls Lloyd's name in surprise.
Arya warns Lloyd that he will likely fall ill again if they stay up.
Lloyd mockingly asks Arya if she's a flower before stating it is not raining.
Arya notes the sudden rain while Lloyd suggests she should at least try avoiding it. Lloyd gazes downward with a somber expression as the rain continues to fall. Arya observes the garden, her gaze lingering on the blooming white flowers around them.
Turning away, Lloyd asks the girl if she is tired of her daily routine. Arya secretly awaits a letter from the Duchess while Lloyd questions her idle presence.
Lloyd expresses his frustration and asks Arya why she remains standing in the garden.
A maid rushes toward the pair, frantically urging the Grand Prince to follow her.
Lloyd turns his attention toward the breathless maid and asks what has happened. The maid stammeringly reveals that the woman has suddenly suffered a terrifying seizure.
The weeping maid explains the doctor fears the Duchess will not survive the night.
Arya is stunned by the news, realizing the tragic timeline is moving too quickly.
Arya determines she must force the shaman to pierce her core to intervene.
With a sudden movement, Arya turns her back on the others to depart quickly.
Lloyd reaches out and firmly catches Arya's hand before she can leave the scene.
The two children stand together in the rain as Lloyd holds on to the girl.
Arya looks back at Lloyd with wide, questioning eyes as he stops her departure. Lloyd remains silent, his expression unreadable as he looks directly at the girl. Narration describes the Grand Duke's offer of a home within the estate for Arya. The Grand Duke promises to provide Arya with anything she could possibly desire. Arya reflects on her lack of time while Lloyd continues to hold her hands.
Arya looks at him with intense focus and demands that he release her hand.
Lloyd adjusts his grip on the umbrella as he begins to speak once more. Standing alone in the downpour, Lloyd coldly tells the girl to leave the area. Arya watches as Lloyd calls for a maid and starts to walk away.
Arya remains in the garden, now holding the black umbrella as Lloyd departs.
The sky remains dark and overcast as heavy rain pours down upon the palace.
Inside the quiet palace, a large ornate clock ticks away as the night progresses.
The woman looks out the window, questioning why the rain is falling so heavily. The woman gently kisses the girl's forehead and encourages her to get some rest. Arya reflects on her regression as a miraculous chance to escape her tragic fate.
Arya resolves to save the Duchess as she looks at the rainy palace exterior.
The moonlight filters through heavy curtains into a quiet and lavishly decorated bedroom. A sharp creaking sound echoes through the silence as a heavy wooden door opens. Arya peeks through the doorway, her pink eyes glowing as she monitors the hallway.
Silver the wolf looks up with curiosity as Arya calls out its name softly. The wolf barks happily and jumps toward Arya, who reacts with a startled expression.
Arya shushes the excited animal, warning that they will get caught if it's loud.
Arya gently pets the wolf's head to calm its excitement before they proceed together.
Arya is commanded to head toward the East Tower through the cold evening rain. Within his laboratory, the shaman looks up in surprise at his unexpected late-night visitor.
The shaman asks the girl what she just said as she stands before him.
Arya stands beside Silver on the laboratory floor, ready to make a bold request. Arya announces she will cure the Duchess because only she has that unique ability.
Arya demands the shaman pierce her core as he had previously promised to do. Various scrolls and a human skull sit upon the shaman's cluttered laboratory study table.
The shaman looks at her and gives a firm and final refusal.
The shaman warns that her wish breaks laws and her predestined death is today.
The shaman stares at Arya's eyes while she looks back at him with quiet intensity. Surrounded by flowers, Arya's presence strangely compels people to believe in her every word.
The shaman clutches his forehead, convinced that he has truly lost his mind.
The shaman repeats his internal realization that he has definitely gone crazy.
The voice asks if she understands the gravity of the dangerous choice she is making.
The shaman warns that piercing her core likely means death, and Arya calmly agrees.
The shaman explains he will use magic to temporarily activate a fake path for her.
Arya looks up in surprise, admitting she fully expected him to refuse her request again.
The shaman warns that absorbing foreign energy will cause severe side effects within her body.
He adds that the process will place an immense amount of pressure on her physique.
Surrounded by a floral aura, Arya listens intently to the shaman's final warnings.
Shaman fears his employer will kill him if she dies, but Arya promises to survive.
The shaman initiates the magical core activation by pressing his finger to Arya's forehead.
A sudden flash of golden light illuminates Arya's forehead as the magic takes hold.
Licking his finger, the shaman states that this temporary measure is all he can manage.
Arya examines her hands, wondering if the activation of her core was truly successful. 14 words. The shaman snaps his fingers and advises the girl to take good care of herself. Engulfed in a swirling magical aura, Arya prepares to leave the tower and head out. 15 words.
Arya realizes that appearing in public now would result in her secret being exposed.
A close-up shows Arya's feet as she moves swiftly through the quiet palace halls.
Arya stops in her tracks, letting out a soft sound of surprise as she looks.
Entering the Grand Room, Arya notes that the Grand Duke, Lloyd, and Vincent are gone.
Arya observes the heavy silence of the chamber as she looks toward the balcony doors.
The camera focuses on the elegant furniture and curtains within the quiet, moonlit room. Arya hears a strained voice and worries the speaker is on the verge of death. Arya senses an overwhelming presence, comparing the person's energy to that of a commander. Violent coughing echoes from behind the bed's curtains as the patient struggles to breathe.
A voice from within the bed tells Arya to go away as she approaches.
Arya realizes she has heard this voice once before in her previous life. Arya recalls that Sabina used to isolate herself and chase everyone away when how.
Sabina's isolation meant her husband and son could never be by her side. Blood splatters on a dark background serve as a grim reminder of the many deaths. Arya wonders if Sabina believes that nothing can help her recover from this sickness.
Arya questions if the Duchess simply refuses to show her weak side to anyone.
Sabina reacts with shock upon realizing that a small child has entered her room.
Sabina questions how the girl entered since nobody is allowed inside her chamber.
A thin, pale hand rests weakly on the bedsheets, highlighting the woman's fragile condition.
Arya notes the Duchess's rough hands and admits she never saw her before she was sick.
Arya resolves to save her, singing a song about a land where lemon trees grow.
Visions of glowing lights and a clear sky fill the room as Arya sings.
The lyrics describe silent myrtles and the desire to be with a loved one.
Arya's song tells of a deer seeking a cave where a dragon lives.
Sabina coughs into her hands while listening to the girl's hauntingly beautiful melody.
Arya's song concludes with a wish to be together in that beautiful, distant place. Sabina stares at the girl with wide eyes, mesmerized by the power of her song.
Sabina looks at Arya, acknowledging that they have a very long road ahead of them.
Sabina blinks in disbelief, her gaze fixed on the girl as she begins to wake.
Looking around the room, Sabina expresses confusion at her surroundings and the child.
Sabina slowly sits up in bed, her black hair flowing as she reacts with surprise. Sabina sits up in her bed, astonished to find that she is still alive.
Arya moves behind the bedroom curtains as she prepares to make her silent departure. Sabina looks at the pink-haired girl, calling her a fairy of spring in her days. Arya worries that her identity has been exposed after being seen by the Duchess.
Sabina lowers her gaze in contemplation as Arya quietly slips away from the bedside.
The empty bedroom remains silent as the magical presence begins to fade from the air.
Arya feels relief seeing Sabina sleeping, but she suddenly coughs blood due to the side effects Carlin mentioned. Arya staggers while wiping blood, relieved she chose the temporary alternative instead of piercing her core.
Wiping away more blood, Arya considers the pain a cheap price for saving the Duchess. Arya stands near the bed, satisfied that she has finally managed to save Sabina's life. A radiant glow surrounds Arya's hands as her clothes begin to shimmer with magical energy.
Shimmering magical particles fill the grand chamber, marking the end of the healing ritual.
Magical sparkles drift into the rainy night air outside the tall windows of the palace. A magical circle forms beneath Arias's feet as she teleports away from the Duchess's room.
Arya gasps for air while leaning against a wall, trying to regain her physical composure.
Standing in the rain, Arya wipes the remaining blood from her mouth with her sleeve.
Lloyd observes the girl from his balcony and notes that she is caught in the rain again.
Lloyd stands on the high balcony looking down at Arya as she wanders the garden. Arya wonders when he arrived and if he witnessed her bleeding or her sudden magical teleportation. Lloyd questions if the moisture on the girl's face is from the raindrops or tears. Arya assumes he saw nothing, but she wonders about the reason for his strange behavior. Arya ponders if her current situation reminds the boy of a scene from the opera Aida.
Arya recalls a female lead in a play who could not cry despite being crushed.
Arya compares herself to that character, while Chibi Arya explains it is a misunderstanding. Arya decides it's better for people to misunderstand her, as Chibi Arya avoids being burdensome.
Lloyd remarks that Arya possesses a natural talent for rejecting the attention of other people.
With a swift and agile motion, Lloyd leaps down from the high balcony into the rain. Lloyd lands on the ground and insists that the girl should at least listen to him.
Lloyd warns Arya not to provoke his bad mood and chides her for neglecting herself.
The two children exchange a silent and intense stare amidst the heavy falling rain.
Reaching out, Arya tells Lloyd to calm down while she approaches him in the garden. Arya gently places her hand on Lloyd's head against a playful and patterned pink background. Arya notes his smooth hair and reflects on the fact that he is still just a child. Lloyd stands perfectly still with a slight blush as Arya continues to pat his head. Arya's hand remains on Lloyd's dark hair as the rain continues to fall around him. Standing together in the garden, the girl provides gentle comfort to the silent, dark-haired boy.
Lloyd looks up with a flustered expression and asks Arya what she is trying to do.
Arya admits to herself that she is not entirely sure what prompted her own actions.
Arya remembers how Dana's affection felt, noting the strange and unexplainable warmth she previously experienced.
Arya recalls a tingling sensation that spread warmth throughout her entire body in the past. 15 words.
Arya reflects on how all her past anger and loneliness disappeared in a single moment.
Arya pats Lloyd's head, expressing her hope that the gesture provides him with similar comfort. Arya smiles warmly at him, silently wishing that the boy will never have to be sick. The two children remain in the garden as Arya continues her gentle and rhythmic head pat. Arya continues petting his hair while Lloyd suggests that she will become much more well-behaved.
Arya blinks in surprise as she looks at Lloyd's serious face through the falling rain.
Arya stares at him, internally comparing his brooding and quiet behavior to a grumpy cat. Lloyd grabs her wrist, telling her to stop and questioning if she thinks everyone is weak.
Lloyd repeats his question regarding whether she believes that everyone else is as weak as she is.
Lloyd explains he was simply caught in the rain and knows exactly how to handle it. Lloyd stares intensely at Arya through the rain, telling her she will surely die.
Arya reflects on the Valentine family's ladies, stating she is already aware of her situation.
A close-up of a hand resting on a surface accompanies Arya's thought about her awareness.
Lloyd stands silently in the rain, his back turned as he lets out a quiet sigh. Lloyd grabs Arya's hand firmly, declaring that he won't care even if she starts crying.
Lloyd commands Arya to follow him as they stand in the rainy palace garden together. Heavy rain continues to pour down on the grand exterior of the ornate stone palace.
Lloyd maintains a firm grip on Arya's hand while the rain soaks both of them.
Upon entering the palace, a maid asks the children what has happened to them. The focus shifts to the children's feet as they stand together on the wet floor. Several maids rush over, worrying that Arya and Lloyd will catch a cold from being soaked. A maid places a large, fluffy white towel over Arya's head to dry her off. Lloyd tells Arya that her adorable puppy eyes won't work on him this time around. A background image of the palace is shown as Lloyd says things are worse now. Arya notices Lloyd's deep hatred for the Valentine family reflected in the tone of his voice.
Lloyd stares forward with a cold expression, describing his current situation as the bottom of hell.
Lloyd warns Arya that she won't be able to bear the situation once she enters it.
Lloyd opens a large door and tells Arya to get out while he takes responsibility.
Lloyd turns toward Arya and asks if she is capable of taking a bath by herself. 16 words. Arya is confused by his question, noting that Lloyd sees her as being much younger. Arya argues that she is not a child, while Lloyd insists that she definitely is one. Arya looks at a steaming bath, fearing she's about to become human soup.
Arya turns away with a nervous expression as she considers the steaming bath before her. 15 words.
Lloyd looks back and realizes Arya doesn't know how to adjust the water's high temperature.
Arya reaches out and gently pats Lloyd's head, acknowledging that he has tried very hard.
Lloyd tells her to hurry up and get bathed so she can put on some clothes.
Lloyd tosses various dresses onto a rack for Arya to choose from for her change.
Lloyd shuts the large wooden door behind him quickly, leaving Arya alone in the room. 15 words. Arya wonders if Lloyd is keeping an eye on her because of the loud noise.
Arya reflects on her situation, knowing anyone would be angry finding her in the rain.
Arya watches the bathtub fill up, wondering if Lloyd actually wants her to get sick.
Lloyd informs Arya that he has ordered people to find a suitable house for her. Behind the closed door, Lloyd tells Arya not to get sick and to leave in silence. Arya is left stunned by Lloyd's sudden and unexpected command for her to leave him.
Looking at the bathwater, Arya questions if Lloyd truly just told her to depart.
Lloyd explains that marriage can only end in divorce once the parties involved have matured.
A close-up of Lloyd's face appears as he tells Arya this is her last chance.
A heavy door opens with a loud sound as the scene transitions to another room.
Lloyd asks Arya why she came out of the room while she stands before him.
Arya looks at Lloyd and firmly declares that she has no intention of running away.
Arya reflects on Lloyd's words, realizing he could have lived a normal life without her.
Arya stands close to Lloyd and tells him that they will divorce 10 years later.
Arya looks upward at Lloyd with a determined and steady gaze while she speaks to him.
Surrounded by a floral aura, Arya shocks Lloyd by asking him to marry her instead. Lloyd is rendered speechless, his eyes wide with surprise at the girl's sudden marriage proposal.
Lloyd turns away and asks if she truly understands the meaning of her own words.
Lloyd expresses his deep worry for Arya's safety, frustrated that she doesn't care for herself.
Arya gazes at him, declaring that she doesn't care about things like money or power.
Lloyd claims he cannot bite her as she leans in and kisses his cheek softly.
Lloyd remains silent, his face flushed as he processes the girl's bold and unexpected action.
Lloyd tells Arya that he is unable to bite her as she looks at him.
Lloyd reacts with visible shock and confusion to the girl's sudden and unexpected display.
Arya hums thoughtfully to herself while standing against a playful and patterned pink background.
Lloyd stands silently before a large closed door, overwhelmed by the recent turn of events. Arya decides she must pretend not to hear the commotion occurring outside the bathroom.
Surrounded by flowers, Arya sits in the warm bath while worrying about her current situation.
Dana bursts into the room with a frantic shout, searching for the young master.
Dana stops in her tracks, reacting with total confusion to the scene before her eyes.
Arya notices Dana's surprise at her sleepwear while Lloyd remains silent and visibly annoyed.
Dana asks Lloyd for an explanation regarding his time spent in the rain with Arya.
Dana questions if Lloyd is threatening the girl while Arya reflects on their recent encounter.
Arya looks up at the woman standing beside her with a quiet and observant expression. 15 words.
Dana asks if Lloyd is still angry as he sits brooding in the dark room. Dana repeats her question, demanding to know what happened between the two children earlier.
Lloyd remains silent, staring forward with a stubborn and clearly irritated expression on his face.
Lloyd lets out a heavy and frustrated sigh as he tries to process his feelings. 15 words.
Lloyd describes Arya as a fearless rabbit as she stands quietly in the floral room.
Arya reacts with a blank expression to the boy's strange and unexpected comment about her. Lloyd decides that the current situation is unacceptable and needs to be addressed immediately.
Arya wonders if Lloyd was shocked because it was his first time being kissed. Lloyd questions the idea of it being a first while Arya holds onto her letter.
Lloyd slams his hand down on the table, emphasizing his growing frustration with the conversation.
Lloyd attempts to explain himself as the scene shifts to the grand interior hall.
Lloyd directly asks Arya for her reasoning behind agreeing to the proposal of marriage.
Arya realizes her answer will determine her future and her ability to remain in town.
Arya grips the letter tightly with both hands, preparing to give her most honest answer.
Lloyd reacts with a confused sound as he listens to the girl's unexpected explanation. 14 words.
Arya declares that her only wish is to bring true happiness to her savior.
Lloyd stares at the girl in disbelief, unable to comprehend the meaning of her words.
Someone rushes through the hall shouting news about a sudden and unexpected miracle occurring.
Lloyd asks the butler for an explanation as the man enters the room looking panicked.
The butler announces that the Duchess has miraculously recovered and is now able to walk.
Lloyd urgently asks if his mother has truly survived the illness as he prepares to move. Lloyd questions the validity of the news while he quickly makes his way toward the door.
Arya reacts with a soft gasp, realizing that her efforts to save Sabina were successful.
Arya notices that the boy's hands are shaking with intense emotion after hearing the news.
Butler confirms that despite her physical weakness, the Duchess is doing remarkably well and recovering. Lloyd commands the butler to lead him to his mother's side as he departs quickly. Arya remains behind in silence, watching the others depart while she processes her own feelings.
The physical strain of her magical actions causes Arya to stagger as she stands alone.
Arya collapses onto the floor as her energy finally gives out from the intense exertion.
Arya wonders if the rain is the cause of her sudden and overwhelming sense of exhaustion.
Lying on the floor, Arya feels a sense of peace for finally helping the boy.
The grand palace bedroom stands empty and silent as the morning light begins to filter in.
Arya reflects on the intense pain within her body while she rests in her bedroom.
Someone gently prepares a cool towel to help soothe the girl's fever and physical pain.
Lloyd repeats his observation about the girl's fearlessness while standing before a large palace window. Lloyd reaches out and asks why the girl is crying as she looks at him.
Tears stream down the girl's face as she reacts with a sudden and uncontrollable outburst. Arya realizes she is crying from pain but is relieved that she remained completely silent. In an ornate room, a thought bubble notes why people find habits so scary.
A white towel rests on the golden tub while Lloyd observes that the mask is wet.
Lloyd notes that she has a high fever and suggests taking off the wet mask. Chibi Lloyd sits beside Chibi Arya, who remains tucked under a patterned floral blanket.
Lloyd asks if he should know his future wife's face as Arya stares back in shock.
Lloyd sits silently by the bedside while Arya lies quietly under the floral covers. Still wearing her mask, Arya whispers a question about whether he will marry her.
Lloyd rubs his ear and replies that he is simply following her previous suggestion.
Lloyd reminds Arya that she was the one who asked him to marry her.
Arya agrees with a blush but hesitates to continue her thought about the situation.
Looking at the room's decor, Arya reflects on her past fear of being expelled. 15 words.
Lloyd stands by the window while Arya recalls his dislike for those who are weak.
Arya feels guilty, realizing her illness might have reminded Lloyd of his sick mother.
As a towel is wrung out, Arya explains she didn't intend to be a burden.
Lloyd acknowledges her words while stating she simply cannot take care of her own wounds.
Chibi Lloyd calls Arya an idiot for being unaware of her own injuries. Chibi Arya wonders who he's calling an idiot while feeling glad she wasn't kicked out.
Lloyd declares that he does not care about what her face looks like.
Arya lies in bed, clutching the floral blanket tightly with a nervous expression.
Arya considers that she cannot keep her face hidden for the rest of her life.
A close-up shows Arya's hand hesitating as she prepares to remove her mask.
Lloyd looks at her calmly and asks if she plans to chase him away.
Arya looks vulnerable as she tells Lloyd that she is actually very ugly.
Chibi Lloyd reacts with sheer bewilderment to the girl's claim about her appearance.
Lloyd insists that her appearance doesn't matter as he sits by her bedside. 14 words.
Lloyd tells her she is his first and repeats that her looks are unimportant.
Lloyd sits on a plush chair and asks Arya if she can remove her mask. 16 words.
Arya thinks Lloyd doesn't value such things, but worries her face will be disappointing. Lloyd assures her there is no need to worry as he already knows the truth.
Glowing particles and pink roses surround the frame as the reveal begins.
Arya's face is finally revealed, appearing radiant and beautiful amidst a sea of flowers.
A close-up of Lloyd's reddened ear indicates his racing heart and visible embarrassment.
Lloyd is stunned into silence, his face flushing red as he sees her clearly.
Arya looks up with wide, sparkly eyes as her long pink hair flows around her. Chibi Lloyd is completely overwhelmed by her beauty, his face turning bright red.
Arya holds a damp towel to her head, looking thoughtful and slightly confused.
Above the fireplace, Lloyd's full name is displayed as a reminder of his lineage.
Arya reacts with a small sound of surprise as she looks away in contemplation.
Lloyd sits by the bed and directly asks the girl what her name is. 15 words.
Arya realizes she hasn't introduced herself yet, calling this a messy reunion in her thoughts. Lloyd softly mumbles the girl's name to himself with a gentle and focused expression.
Someone's hands wring out a fresh towel to place on the girl's forehead once more.
Arya closes her eyes as the cool, damp towel is gently placed on her face.
Lloyd tells Arya to rest and get more sleep while he stays nearby.
The scene transitions to the grand white palace exterior under a bright, sunny sky.
A blurry image of a girl appears as a voice asks for her identity.
A concerned blonde woman with teary eyes asks if the person is okay.
A boy with white hair and heavy bandages looks up with wide, startled eyes.
Sitting up in bed, the bandaged boy asks if the woman is a saintess.
A close-up shows the bandaged boy's eyes reflecting shock and curiosity at the visitor.
The bandaged boy lets out a groan of pain as he struggles to sit up.
Veronica instructs the boy to remain still, warning him that his injuries are quite severe. 15 words.
The boy thanks her and asks why the saintess is crying over his current state.
Veronica clasps her hands together and weeps as she looks at the injured boy.
Looking at his wounds, Veronica expresses her deep distress over how much he was hurt.
Veronica smiles through her tears, admitting that she was extremely worried about his safety.
Gabriel stares at the saintess with a stunned expression while covered in multiple medical bandages.
A close-up focuses on Veronica's face as she gazes affectionately at the young apprentice knight.
Narration explains that divine power determines one's rank and influence within the Holy Empire. The vividness of golden eyes serves as a visual indicator for high-ranking social status.
Although her eyes are brownish gold, Veronica is described as a naturally kind and warm-hearted person.
Veronica laughs joyfully while clutching a massive bouquet of vibrant flowers in her arms.
The narrative states that everyone loves the saintess as a sign of respect and affection.
Gabriel reflects on her kindness toward a lowly apprentice knight who could be easily discarded.
Gabriel wonders how anyone could possibly avoid liking such a gentle and compassionate person.
Veronica asks if Gabriel fell, and he explains he tried to force himself to stay awake.
Gabriel stares forward, questioning why he is so weak as his eyes glow with light. Gabriel tells her not to weep for him, prompting an outburst of shock from Veronica.
Veronica leans in close to the boy, surprising him with her sudden and intense proximity.
Veronica reminds Gabriel that everyone is God's child and he should never humble himself.
Veronica questions if he's ignoring divine love while Chibi Gabriel tries to explain his meaning.
Veronica looks down with a melancholic expression while sitting at her desk in the room.
Veronica asks herself what happened after the events that separated her from the young boy. Gabriel sits in bed and contemplates the possibilities of what might have occurred back then.
A grainy flashback shows Gabriel being severely beaten, wondering if he fainted from the pain. Gabriel remembers a specific child and wonders about the fate that befell her in the past.
Looking at a blurry figure, Gabriel suspects the young girl was sold into a life of slavery.
Veronica explains her attempt to save a child in danger, while Gabriel acknowledges her words. Clenching the sheets, Veronica admits that she was ultimately unable to save the poor child.
Gabriel envisions himself as a knight named Gabriel, granted grace by the Saintess's divine opportunity.
Clenching his fists, Gabriel reflects on his childhood weakness and being fortunate to remain behind.
Gabriel stares intensely at the viewer, his pale eyes glowing with a mysterious and divine light.
Veronica remains silent as she looks at the bandaged boy sitting on the bed. Veronica reaches out and holds Gabriel's hand as she prepares to speak with him. Clasping his hand, Veronica tells Gabriel to stop blaming himself for things beyond his control.
Gabriel looks up in surprise at the Saintess as she provides him with gentle physical comfort.
Veronica holds Gabriel's hand firmly and reassures him that the knight was never in the wrong. A close-up shows Veronica's mouth as she begins to speak a single word of emphasis.
Surrounded by white lilies, Veronica gazes forward with wide eyes and a look of surprise.
A close-up focus on the side of Gabriel's face as he looks at the Saintess.
Veronica looks at the side of his face and acknowledges that she has realized the truth. 16 words.
Divine light begins to emanate from the boy's neck, illuminating the bandages and his clothing.
The boy sits on the bed as golden light pours from his body and fills the room.
Gabriel reacts with shock as the divine light intensifies, causing tears to well in his eyes.
Veronica smiles at the boy, telling him not to be shaken and to trust her completely. A close-up of Veronica's face shows her realizing their past meeting was not a dream. Veronica notes that the weak boy possesses the power to potentially surpass the Pope's authority. Veronica's thoughts reveal her excitement at being the first one who discovered his incredible power.
Gabriel is flustered as the Saintess touches his face while she thinks about her discovery.
A view of the desk shows books and papers as Veronica expresses her trust in Gabriel. Veronica asks Gabriel if she can walk beside him on the long road ahead.
Gabriel stares back with wide eyes, his face and neck covered in medical bandages.
Gabriel wonders if the Saintess will allow him to walk with her after being right. Veronica looks at the boy with a compassionate and determined expression on her face.
Veronica tells Gabriel to stay sane as she promises to cure his injuries immediately.
Gabriel sits in silence, his eyes closed as he processes the Saintess's kind words. Veronica reflects on Gabriel's quick recovery due to his naturally strong divine power. Veronica tells Gabriel to rest while the boy thanks the Saintess for her help. A dialogue bubble indicates that the Saintess believes she simply did what was right. Veronica smiles brightly as she looks back over her shoulder before departing the room.
The scene transitions to a clear blue sky filled with bright, fluffy white clouds.
Veronica greets two other people outside the palace as the bright sun shines down. Veronica enters a room and closes the large wooden door with a sharp sound. 15 words. Standing alone, Veronica looks down with a solemn expression, the room dimly lit. 15 words. A close-up of Veronica's golden eyes shows her deep in thought about something. Veronica opens a drawer to reveal a white note hidden among various other items. A hand holds a note stating that someone shouldn't have doubted their chosen path. Veronica looks at her feet and wonders if God would even help her now. Veronica asks an unseen boy if she is right while she begins tearing the note. Calling it a childish thing, Veronica throws the torn pieces of the note away. A wide view of the grand palace exterior appears under a bright, clear sky.
Arya lies in bed looking feverish as she wonders about the noise in her room.
Arya's pink eyes are shown in a close-up as she remains silent and watchful. Vincent and Lloyd are working at a table near Arya's bed, causing her confusion. Lloyd mentions Arya's lifelong muteness while Chibi Vincent expresses his annoyance with the situation. Lloyd looks at Arya with a serious expression as he prepares to speak further. Lloyd observes that the girl appears to be holding back a great deal of pain. Lloyd tells Vincent to never mind and asks Arya why she doesn't speak up.
Chibi Arya feels overwhelmed by the noise and mentally tells the boys to be quiet.
Vincent complains that Lloyd and Arya don't act like a married couple at all.
Chibi Vincent says so what while Lloyd stares forward with a clearly irritated expression. Arya lies in bed questioning why Lloyd and Vincent are working in her bedroom. An overhead view shows Lloyd and Vincent sitting at the table while Arya watches them. Lloyd focuses on the papers on the table, his expression grave and deeply focused.
Arya reflects on her silent tears, explaining that she cried only because of the pain.
Lloyd asks Vincent if the girl looks tired, and Vincent suggests she had a nightmare. Vincent laughs, saying it's natural to have nightmares when Lloyd is always touching her.
Vincent notes that Arya's disease seems serious and she is physically weaker than before.
Vincent explains that a siren's mental state is typically better than their physical health. Vincent asks Lloyd if he knows the worst part of their respective personalities. Arya lies in bed and asks herself what the worst part could possibly be.
Vincent bluntly states that the two children are effectively like poison to each other.
Lloyd reacts with visible shock, repeating the idea that the girl is poison to him.
Vincent references ancient books describing sirens' innate ability to stimulate the feelings of others. Lloyd looks away as Vincent explains that Arya's heritage cannot be ignored or denied. Vincent points out that descendants of the Valentine family have always been mentally vulnerable. An illustration shows a blood-stained warrior, symbolizing the danger of going crazy or being destroyed. Vincent warns that Arya's influence could stimulate or destroy Lloyd's mind, causing total chaos. Lloyd smiles and firmly declares that the girl would never exploit the weaknesses of others.
Lloyd dismisses the theory as nonsense, while Vincent insists he is merely stating possibilities.
Arya lies resting in her bedroom while piles of books sit on the table nearby.
Arya reflects on the high risk of potentially losing her sanity due to her power.
In a vision, Veronica confronts the girl about the truth she is trying to deny.
Veronica claims that everyone who heard the siren song has eventually descended into complete madness. Looking at her bandaged leg, Arya recalls the suffering she endured in her past life.
Arya fears that her current situation might lead to an ending even worse than before.
Arya worries that her song will one day cause Lloyd to lose his own mind. Arya remains still in bed, haunted by the potential consequences of her inherited siren powers.
Lloyd sits by the bedside and notes that she won't become addicted immediately after hearing.
Arya thinks Lloyd is different from her past captor since she won't sing for him. Lloyd stands with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable as he looks at the girl.
Vincent looks on with a troubled and weary expression while contemplating the girl's unusual condition.
Vincent reports that the doctor found no physical issues with the girl's body despite her state. A decorative sewing machine sits silently on the dresser as the boys discuss the situation.
Vincent notes that the internal energy within the girl's body is currently in total disarray.
Lloyd asks for clarification as Chibi Vincent describes the girl's internal state as pure chaos.
Looking intensely frustrated, Lloyd demands that Vincent explain the situation to him more clearly.
Vincent expresses his frustration with the doctor for leaving him alone to deal with the recovery.
Vincent explains that her energy is weak and she can only control a small portion. Lloyd acknowledges the news with a hum while Chibi Vincent expresses his immense relief. Vincent states that she needs stabilizing medicine until her energy returns to a normal level.
Vincent notes similarities to the Valentine family while Chibi Lloyd listens with a curious expression. Vincent suddenly looks surprised as a new thought about the stabilizing medicine occurs to him. An ornate bottle filled with glowing medicine becomes the focus of the boys' urgent conversation.
The focus remains on the bottom of the decorative glass bottle containing the important medicine.
Vincent gives instructions on the medicine's dosage while Lloyd confirms he will handle the task.
A hand reaches out and firmly grasps the medicine bottle from the top of the dresser.
Lloyd promises to deliver the doctor's instructions to the girl once she finally wakes up. Lloyd holds the decorative medicine bottle, his gaze fixed on the girl's pale, resting face.
Chibi Vincent asks Lloyd to proceed with the care while they stand alone.
A portrait hangs on the wall as Vincent announces his departure from the girl's bedroom.
Lloyd repeats the medicine schedule to himself while carefully watching over the sleeping pink-haired girl.
As Arya begins to awaken, she sees a blurry figure and hears Lloyd calling her.
Arya looks up in shock as she realizes that Lloyd is closely holding her in bed.
Lloyd tells Arya to open her mouth so she can take her required stabilizing medicine.
Arya begins to cry while Lloyd sits beside her, holding her close to his side.
Lloyd tells Arya not to cry as he reaches out to gently wipe her tears.
Arya wonders if this tender moment is a dream and why she is having it.
Arya realizes that the conversation she overheard between Lloyd and Vincent was actually quite real.
Vibrant flowers in a vase are illuminated by the bright sunlight streaming through the window.
Arya's eyes are shown in a close-up as she slowly adjusts to being awake again.
Lloyd notices the girl is awake and asks if she has finally regained her full consciousness. Lloyd stands calmly by the bed, waiting for the girl to respond to his greeting.
Arya and Lloyd exchange quiet greetings as they look at each other in the morning light. 16 words.
Arya asks when he arrived, and Lloyd claims he just recently entered the quiet bedroom.
Arya assumes it was a dream since Lloyd is usually too busy to visit her. Arya is shocked to learn from Lloyd that she has been sick for a week.
Lloyd looks exhausted, suggesting he stayed up all night to watch over the sick girl.
A chibi Arya stares in disbelief, trying to comprehend having been sick for a week.
A tray with tea and snacks is prepared for the girl to help her recover.
The orange-haired maid enters the room announcing that she has brought the morning meal.
Arya sits in bed while Lloyd remains by her side in the sunlit bedroom.
The scene focuses on a chair bathed in soft light as the morning progresses. Arya touches her lip and lets out a soft sound of realization and surprise.
Looking downcast, Arya worries that her face is ugly without the protection of her mask. Arya hopes the maid can still smile at her despite her maskless appearance.
The maid claps her hands in wonder, calling the young girl an adorable fairy. Dana praises Arya for sleeping without her mask, while Arya explains it helped her rest.
Dana leans down and affectionately kisses the pink-haired girl's forehead in a tender gesture. Smiling warmly, the maid playfully asks the girl if she is actually a fairy.
Arya feels bashful and rubs her face, admitting that the maid's praise makes her shy.
Lloyd and Arya sit together in silence as a slight tension fills the bright room. Chibi Dana giggles at the flustered children while they both blush with visible embarrassment.
Lloyd blames the maid for Arya's strange habits while Dana asks for an explanation.
Turning his head away, Lloyd remains silent and looks irritated by the maid's questioning.
Chibi Arya looks at Lloyd and asks if he heard her previous words.
Chibi Arya and Lloyd shake their heads in sync during their quiet bedside interaction.
Lloyd questions her hearing while Arya decides to change the subject to avoid his dop.
Arya holds up a card and notes that the surrounding flowers are very pretty.
Lloyd urges the girl to hurry up and eat the breakfast the maid provided. Trembling slightly, Arya explains that her arms feel too weak to feed herself properly. Lloyd lets out an annoyed sigh near the ornate clock as he prepares to help. A close-up shows a spoon filled with warm medicine being lifted from a bowl. Lloyd focuses intensely on the task at hand, his expression serious and concentrated. Holding a plate, Lloyd prepares to feed the sick girl while standing in the room. Arya looks up with wide, sparkly eyes, surprised by the boy's sudden act of care. Arya recalls her dream and notes that Lloyd's current behavior feels remarkably similar. Lloyd instructs Arya to open her mouth while she notes he sounds exactly the same.
Dina asks the Grand Duke to be gentler, but he insists he is trying.
Arya finds Lloyd adorable and wonders if he has ever fed anyone before this moment.
Lloyd asks why she is smiling, while Arya admits she thinks he is being cute.
Lloyd carefully feeds the girl, warning her to be cautious to avoid getting burned. Lloyd is flustered as Arya playfully teaches him the correct way to feed her. Arya beams with a wide and happy smile after successfully being fed by the boy. Sunlight streams into the elegantly decorated room, illuminating the flowers on the table.
A grand palace stands beneath a clear sky, marking the start of a new chapter.
An ornate clock sits on the mantle as narration emphasizes that the time has come.
The focus remains on the ticking clock as the narrative repeats the word for emphasis.
Arya is excited to finally meet Sabina in person while wearing a new dress.
Arya wonders what gift to bring, while the maid suggests that flowers are always perfect.
Dana explains that fresh flowers are a universal sign of affection and respect for others. Arya contemplates her options and remembers seeing beautiful blossoms outside the window the previous day. A close-up of Arya's glowing eyes indicates she has finally remembered a specific detail. Vibrant red blossoms cover a high fence in the palace garden under a bright sky. Arya identifies the flowers as fire blossoms and gazes up at them with fascination.
Chibi Arya jumps repeatedly in a futile attempt to reach the blossoms on the fence.
Unable to reach the flowers, Arya wonders if she should ask someone for assistance. Red petals fall as a voice from above asks the girl what she's doing. Arya looks up in surprise as a shower of crimson petals drifts through the air.
Lloyd stands behind the girl, looking down at her as petals swirl around the mouth. Someone jumps with great speed through the garden while red petals drift nearby.
Arya asks if Lloyd is leaving while comparing his agile movements to a cat. 14 words. Lloyd offers Arya flowers he picked while she worries if Sabina will dislike them. Lloyd asks for Arya's hand while standing in the palace garden near a gazebo. Red rose petals rain down from the sky, filling the air with a vibrant crimson color. 16 words. Arya looks up in pure amazement as the petals continue to fall around her. 14 words. Lloyd explains he picked blossoms for his mother and asks about Arya's own goal.
Arya observes the card again, noting the flowers are pretty while holding it tightly. 14 words.
Lloyd turns away, questioning the beauty of the flowers while red petals swirl around him.
Arya remains silent, looking at the boy with a look of quiet contemplation.
A close-up focus highlights the intricate floral pattern on the boy's stylish shirt. A hand reaches out toward a blooming rose in the lush garden setting. Arya notices something is different and asks the boy if anything is Renon.
Lloyd points out something in Arya's hair while she looks at the paper card. 14 words.
Lloyd asks if that is so, oblivious to the rose in his hair. Nothing says tough guy like a rose behind the ear.
Arya wonders if Lloyd has ever been the recipient of a joke before now.
Arya reflects on Lloyd's unexpected naivete and realizes this is another first for him.
Arya stifles a laugh while looking at the serious boy with a floral accessory.
Arya recognizes the red-haired man standing nearby and recalls that his name is Cloud.
Arya reflects on Cloud's identity as Lloyd's guard and remembers his tragic fate. Lloyd asks if his guard is crazy for laughing, prompting Cloud to offer an apology.
Cloud silently pleads for help as he reacts to Lloyd's intense and icy stare. Lloyd's irritation grows as he glares at his guard with a look of extreme annoyance.
Lloyd orders his guard to turn away, but Cloud argues it would prevent protection.
Cloud decides to treat Lloyd's cold behavior as a unique form of training for himself.
Lloyd and Arya walk away together as Cloud departs in the opposite direction. Arya looks back with a confused expression, questioning the strange interaction she just witnessed.
The two children reach out toward each other, their hands nearly touching in the garden.
A soft memory of Arya smiling warmly appears as she reflects on their growing bond.
Arya wonders about the boy's confusing behavior while he looks visibly flustered and agitated.
Lloyd suddenly reaches out and firmly grasps the girl's hand in his own. The pair stands together in the sunlit garden, holding hands as they prepare to move.
Lloyd urges Arya to depart, warning her that she might potentially get injured.
Lloyd dismisses his safety while Arya reminds him to take better care of himself. Lloyd holds her hand firmly and insists he will be fine because of her. 14 words. Lloyd looks at the girl with a serious and protective expression on his face. Arya beams and asks the boy if they can continue holding hands for now. Lloyd lets out a deep sigh while looking away with a clearly flustered expression. 14 words. Lloyd confirms they should go now while standing in the colorful palace garden. 14 words. Arya enters the grand bedroom, her face blushing deeply as she prepares for the meeting.
Lloyd looks at the girl, his gaze steady as they arrive at their destination.
Chibi Lloyd asks Arya if she is afraid to meet his mother in person.
Lloyd notes Arya's unusual expression while she wonders how to best respond to him.
Lloyd suggests they enter the room immediately without any further preparation or delay.
Arya lets out a small sound of surprise as she enters the mother's room. Sabina welcomes the children into her room as she sits resting in her bed.
Arya expresses her quiet shock as she finally looks upon the face of Sabina.
A close-up shows a hand resting gently on the soft white sheets of the bed.
Sabina notes their arrival while sitting comfortably in her beautifully decorated bedroom.
Lloyd asks his mother if she is feeling better as the children approach her bed.
Sabina rests comfortably in her bed, noting that only a minor pain remains.
Arya envisions a strong warrior while hoping she can one day fight just as effectively. Lloyd looks bewildered as Arya watches him with sparkles of intense admiration in her eyes.
Arya gazes up with wonder and asks if she is allowed to touch the rose.
Sabina laughs as Lloyd looks incredibly flustered with roses pinned into his dark hair.
Sabina observes her son, noting his life has been dominated by endless study and training.
Sabina remarks on Lloyd's bland childhood, pointing out his singular familiarity with rigorous academic pursuits.
Lloyd becomes increasingly overwhelmed and confused by his mother's playful teasing about his behavior.
Sabina teases that his first love prefers summer, while Lloyd quickly tries to deny it.
Sabina questions his denial as she reaches out toward the children in the sunlight room. Sabina remarks on the intensity of young love while holding a vibrant red rose. Lloyd fumes with irritation while Arya thinks about her inability to stop looking at him. Lloyd feels speechless, privately considering Arya a genius at making others follow her own will.
Arya beams with joy, noting that she finds it impossible to stay angry at him.
The Grand Palace stands tall as the children begin visiting Sabina with much more frequency.
A wide view of the palace grounds captures the peaceful atmosphere of their daily visits.
Sunlight filters into the elegant room, marking the passage of many similar and quiet days.
A cold tension fills the room as Lloyd and the Duke exchange a heavy silence.
Arya feels the immense pressure between the two men, worrying that their relationship has worsened.
Lloyd questions the Duke's sudden desire to marry Arya after previously suspecting her of being a spy.
The Duke claims Arya as his daughter, while Vincent frantically reminds him he only has sons.
Lloyd mockingly asks who was responsible for bringing her to the palace as his fiancée.
Lloyd accuses his father of treating the girl carelessly and only now pretending to show concern.
The Duke challenges Lloyd's authority, questioning if he truly has any rights over the girl's future.
The two men glare at each other with intense hostility, their red eyes filled with rage.
Sabina intervenes, commanding them both to stop and reminding them they both tried to kill Arya.
Sabina questions their sanity as she observes the chaotic state of the room from her bed. Sabina asks what they did while she was sick, leaving Tristan and Lloyd visibly shaken. Sabina gently calls Arya to her side, offering her a brief respite from the men's bickering.
Arya steps forward and reaches out to the woman, seeking comfort in her gentle presence.
Sabina pulls Arya into a protective embrace, vowing to defend the precious child from any harm.
Sabina looks down with a calm yet firm expression while she holds the young girl close.
Arya rests her head against the woman's chest, feeling safe within her kind and warm embrace.
Sabina's eyes glow with a dangerous intensity as she prepares to confront the two men.
An oppressive and furious energy emanates from Sabina as she glares at Lloyd and the Duke. Arya looks at her card and concludes that all the past suffering is finally over.
Sabina warns Arya never to hide her pain or she might mistakenly believe she is fine.
Sabina encourages Arya to hate the two men if she wishes, while Vincent praises her normalcy.
The empty room remains silent as the conversation shifts to events that occurred in the past.
The focus remains on the quiet bedroom while the narrative explores the weight of past actions.
Sabina advises Arya not to speak with the men until they offer a sincere apology. Sabina tells Arya that she is simply unaware of how deeply she has been hurt.
Arya recalls a man from her past telling her that only fools ignore their own injuries.
Arya finally understands the true meaning behind the words she heard during her previous life.
A vision of Arya trapped behind bars appears as she reflects on her past life's suffering.
Lloyd watches her intently while Arya realizes she was far more damaged than she ever admitted.
Tears stream down Arya's face as the reality of her suppressed pain finally breaks through.
Sabina holds the weeping girl tightly, providing the comfort Arya so desperately needed for so long.
Sabina commandingly orders Lloyd and the Duke to leave the room so Arya can rest.
Sabina repeats her demand for the men to depart, her expression brooking no further argument.
Lloyd looks completely stunned and flustered after witnessing his mother's direct and bold intervention.
Tristan bows slightly and announces that they will now leave the room as they were requested.
The quiet atmosphere of the room remains peaceful, filled with the scent of fresh flowers.
Arya reflects that there was no reason to leave, noting they are now the only ones.
Sabina advises Arya to protest when discontented, noting she is too strong to simply suffer in silence.
Arya wonders if she can really follow such advice while feeling incredibly shy about the bold suggestion.
Sabina reassures her that she will never be as vulgar as the men she calls the 3 Vulgarians.
Arya is overwhelmed with emotion, her face turning a bright shade of red from embarrassment. 15 words. Touching her lip, Arya considers the weight of the moment as the word now echoes in her mind. Sabina encourages the girl to laugh and act upon her true feelings without any fear or hesitation. Arya feels incredibly flustered as she tries to comprehend the idea of acting solely on her own feelings.
Arya realizes she got caught being awkward while Sabina tells her not to smile in such a way.
Sabina tells her not to be wary and to act like a child, just as her sons would. Arya imagines Vincent and Lloyd as little devils while reflecting on how they frequently flash through her mind.
Arya lets out a joyful and genuine laugh, finally feeling comfortable in the woman's presence.
Sabina gives the girl a warm hug, expressing her satisfaction that the young child is finally opening up.
Arya reflects on the Grand Duke's similar advice, realizing that laughing or getting angry is finally acceptable for her. An off-screen voice notes that the pair truly resembles a husband and wife in their shared mannerisms.
Sabina invites the girl to share any secret she might have whenever she feels the time is right.
Arya looks up in utter shock, her wide eyes reflecting her fear of being discovered as the singer. Sabina promises that no one will ever condemn the girl for whatever secret she might be hiding internally.
Addressing her as a spring fairy, Sabina touches Arya's face while waiting for her to respond comfortably.
Arya realizes with a start that the woman already knows her secret identity as the mysterious palace singer.
The focus shifts to the elegant architecture of the room as the heavy conversation continues. Standing outside the room, Tristan observes the closed door and laments that they have been kicked out.
Tristan prepares to leave while Vincent suggests Lloyd find a place to properly vent his lingering anger.
Vincent notes that Lloyd looks like he has much to say while the boy remains visibly frustrated. Vincent asks Lloyd what he did to the child, while Lloyd internally questions his own recent actions.
Lloyd recalls hearing the word salvation mentioned before as he leans against the ornate pillar in thought.
Tristan claims he gave her advice, leading Vincent to question if it was actually helpful or real advice.
Tristan explains he promised to be on her side, which was the only reason she finally agreed to eat.
Shocked by the revelation, Lloyd asks if her condition was truly so serious that she was unable to eat.
Tristan details Arias's previous struggles, noting she could only handle soup and water without becoming physically ill.
Narration reveals that the speaker expected Arya to disappear eventually and was unaware of her hidden suffering. Narration highlights that Tristan was the one who originally saved the young girl from her abusive biological father.
Lloyd wonders if Arya's determination to marry him was simply a way to repay her debt to Tristan.
Tristan approaches his son, stating that there is something important he wishes to ask the boy immediately.
Tristan reflects on how Arya has enlightened the darkness of the palace since the day she first arrived.
Arya holds a vibrant bouquet of flowers, her hands trembling slightly from the weight of emotions.
Tristan asked Lloyd if he only wanted to keep Arya nearby because of her remarkable magical ability.
A panther appears behind Lloyd as he fiercely commands his father to stop talking such nonsense.
Tristan questions if Lloyd forced her to return the favor while the boy reacts with utter confusion.
Tristan dismisses the idea of using her as a shield, regardless of her actual magical or spiritual abilities. Lloyd warns Tristan that he will seize the title of Duke immediately if his father dares to interfere.
GB Lloyd screams a warning for his father never to touch Arya while the other men watch.
Lloyd turns away in a fit of rage, unable to process his father's provocative questions.
Lloyd marches down the hallway, his footsteps echoing the intense frustration he feels toward his father. Vincent calls Lloyd clumsy while Tristan accuses him of talking ambiguously on purpose to irritate the boy. Vincent complains about Lloyd's difficult personality while Tristan notes how adorable it is to see the boy's thoughts.
Tristan remains deep in thought, his expression unreadable as he contemplates the boy's fierce reaction.
A mysterious voice suggests that Arya may possess a critical key found in Garcia.
Vincent asks for clarification while Tristan remains silent with a stern and thoughtful expression.
Lloyd walks down the long, red-carpeted corridor, moving away from the previous tense confrontation.
Tristan considers that Lloyd will be worthy of marriage if he succeeds in his tasks.
Vincent is visibly perplexed by Tristan's claim that the young girl is actually his daughter.
Dana informs the group that priests from the Great Temple will be arriving very soon.
Arya sits up in her large bed, looking startled by the sudden and unexpected news.
Arya questions the temple's identity, prompting the maid to playfully ask if others even exist.
Arya focuses on the name of the faith, her eyes reflecting deep and troubled thoughts.
The narrative explains that the state religion of Garnia is currently the world's final faith.
The text emphasizes that every marriage requires divine permission according to the laws of God.
Arya reflects on her suspicion that individuals from the Holy Empire would eventually make contact.
Arya wonders why the priests are visiting personally instead of simply sending the necessary paperwork.
Clenching her dress tightly, Arya silently wonders if the upcoming meeting will truly go well.
Arya asks if a meeting is mandatory, but Dana reassures her it is not necessary. Dana leans in close to offer a warm and gentle goodnight to the young lady.
Arya sits alone in her dim room, quietly repeating the name of the Holy Faith.
Looking at the ornate chandelier, Arya doubts that the situation contains anything particularly special.
Arya blinks slowly as she processes the weight of the information she recently received.
Startled by a sudden sound, Arya looks toward the corner of her elegantly decorated bedroom.
Arya wonders if someone is arguing nearby despite the late hour in the quiet night.
The candles on the chandelier flicker as a faint creaking sound echoes through the silence.
Arya cautiously walks down the grand hallway, her long nightgown trailing softly on the floor.
Arya wonders about the vassals of Count Beaufort as she moves quietly through the dark.
Arya peeks around the corner, her eyes wide as she tries to locate the noise. Spotting a specific doorway, Arya identifies it as the source of the voices she hears.
Arya decides to eavesdrop on the private conversation happening behind the closed and ornate doors. An off-screen voice urgently whispers for everyone to lower their voices to avoid being discovered.
Chibi Arya reacts with shock, noting that the sudden change in volume truly frightened her. Tristan agrees with an off-screen speaker while Arya realizes she can hear their conversation clearly.
Arya hears a mention of a brother and wonders if it refers to the visiting priests.
Someone notes that Garnia is sending its most talented individuals to the Valentine family's estate. Tristan argues for the necessity of darkness while his guest notes the priest's impressive verbal skills. Tristan recalls his strict upbringing while the blonde man suggests temple life cannot last forever.
A teacup is set down while someone notes that it is still far too early.
Tristan questions the profound impact that a child's environment can have on their overall development.
Arya reflects on the secrecy of Valentine while hearing about Garnia's children for the first time.
Tristan predicts the priests will become corrupt, while Arya hopes the outcome is less severe. Looking at the paintings, Tristan decides upon his next course of action regarding the current situation. The blonde man asks if Tristan knows of children who develop divine powers later in life.
Tristan asks if he is referring to an ambitious knight before trying to recall his name. Arya's eye widens in shock as the stranger mentions a child with an angel's name. Arya wonders if the child is Gabriel as a vision of a young boy appears.
Narration introduces the Paladin Commander. The Paladin Commander, a man responsible for the massacre of millions in Panida. A terrified victim pleads for help as a violent sword strike cuts through the darkness.
Covered in blood, the Paladin Commander declares that his violent actions are simply God's will. The commander urges his knights to remain firm, claiming they are merely cleansing the new empire.
A final command echoes through the darkness, instructing the soldiers to kill without any hesitation.
Trembling with fear, Arya notes that she can still vividly remember that man's terrifying voice.
Arya desperately hopes the name refers to someone else, noting that angel names are quite common.
Someone mentions a rumor that the child originally came from a slum.
The blonde man expresses his approval while sitting at a table in the palace.
The blonde man explains that power developed later is unstable and could ruin a country.
Someone recalls how a boy begged for a chance to prove his growing strength earlier. Arya believes there is no one more suitable as she notices the group emerging.
The grand and ornate doors swing open wide, signaling the end of the meeting.
Tristan walks out, expressing his relief thanks to the actions of another individual.
An off-screen voice lets out a breath of relief that the situation is settled.
Arya watches from the shadows as Tristan and the blonde man walk down the hall. Arya reflects on the conversation, noting their refusal to send priests at any cost.
The men discuss how others refuse to volunteer and prefer to shift their heavy responsibilities. Arya considers that everyone is human, regardless of their religious status or divine preaching.
Arya grips her dress tightly, realizing it is impossible to distinguish good from bad.
The narrative notes that labels of good and evil between Garnia and Valentine are meaningless.
Arya remains deep in thought, her expression reflecting the weight of her recent discoveries.
Arya concludes that a specific individual with an angelic name will eventually arrive.
The narration notes that while they are unwilling, gifted children must go to Valentine.
Arya wonders if a contract exists, noting Garnia's desire to avoid any significant disadvantages.
The narrative highlights the existing relationship between the two completely opposite nations.
Arya questions the meaning of the claim that light requires the existence of darkness.
Arya questions the necessity of evil before Lloyd interrupts to ask her purpose in the hallway.
Lloyd asks the young girl why she is standing alone in the hallway at night.
Lloyd suggests that she should ask the staff for a lullaby if she cannot sleep.
Chibi Lloyd reacts with extreme embarrassment as Arya watches him with a confused look. Lloyd refuses to sing for her, but Arya insists she only likes him.
Lloyd realizes he misunderstood her intentions when she repeated those specific words to him. Arya stops to consider a new thought that has just occurred to her.
Lloyd notes they meet often despite living in separate palaces, and Arya quickly agrees.
Lloyd reveals that he has converted one of the nearby rooms into his personal office.
Lloyd is surprised she didn't know about his office while she reacts with genuine shock.
Lloyd scratches his head and pauses to think about how to explain things further. Lloyd recalls frequently seeing Arya standing beneath his office window looking up at the sky. Lloyd concludes that Arya actually had no idea he was watching her from above.
Lloyd looks away with a slightly flustered expression as he processes his own private observations. 15 words.
Arya tells Lloyd that his mother claimed he had made some sort of oath. Lloyd feels overwhelmed as he recalls all the mistakes he made in the past. 14 words.
Lloyd asks her to let him see her as he tries to compose himself. Lloyd denies ever making a swear, claiming that there must be some sort of misunderstanding.
Arya wonders what kind of oath Lloyd was supposed to have taken.
Lloyd lists off several insults while Arya looks on with a very shocked expression.
Arya realizes that she cannot remember any of the other words Lloyd said.
Lloyd offers to teach her something new while Arya responds with a hesitant sound. 14 words.
Lloyd asks if she heard the others while Arya reflects on the current situation.
Lloyd regrets not showing her earlier while Carlin's advice about silence flashes through his mind.
Lloyd expresses his interest in her while Arya wonders if his care is similar to Sabina. Lloyd claims to understand her marriage proposal while Arya notices his sudden and intense anger.
Arya reflects that Lloyd might finally get angry despite his previous calm demeanor. 13 words.
Arya imagines Lloyd's grief if she died, fearing he would hate himself and any future wife.
Arya decides that Lloyd should view their marriage merely as an act of gentle sympathy.
Arya hopes Lloyd remembers she is alive and will eventually grow up to find her.
Lloyd pinches the young girl's cheeks, demanding to know if she is actually listening to him. Lloyd continues to stare at her intensely, reminding Arya that they are currently having a conversation. Arya feels completely bewildered as Lloyd continues to playfully yet firmly squish her soft cheeks.
Lloyd maintains his serious expression while Arya looks up at him with wide, curious eyes. Lloyd gently takes Arya's hand in his own, preparing to speak with sincerity.
Kneeling before her, Lloyd apologizes for judging her, threatening her life, and causing her constant exhaustion.
Lloyd swears to Arya that his past behavior toward her will never happen again from now on.
Arya remains silent while the boy declares his refusal to deny the power of the Valentine family.
Lloyd commands Arya to stay and never leave, firmly stating that this palace is now her home.
Arya is stunned by the word home, reflecting that she never believed such a place existed.
Lloyd casually adjusts his position while reminding Arya that he has officially become her husband.
Arya asks if she is truly his wife, and an off-screen voice confirms her new status.
Lloyd offers to have the servants prepare for an immediate wedding if she gives him permission.
Arya notes that noble weddings at their age are illegal, but Lloyd dismisses the relevance of laws.
Arya worries that if they marry now, remarrying in the future would become a weakness for Lloyd.
Lloyd dismisses her concerns as nonsense, declaring that he intends to get married only once in his life.
Lloyd tells Arya that she is his first and last wife, and she nods in understanding. The two children hold hands tightly, signaling a newfound bond and agreement between them. Lloyd concludes the conversation by stating it is fine as long as she is finally understood.
Lloyd vows to make Arya's existence known to the entire world in the very near future. Lloyd looks at her with intensity, noting that she is far more than just a mere spirit.
Lloyd stands by the staircase, affirming to Arya that she truly belongs and exists in this world.
Narration clarifies that Arya is neither a mythical siren nor an elf, defining her unique nature.
Arya's eyes glow with a soft pink light as she processes the depth of Lloyd's words. Holding his hand, Arya feels happy yet remains fearful of repeating the tragedies of her past.
Lloyd tells Arya that it is perfectly acceptable for her to feel worried about the future.
Lloyd promises to violently punish anyone who dares to touch her, intending to set a grim example. Arya lets out a small sound of realization as she looks toward the boy she loves.
Arya reflects on the adult Lloyd, the man who once showed her the meaning of revenge.
Memories of Lloyd through the years flash by as Arya admits she has always liked him.
Lloyd raises her hand to his lips, and Arya realizes her feelings have remained completely unchanged. A distant voice offers a final farewell as the scene shifts to the Grand Palace of Garcia.
A young man with white hair and bright eyes stands tall in his formal white uniform.
Gabriel agrees with the Saintess and urges her not to overwork herself during her daily duties.
The Saintess vows to grow stronger, though Gabriel warns her not to push herself so hard.
An off-screen voice tells Gabriel to be careful as he prepares for his long journey.
A white carriage decorated with flowers begins to move, carrying the young knight toward his destination.
Gabriel looks out the window, noting that 5 years have passed since the previous events occurred.
Looking at the sky, Gabriel expresses his deep desire to protect the Saintess from all potential threats.
The Saintess waves goodbye with a bright and hopeful smile, unaware of the knight's internal resolve.
Gabriel privately hopes that the Saintess will eventually be able to live her life with total freedom. Narration describes a generational pact requiring Garcia to send a priest to Valentine for training.
Gabriel speaks with conviction, insisting to his companion that he is telling the absolute truth.
Gabriel acknowledges that while Valentine is dangerous, it is the best place to train his divine power.
Gabriel looks ahead with grim determination, noting that the Valentine family famously worships the devil.
Gabriel wonders if they use forbidden powers because they are isolated within the Pineda Empire's territories. Gabriel questions if his true mission is to overthrow the Valentine family rather than simply help them.
Gabriel clenches his fist, declaring that his personal feelings are irrelevant to his ultimate holy mission.
The bright blue sky remains clear as the carriage continues its journey toward the dark estate. Scattered leaves drift through the air, marking the passage of time as Gabriel heads toward Valentine. The
The bearded chef stares intensely at the young girl, his expression reflecting a mixture of exhaustion and determination.
The chef asks for her preference between vanilla and chocolate, while Arya decisively chooses strawberry flavor from the ranking sheet.
Struck with inspiration, the chef declares his intent to fulfill the girl's request with newfound energy and purpose.
The chef commands his staff to prepare a strawberry cake immediately, and the maids quickly agree to the task.
Arya observes the lively atmosphere, noting that everyone seems happy now that they have found a sense of hope.
While eating cake, Vincent notes that Arya has not yet recovered despite the staff's efforts to find hope.
Vincent explains that the people vaguely hope the generational curse of the Valentine family has finally ended for good.
Arya privately determines to lift the family curse before her own life and marriage inevitably come to an end. Overcome with exhaustion, Arya listens as the narrative notes that the curse is not something that can be handled easily.
Vincent explains that only the master and the heir are privy to the deepest secrets of the Valentine house.
Vincent claims that her recovery is unrelated to the curse, prompting the young girl to ask for the actual cause. Arya reacts with a start when the boy identifies an unknown external factor as the reason for her recovery.
Vincent explains the curse persists because Valentine remains full of sins, leaving the young girl in a state of shock.
The boy looks at her with a heavy gaze while questioning the nature of the sins mentioned in the story.
Vincent is shocked by her ignorance, questioning if his brother was overly protective while Arya demands a quick explanation.
Facepalming, Vincent doubts his own discretion but admits he can piece together at least some parts of the mystery.
Narration reveals that the Valentine clan once held a divine prophecy regarding a coming day of judgment and salvation.
The story explains that God abandoned humanity after a man was tempted by devils and opened the gates to hell.
Arya reflects that humanity actually feared divine salvation and chose to leave God to preserve their worldly possessions.
Vincent suggests that God was in the wrong, leading the curious young girl to ask for his specific reasoning. Vincent questions why God entrusted humans with such a vital mission instead of simply handling the task himself. Vincent compares God's actions to someone taking all the benefits of honey, which leaves the young girl visibly confused.
Chuckling at her sophisticated outlook, Vincent asks where the small girl could have possibly learned such complicated words and ideas.
Arya wonders if families of those who go to God would face judgment for the relationships they left behind.
The scene shifts as Arya considers the possibility that entire families could potentially fall into a state of ruin. Vincent claims he would have gone on strike if forced to obey, while the young girl watches him with intensity. Vincent laughs heartily as he again wonders where she is learning all of her rebellious and philosophical ideas.
Vincent notes she is mocking God, but Arya smiles while reflecting that she is truly a member of Valentine.
Vincent smirks in agreement, acknowledging that her attitude proves she fits perfectly into the nature of the Valentine family.
Vincent explains that the story originated in Garcilla, making it a secret that is not shared with the general public.
Vincent warns that they must be careful with widely spread stories as he offers his unique perspective on the situation.
Vincent explains the bloodline inherited the devil's sins, shown alongside Lloyd, who stands with a massive black panther.
The narrative clarifies that the terrifying beasts and mutants were all originally products of the devil's creative power.
Arya understands his point, but internally questions if being healthy and well wouldn't still be the better outcome. Vincent explains that everything is purged to keep people from distinguishing between good and bad devils, confusing the young girl.
Arya reflects on the coming arrival of a priest from Garcia who might use divine power to cleanse evil.
Arya realizes this explains the previous hushed conversation she overheard between the men earlier in the hallway.
Narrative notes the Valentine curse causes destruction and damage, forcing cooperation despite the risks involved in their current relationship.
Arya concludes that the potential ruin of the world is why the Emperor is limited in his personal actions. A text panel suggests that simply removing the evil would bring an end to the long-standing family struggle.
Vincent admits that getting rid of evil is an obvious solution, but claims it is currently an impossible task.
Looking away, Arya wonders why the clan has suffered for hundreds of years if a solution were actually possible.
Looking at the grand estate, Arya questions who could succeed in lifting the curse if even the Pope failed.
Arya holds a card, her mind focusing on the singular thought that a solution is actually possible.
Arya remains determined to succeed somehow, while Vincent watches her and wonders how she plans to achieve it.
Arya wakes up in her grand bedroom as a voice repeatedly calls out to get her attention.
A maid stands before the bed, offering a warm and cheerful good morning greeting to the young lady. Rubbing her sleepy eyes and holding a piece of paper, Arya asks the unfamiliar woman for her identity.
The maid smiles brightly and introduces herself as Marin, announcing she will be Arya's new personal servant.
Marin introduces the young maid, explaining she was recently proven innocent of a false accusation.
Arya recalls how a servant framed the maid, but her song forced him to confess everything.
Marin notes that the girl previously worked at the main palace but was requested specifically for Arya.
Marin assures Arya that she will remove the maid if she is in any way unsatisfactory.
Marin addresses the young lady as they prepare for the day ahead.
The maid confesses that she was the one who personally requested the madam send her here. The young maid clasps her hands together as she speaks with deep sincerity. Overcome with emotion, Marin vows to repay her debt by serving the young lady forever.
Arya wonders how Sabina knew about the incident as she writes a welcoming note for Marin.
Marin reacts with joy, expressing her eagerness to begin her duties for the young lady.
Marin offers her assistance as she begins to help Arya prepare for the bay.
While brushing Arya's hair, Marin mentions that an urgent summon has been issued recently.
Arya realizes every guard has left for the capital and wonders if it concerns the wedding.
Marin explains nobles receive emergency scrolls while Arya questions the nature of these specific emergencies.
Arya compares their marriage to war, questioning if the situation is actually a power abuse.
Marin suggests an important meeting should be occurring soon since key figures have gathered. Marin claims the meeting is a formality because everyone must eventually comply with the young master.
Marin notes it isn't usually so easy while Arya reflects on the gravity of the situation. Arya determines she should eavesdrop on the meeting to understand what is truly happening.
Arya recalls that the meeting room is situated next to the first floor reception area.
Arya peeks through a window as she navigates the palace grounds during the night. 14 words.
Arya spots Lloyd sitting inside the meeting room with several other men. Arya decides to stay hidden as she observes the gathering from outside the window.
A silver-haired boy watches Arya, who remains silent while looking back at him.
Arya is surprised by Vincent's presence, wondering how he knew to follow her there. Vincent claims he analyzed her behavior, noting she always seems to be at the center of attention.
Arya glares at the silver-haired boy, internally labeling him a sharp brat.
Vincent assures Arya that he will not bother her during her observation of the meeting. Arya notes that Vincent isn't here to annoy her while he signals for her to be quiet.
Lloyd calls for an end to the discussion, asking if anyone has any further comments.
A noble slams his hand down, calling the situation unacceptable due to her questionable background.
A bearded man asks why the girl's identity remains unstated if she is truly a noble.
Another noble suggests that even an illegitimate child would be preferable to someone with no status.
The nobles demand an explanation, questioning if the girl is a commoner from a lowly background.
Arya realizes the nobles want to push her out to install their own daughters instead.
Arya understands the urgent summon was a tactic used to hasten the preparations for this confrontation.
Vincent observes that the nobles have used this same trick repeatedly because it is effective.
Arya reflects on the repetitive strategy, noting that Lloyd's suspicions likely arise from this behavior.
Vincent tells his sister-in-law that she has no reason to be worried about the outcome.
Vincent explains that the final result of the meeting was actually decided from the very start.
Arya watches the proceedings silently, acknowledging the boy's conviction. 12 words.
Lloyd leans forward and asks if everyone is finally finished making their comments.
Lloyd draws a sword and places it firmly on the table before the gathered men. Holding the sword, Lloyd asks if anyone present still objects to his marriage.
A heavy silence fills the room as the nobles look away in fear.
Lloyd gestures with the blade while asking if they all now agree with him.
Lloyd notes their agreement and warns them that they have resolved not to mess with him.
The nobles sit in stunned silence, sweating under the intensity of Lloyd's threat. Narrative notes the audacity of drawing a sword during a meeting immediately after becoming successor.
Arya resolves to bear any repercussions with Lloyd since they are now husband and wife.
Arya reflects on two trustworthy individuals who are aware of her ability to speak.
Arya observes that Vincent has been secretly studying her behavior without any verbal communication.
Arya is moved by the realization that she has finally secured a real family.
Sensing a presence, Arya suddenly stops and wonders if someone is approaching their location.
A voice calls out from the darkness, identifying the young master and the young lady. An unidentified speaker asks the two children why they are out in the palace garden.
Promotional art for another series features a red-haired woman wielding a massive steel battle axe.
A pink-haired knight discovers Arya and Vincent, leading them to question his sudden appearance.
The young knight explains he felt a presence and asks for an explanation for their behavior.
The grand palace stands silent under a starry sky as the children react to the knight. Vincent accuses the knight of attempted murder while the boy apologizes for removing potential witnesses.
The knight declares his intent to report their eavesdropping to the Grand Duke immediately.
The pink-haired knight remains stubborn about reporting them, despite Vincent's attempts to dismiss it.
Vincent urges the knight not to complicate the situation, but Cloud insists on reporting everything.
Vincent tells the knight to report his own near-lethal mistake instead, while the boy remains defiant.
Vincent mocks the knight's rigidity, asking if he even understands how to be mentally flexible.
The pink-haired knight pauses the argument to genuinely ask for a definition of the word flexibility. Arya and Vincent are left speechless by the knight's surprising lack of basic linguistic understanding. Vincent loses his temper, shouting at the knight for knowing advanced terms but failing at simple ones.
The knight calmly admits he is uninformed and offers to learn the word's meaning from them. Feeling completely exhausted by the interaction, Vincent holds his head and fears he might faint.
The knight attempts to steady the reeling Vincent, who angrily demands to be released from support.
Vincent insults the knight's speech patterns, leading Arya to wonder if such strange creatures exist.
Arya observes the chaotic interaction, noting that this knight is uniquely capable of infuriating Vincent.
Looking toward the palace, an off-screen voice asks what the group is currently doing.
Voices call for their boss as they wonder why the area has become so incredibly loud.
Lloyd appears, looking down at the group with a calm yet authoritative and curious expression.
Arya looks back at Lloyd, attempting to find the right words to explain the situation.
A close-up shows a small hand firmly gripping the sleeve of Lloyd's dark formal jacket.
Arya looks up with wide pink eyes and asks the young man for his reasoning.
Arya requests that the knight named Cloud escort her once the formal ceremony has finally ended.
Vincent is shocked into silence while Cloud blushes at the young lady's unexpected personal request.
The scene shifts as the sun rises over the sprawling and majestic White Palace grounds.
Meryn encourages the young lady to smile as they begin the final preparations for the day. Arya looks stunning in a lavish white wedding gown decorated with numerous blooming pink roses. Meryn praises Arya's beauty, claiming her appearance would even enchant the souls of forest goblins.
The maid continues her gushing, suggesting that Arya's bright smile could melt snow and herald spring.
Meryn describes her observation of Arya, concluding that nothing in nature is as bright as her.
Arya tries to stifle the maid's excessive affection while the energetic servant continues to hug her.
Standing beneath a grand chandelier, the maid prepares to share a romantic saying with the girl.
Meryn explains that people in love always perceive their beloved as the most beautiful in existence. Hugging Arya tightly, the maid confesses that she was smitten the moment she first saw her.
Meryn urges Arya to love herself so that the maid's intense devotion is not considered pitiful.
Arya focuses on the concept of self-love as she gazes at her reflection in the mirror.
Arya stands perfectly still, examining every detail of her appearance while wearing her ornate wedding dress.
Arya notes her long eyelashes and clear eyes, objectively acknowledging the balance and beauty of her face.
Looking closely at her features, Arya finally understands the source of the maid's overwhelming admiration.
Arya looks at herself with a thoughtful expression, internalizing the idea of appreciating her own worth.
Arya closes her eyes and smiles, deciding that she has seen enough of her own reflection.
Arya realizes she knows how to love herself while the maid reiterates her deep, joyful affection.
Lloyd asks the person behind Arya if they are confessing to his bride and offers a challenge. Meryn denies the accusation as she stands behind the pink-haired girl in her wedding dress.
Meryn whispers to Arya that her love is not deep enough to accept the prince's dangerous challenge.
Arya reflects on Lloyd's formal attire, noting that he looks like a completely different person today. Arya observes that Lloyd's hairstyle is also notably different from his usual appearance. Arya notices a small mole located just under Lloyd's right eyebrow for the first time.
Arya feels awkward and unsure where to look since Lloyd has remained silent during the process.
Arya wonders about the famous design of Lloyd's outfit despite him only being a 10-year-old boy. Arya reflects that she previously never considered Lloyd to be a handsome individual until this moment.
Blushing deeply, Arya looks away as she continues to process Lloyd's striking and regal appearance. 15 words.
Arya reaches out to adjust the delicate jewelry and veil decorating her long pink hair.
Arya considers the bridal tradition of the groom removing the veil and wonders what she should do.
A close-up reveals Arya's wide and vibrant pink eye looking through the lace of her veil.
Lloyd touches his ear and looks away with a flushed face, visibly embarrassed by the intense atmosphere.
Meryn's voiceover asks the young lady if she is aware of a romantic saying about beauty. The narration explains that people in love will always find their beloved to be the most beautiful.
Arya reflects on the maid's words while looking at the intricate details of Lloyd's formal uniform.
Lloyd continues to look away, his face turning red under the pressure of the wedding preparations.
Looking at him, Arya internally declares that Lloyd is currently the most beautiful person in the world.
Arya tells Lloyd he looks beautiful, causing the young man to react with a visible and surprised start.
Arya reacts with sudden shock, covering her mouth as she looks toward the young master.
Lloyd scoops Arya up and carries her in his arms as they move through the grand palace.
Arya wonders if Lloyd is aware of her thoughts or if he is simply staring at her.
The maids watch with great joy as Lloyd carries his bride toward the site of the ceremony. Arya finds Lloyd incredibly cute as she smiles while being carried toward the wedding hall.
Lloyd asks about her expression while Arya privately decides that she must tease him occasionally.
Lloyd notes she hasn't gained weight while Arya reacts with surprise as they move toward the aisle.
Arya is flustered by the situation, thinking she did not intend to walk down the aisle this way.
The Grand Palace stands tall as Arya wonders at the incredible physical strength Lloyd possesses.
Floral decorations fill the hall as the doors open to reveal the stunning wedding venue.
Lloyd carries Arya down the long red carpet as they approach the altar for the ceremony.
Arya recalls that the vows cannot be changed and notes Lloyd's desire to keep things brief.
Lloyd remains stoic, seemingly uninterested in the glamorous nature of the wedding ceremony.
Lloyd claims the grandeur of the wedding is irrelevant since everyone already knows their identities. Looking at the flowers, Arya reflects that the young man has achieved his goal regardless. Lloyd holds out his hand and asks the girl he calls Bunny to give him hers. Arya questions Lloyd's manner of speaking and decides that she no longer finds him cute. Lloyd takes Arya's hand and begins to slide a wedding ring onto her finger.
Arya wonders why Lloyd is smiling and questions if he is actually happy to be married.
Arya questions why the family would provide such a valuable diamond for what she considers a joke wedding.
Lloyd tells Arya to close her eyes and deliver whatever message she wants to say.
Arya asks if Lloyd can hear her telepathy magic, and he confirms that only he can hear it.
Lloyd asks if she has used magic before, noting she learned it much faster than he learned artifacts.
Lloyd assumes Arya was born with this talent, while she hopes his genius companions won't be suspicious.
Arya looks down at the deep blue diamond ring she is now wearing on her finger.
Arya remembers hearing about the high price of such jewelry as she examines the ornate ring.
Lloyd commands the young girl to finally put away her old communication notebook.
Arya is worried and wonders how she will be able to communicate with other people now. Lloyd dismisses her worries, stating that other people do not need to know or understand anything.
The ceremony master announces it is finally time for the young couple's sacred vow kiss.
Arya and Lloyd look at each other silently as the crowd waits for the wedding kiss.
Lloyd asks about the vows while the silver-haired man coughs and offers a sincere apology. The man asks about the kiss, but Lloyd tells him to just let it go.
The master of the ceremony officially announces that Arya and Lloyd are husband and wife.
Wisteria and lilies decorate the hall as the guests begin to clap for the couple.
A man and a woman in formal attire join the audience in applauding the marriage.
Arya reflects on the simple food served, noting there is nothing special about the meal. 15 words.
Arya is surprised when the black-haired boy uses his nickname for her once again. Lloyd extends his hand toward his new bride and commands her to take it.
Arya realizes that Lloyd's personality and manner of speaking have remained consistent since the beginning.
A vision of a future Lloyd appears, wearing a regal and dark formal outfit.
Arya identifies the man from her memories as her savior while he carries her away.
Arya resolves to save Lloyd in this life as they walk together through the flowers. Arya reflects on the fact that their marriage was merely part of a contract today.
Looking up, Arya feels confident that she will be able to protect herself now.
Lloyd looks back as they walk, his ornate formal uniform shimmering in the bright light. An angry voice from the palace shouts about beasts that have suddenly gone crazy.
Voices question the age of the children and the choice to involve an innocent child, while Lloyd tells the master to give it a try for just one day.
Lloyd stands before a large door and tells someone that he will leave for now.
Arya wonders why Lloyd reacted with such anger regarding the idea of sharing a room.
Lloyd points to the sofa, stating he will sleep there so she can have the bed. 16 words.
Lloyd asks if Arya intended for them to sleep together after she remains completely silent.
Lloyd tells Arya to sleep first, explaining he will return after he has finished bathing.
Arya watches Lloyd leave and silently expresses her gratitude that he was born into the world.
Arya looks forward with determination, vowing to ensure that Lloyd will definitely be happy.
Arya wakes up suddenly in the middle of the night and wonders about a noise.
Arya rubs her eyes and questions why she hears a scratching sound from the sofa.
Arya sits up in bed with a startled expression as the scratching sound continues nearby.
In the dark room, Arya sees Lloyd hunched over and struggling on the floor nearby.
Arya is horrified to see Lloyd coughing up a large amount of blood onto himself.
Arya is horrified as she realizes the young man has just vomited blood onto himself.
Arya questions why Lloyd must suffer when he deserves to be happier than anyone else.
Lloyd explains he didn't want to enter because a seizure appears sometimes, though it's not a deadly disease, while Arya reflects it was more than just a seizure.
Lloyd describes the family karma, noting that atonement for sins shouldn't be committed generation after generation because that is how one becomes evil.
Lloyd looks at the pink-haired girl with blood on his face and asks if she is scared.
Lloyd asks if he should let go of her hands if she is currently feeling spared.
Arya suddenly hugs the bloodstained boy tightly, ignoring the mess on his white shirt.
Lloyd is stunned by the embrace while Arya cries silently against his shoulder.
Lloyd points out the bloodstain on his clothes and worries about getting it on her. Lloyd rests his hand on Arya's back as they continue their emotional embrace in the room.
Lloyd tells Arya to get off of him, but the crying girl simply calls out his name. Arya sobs loudly as she clings to the young man amidst the darkness of the room.
Lloyd looks at the crying girl and asks if he told her what would happen.
Arya's hands shake as she grips his clothes, her tears falling onto the carpeted floor. 16 words.
Arya refuses to be pushed away, clinging to him with even more strength and desperation.
Arya asks if he knows the country where the lemon blossoms bloom as she holds him.
Arya continues her song, describing the orange-yellow light under dense trees and the gentle wind blowing in the air. Lloyd tells her to stop, but the girl continues to sing her calming melody.
Arya finishes her song by mentioning the high laurel trees while leaning against the boy.
Arya embraces Lloyd in a quiet room, expressing a longing for them to stay together. Lloyd firmly commands the pink-haired girl to stop her emotional display as they sit together.
Arya is startled and visibly distressed, her pink eyes shimmering with unshed tears for the boy.
Lloyd's hands and clothing are heavily stained with blood after his sudden and violent medical seizure.
Narrator text explains Lloyd's fragile mental state and the poisonous lineage he was born into.
Tears stream down Arya's face as she softly whispers the name of her suffering young husband. 16 words.
Lloyd questions how Arya is able to speak to him after hiding her voice for so long.
Lloyd reaches out his blood-stained hand, struggling to comprehend the sudden revelation regarding his silent bride.
Looking into Arya's eyes, Lloyd demands to know her true nature and what she actually is.
Arya looks back at Lloyd with a stunned and sorrowful expression after he identifies her as Siren.
Lloyd concludes that Arya was the mysterious individual responsible for curing his mother's incurable illness previously. Lloyd asks how she hid her voice and notes her father knows nothing of her ability.
Arya explains her mother forced her to drink water that suppressed her voice, causing unknown side effects.
A heavy, introspective silence falls between the two children as they process their shared and painful secrets.
Arya notes they now share a secret, and Lloyd agrees they will soon learn much more.
Arya promises to explain everything later, insisting that Lloyd has done nothing wrong despite his current state.
Lloyd questions who she truly is to speak such comforting words and what knowledge she actually possesses. Arya gently grasps Lloyd's hand, offering her support as he struggles with the aftermath of his seizure. Claiming she had a nightmare, Arya requests that they hold hands and sleep together for the night.
Lloyd looks at the girl with skepticism, accusing her of using the same excuse to avoid separation.
Arya invents a monster story to stay close while Lloyd reacts with visible and silent annoyance.
Lloyd reluctantly agrees to the arrangement, specifying that they will only be holding hands during the night.
Arya offers her constant help whenever Lloyd calls, and he promises to come to her aid immediately.
Lloyd makes a solemn promise to Arya, solidifying their bond through a quiet and mutual agreement. Arya reflects on Lloyd's knowledge of her magic and resolves to prevent the upcoming Valentine Riot event.
Lloyd presents a small jewelry box to Arya, identifying the contents inside as a formal wedding gift.
Arya asks about the contents of the box, and Lloyd reveals they are rare mermaid teardrops.
Lloyd explains that the pearls are a symbol of love, causing a sudden and unexpected reaction.
Arya quickly clarifies that she does not mean romantic love, leaving the young master feeling completely flustered.
Arya presents the pearls as evidence of her loyalty while vowing that Lloyd will surpass his father's legacy. Narrative text announces the arrival of an apprentice from Garcilla sent to cleanse the Palace of Evil. Lloyd warns Arya that they don't need to treat the new arrival well since help wasn't intended.
Lloyd describes their current situation as a strictly contractual relationship despite their deepening and personal emotional connection.
Lloyd warns Arya to be cautious of the Pope, comparing the man's treacherous nature to a mole.
Arya reflects on the complex political landscape, wishing the people of Garcia were more straightforward in nature.
A young man with light-colored hair stands in the palace gardens amidst blooming white and blue flowers.
A voice calls out to the young madam as the scene transitions to a grand palace garden.
A hand holds up a single pink rose, offering it as a compliment to the young lady.
The apprentice confirms his compliment while Arya asks if he's actually being nice to her.
Arya admires the pink rose, privately thinking that the flower is very pretty as she holds it.
Arya turns her head sharply as she senses a familiar and perhaps unsettling presence nearby in the garden.
Arya spots the apprentice and wonders if they have met before under different and more dire circumstances.
Arya reacts with a sudden start, her eye widening as a specific memory begins to surface clearly.
Arya identifies the apprentice as someone she previously encountered during the lowest point of her former life.
The light-haired boy looks at Arya with curiosity, beginning to ask her a question before being interrupted.
Arya reflects on the boy's sharp intuition, labeling his ability to sense her thoughts as entirely useless.
A chibi-style maid reacts with explosive anger, shouting at someone off-screen for their perceived and rude behavior.
Meryn aggressively defends Arya's status, warning the boy that she is destined to be the master's wife.
The light-haired boy asks if they have met before after hearing about Arya's status as a wife.
Meryn is shocked into a comedic state of horror as she stands protectively beside a confused-looking Arya.
Gabriel stammers as Meryn berates him for his blatant and rude attempts at flirting with Arya.
Meryn remains furious while Arya reflects on her past encounter with the apprentice at her lowest point.
Gabriel denies ever meeting her, but Meryn aggressively dismisses his claims as being completely impossible.
Gabriel apologizes for his behavior, and Arya notes that he might have a reason for any lies. Gabriel expresses relief that Arya is safe, admitting he worried about his failure to protect her previously.
Meryn is suspicious of Gabriel's tone as he offers a belated and formal greeting to the madam. Gabriel introduces himself as a commoner from Garcia who has arrived at the palace on a mission.
Arya wonders if he is a namesake, recalling that his legendary divine power was discovered much later.
Examining his eyes, Arya notices a hint of gold, signaling the presence of immense divine power.
Arya identifies Gabriel as the Pope's henchman, reflecting on how arrogance leads to being labeled a monster.
A close-up shows Arya's hand tightening as she processes the complicated history she shares with Gabriel.
Arya resolves to move past her resentment since Gabriel currently has no meaningful connection to her life. Arya changes her mind, realizing that winning Gabriel over could help her avoid a future crisis.
A close-up shows hands exchanging a small note amidst the lush floral backdrop of the garden.
Gabriel stands in the garden as Arya and Meryn move away together after their brief encounter. Gabriel reads a note claiming Arya saved an angel and believes this provides him with enough time.
Arya prays in the chapel, determined to win over the devout Gabriel to secure her own safety.
Arya realizes she is alone with Gabriel in the quiet and sacred atmosphere of the chapel.
Gabriel approaches Arya inside the grand chapel, his presence casting a shadow over the pink-haired girl.
Standing before Arya, Gabriel states that he has a very important question he needs to ask her.
Gabriel asks if she saved him, and Arya confirms her role by showing him a written message.
Arya admires Gabriel's radiant appearance, privately concluding that the apprentice truly looks like a heavenly angel.
Arya claims he is sparkling, but Gabriel denies the compliment while feeling flustered by her observations.
Gabriel mentions the collapse of a palace wall, and Arya takes credit for the strange occurrence.
Arya looks up at Gabriel and asks if he understands the method she used to save him. Gabriel asks if she is curious while Arya nods in agreement during their conversation in the chapel. Arya giggles while sitting beside Gabriel, who blushes intensely as they spend time alone together. A massive wolf suddenly bursts into the scene, its presence creating a moment of intense danger.
Gabriel panics and warns Arya to flee, citing reports of evil contaminated monsters lurking within the Grand Duchy.
Gabriel is stunned when Arya calmly pets the wolf and asks if the creature has been tamed.
A panther and dove arrive, further shocking Gabriel as the animals behave with unnatural and peaceful calm.
Gabriel realizes that Arya was never in danger because she has the help of these loyal animals.
Gabriel apologizes for his interference and thanks Arya for saving his life during their previous encounter. Arya touches Gabriel's face and encourages him to remain confident in the path he has chosen.
Gabriel is stunned, remembering that he heard those exact same words from a saintess in the past.
Arya smiles while holding her note, wondering if her comforting words were just a simple coincidence.